Right, we're back for the first Summoning Insight of the year during a live tournament. And actually, you'll already see on this show, the secret to being an analyst is you have to actually be able to like recreate the emotion of a win. Because spoiler, if this show had happened yesterday, it would start a lot more spicy than it probably will now. Because spoiler, I'll just tell you, that was when Karmine Corp lost to Flying Oyster, where the joke is even the name, like no one takes seriously, but they actually did get clapped by him. Whereas today they beat Top Esports, who actually in theory is a tournament favourite. It was the LPL champion, etc. So we will recreate all the highs and the lows of that throughout the show as usual. And my joke could be, listen, here's the thing, mate. I don't do the whole like fourth wall. So the joke will be, and then you will have to watch Yamato awkwardly navigate the notion that like he's not a hater of KC when he points out that they actually shit the bed and looked really bad. But then simultaneously, he has to then convince me he's not enabling lunatic Karmine Corp stands when he then praises them. So let's see how he navigates that minefield. On the one side, he's got all the public castigation of Twitter. On the other side, he's got the realest motherfucker that ever walked into an esports saloon. Some would say built the joint. So that's Summoning Insight. Welcome to the show. And let's just start out with, I think we just start with the tournament, mate, because in general, especially when we just watch games before we go live, I'd rather just talk about the stuff we just watched and then we can get into all the stuff. Because as usual, by the way, this is going to be an SI episode where maybe we didn't give as much attention in past episodes because we were doing like 4-hour-long episodes where we really did like old school Monty style, watch all the major regions. But we actually are going to, on this one, have a whole load of discussion about things like format, since obviously, if people don't know, it's now implied it's not just LCK, the whole world of League of Legends is just going to be fearless draft from now on, and that might just be like forever, the rest of the year. So we'll get into all that. Don't worry about that. There's all the side shit about like fucking what else happened in the last week or so, Yamato? I'm sure there was some other thing as well that I'm missing. What was the other thing that was a big like riot thing?
Big riot thing? Well, did we talk about
this isn't like that big a deal, but we could also technically address some of that like double lift shit if you want, where they're like like, wait a minute, you mean if we qualify, we have to like practice and stuff? I haven't got time for that. Like, we could do that if you want. We could address that part. Actually, you know what? We can address that, to be fair, because I do think a bigger topic we haven't talked about on this show so far is there is a real thing. If you don't know Yamato, I figure you must do because of the Ruddy Sack. Bro, there are people who you can tell have only really gotten into like League esports through like Los Ratones mainly because of the giant size of the cage roll, Reckless, fucking Nemesis, all these massive names, and the fact that it's like a phenomenon at the moment. They wrecked the NLC. Now they're in EU Masters. Who know EMEA Masters? Maybe they can even like make a run there, etc. People for real, I'm not joking, Yamato, want that team like already in the LEC. Like they think there should be like a pathway. They didn't get the memo about franchising because they don't know, like, yeah, this used to exist, by the way. You just play the promotions, which they would be doing like in like 3 weeks or something. And back in the day, if you were actually good enough, you could just qualify. Spoiler, that actually happened to some of the teams Yamato later coached. But what I don't think they realize is like that's not the nature of the industry. It's not going to change that way. You have to like buy in. So I think we could talk about all these things. It's actually quite a big show. So let's rewind. Go all the way back, right? Obviously, the first thing to ask about this tournament, first Stand Yamato, is this is actually something I saw people found that like Mickey X comment where basically someone was sort of asking like when these changes come in and there's not lane swaps all the time, who will sort of be negatively affected? And basically Mickey pointed out, which is quite an obvious thing to point out, that probably Karmine Corp, because first of all, like what will it do to Targamas? How will it change what lane matchups you play, etc.? Can you hide a player if you're in a mismatch like people often do with the top laner, right? The reason he's saying that also is obvious, which is one, his own team, Mickey X and Upset, obviously their dream is that they have like a world with no lane swaps. Like similarly, you imagine Hans Samra Labrov, that's implied that's even why they kicked Mickey X to get the kind of a 2v2 that just smashes the lane outside. So he even teased the idea maybe Karmine Corp bot lane would struggle a little bit. What have your thoughts been on the tournament, just in terms of the initial fact that it's not like how the splits went? It is fearless, obviously. We've got all that. Still the same teams that won the regions, but it's not the same League of Legends, right? It is different from what we were seeing in the playoffs.
You know, I'm a big competitive integrity guy, so like I really didn't like that the change. I understand that the change needs to happen at some point because it's always about the viewers. The same with the fearless change, right? Like I understand, but when things are set up in a certain way, you remove from the competitive integrity because from now on, Riot is basically signaling that they're going to make changes for the point of the viewership real time, and
Right.
and that's like a really big deal to me because. Yeah. Like people made the comparison of like, oh, well, new patches come and players need to like understand and adapt to the patch. That's fine because that's implied already. That's going to happen. But if a Riot puts in a calendar or they do something in preparation for something, like when expectations are set, I expect them to follow through on those expectations fully. Sure, there are moments where they walk back decisions like the Hextech chess, but I thought this whole lane swap thing was too big of a change because it is so easy to imagine a world where you don't have the world's best teams at this tournament in the context of non-lane swaps. How Alive, sure, is arguable because it's just a demonic fucking team. But I imagine a world where there was no lane swaps. Like maybe Gumayushi, Kiria, would still be playing. Smash wouldn't get subbed in, and we would have a different world altogether. The same thing for Bilibili. It's like Bilibili lost in the lane swap world, and they were absolutely terrible on lane swap, and that's fair play, right? They lost on the current like system in the game. And the overarching change, people say is like, oh, but they should know how to play the lanes. But even in games where lane swaps don't happen or didn't happen, people were still thinking about lane swap when it came to drafting. It was a key element about everything. So always there was this point that people made when I said I'm worried about KC's bot lane, because I made this point too. Like I rated them below Yeon and Code JJ, and you have to argue for it always because people get upset, mostly because like a lot of the viewership that I have is European. And like a big point in that is KC, when they lane against Fnatic, they gave up a lot of 2v2 kills. It was a Zillion-Zeri game. It was also the game where they played against the Kalista of course, Fnatic, the game that they threw in the end, Fnatic. And the lane phase isn't something that was like squeaky clean for them. Early games weren't squeaky clean for KC. And I think that lane swap, on top of the fact that KC had so little turnaround time, because LEC just finished last, coming into the tournament, you have to kind of bring what you brought, and there is no like adjustments you can do. I know that Yike said in an interview that basically they just played like one scrim day because you have media days, you fly in, you deal with jet lag, all that jazz. This is, of course, the nature of international competition. This is something everybody has to deal with. I'm sure there were North American teams that flew over to Brazil that were underperforming in the beginning because they had to deal with the logistics. And always when I say this, people get insulted, but dealing with these chaotic elements of the logistics is a skill, is a trait that teams need to adjust to because it's a part, of course, of the game. And now with KC, definitely in the beginning, it was very clear, like in terms of laning bot, they were suffering because on paper, the bot lanes coming from the other teams, if you look at the like top esports bot lane, Team Liquid's bot lane, and of course How Alive's bot lane, these are fucking demon level bot lanes. So it was certain that this would be like a key element of their gameplay, which they beautifully solved today, because Yike was fucking level 3 ganking Jakob in all of the games, and it just fucking cracked and worked. And Yike has experience playing against, of course, Jakob from MSI from last year, and a part of that was breaking the bot lane early on, because when Jakob and his lanes go bad, they tend to get worse very fast because he's not a player that gives up, and that's kind of the epitome of the core of how top esports play. So Yike with the level 3 ganks bot, with the Ivan game, the Skana game, they really set up the bot lane for success. And the key difference for me is KC just looked like a completely different team. They look like the team that we saw in the LEC. Kalist, like fucking challenging and posturing forward, baiting skill shots, playing the game actively. Yike finding his Drake timers, disciplined around the fights. This was a completely different team than the one we saw in the first best of threes, and a lot more similar to what we saw in the LEC.
I tell you what, I want to get into something first before we get into this, because actually I've realised, to be fair, since this is the tournament that has the Karmine Corp fans in, and obviously it's their first like international tournament on this level, we actually should address something, because basically this is going to recur over and over again with not only this fan base, but it's essentially people don't know. They're just like the Western version of the T1 stance. Like, people know if Gen G wins, like there's never going to be like trucks and people going mad because they just don't have the same type of fan base, right? But since Karmine Corp are going to do this, by the way, MCOI probably would too if they were there. One thing I want to say is, when you point that out, right, you make that sound vaguely reasonable, Yamato. So what you're saying is this, right? When someone who's basically just a fan of Karmine Corp, or maybe LEC as a whole, so it's implied, by the way, they don't watch LTA. By the way, nobody watches LTA. The numbers prove it. So we all know they don't watch the matches. What you're actually saying for real is, when you, someone who did watch both regions, say, hey guys, I actually think just in a very specific context of a matchup, this just direct 2v2 S8E2 bot lane. I'm not even saying the players in the bot lane are better or worse. I'm not even saying the team's better or worse. But just in terms of this one aspect of the game, I think the edge could go to the team you guys don't watch. Their logic doesn't go, well, I don't watch it, so that's a very interesting opinion, Yamato. I'll take that on board or ask further questions. They go, what the hell? I haven't even watched that team, but the people I like must be better. It's like, bro, I don't even know how you can handle like that being a real thing. Like, I just tap straight out, mate. That's where it's like, you know what? Either you need to leave this room or I do, because that conversation can't exist. Like, in that scenario, it's fine that you like that player, but you're actually just acting like a little kid in his, like, playing with his fucking toys, throwing him out the pram, mate. Like, in that scenario, you can't be a fan who just wants to be told what you want to hear. Like, at that point in time, what I don't get is you've got a million streamers. In fact, spoiler, KC themselves, the main guy, is a streamer who does that. Like, you can just go watch his stream if you want to hear him say that everything's brilliant and everyone's great and we're going to defeat the world. And by the way, it's all the Gowler shit. Like, it's us against them. We're all going to rise up and be the real ones who know what's going on, and everyone who doesn't like us hates us. And it's all the fucking same tribal mentality. It's just called demagoguery, mate. You're just trying to, like, wield the people as a weapon. So the reason why I bring this up is because I get really bored of this shit where it's like, it's one thing to be a fan and go, I just like this guy. Yeah, that's an opinion. But it's where people like try to talk down like actual people attempting to be experts. Like, I could give you a very quick example without making it a big sidebar. There's a thing like this just happened recently in football, right? Which is, if you know Jamie Carragher, the former Liverpool player who's like one of the main pundits for British TV for football, he made a comment where the context, Yamato, was he was talking about the star player of Liverpool, Mo Salah, the Egyptian player, and the fact that, like, in the past, he's never won a Ballon d'Or. I mean, to be fair, he never should have actually, if you ever watched the games. But this season, he's having such an insane statistical season, and his team, until last night, was the best in Europe and the Premier League, therefore considered like the best team in the world. The logic would be, well, this should be the season where he'll win it, right? But a problem was, and Jamie Carragher made this point on like a pundit desk, his point was, if you look at how they vote for the Ballon d'Or, though, they now do weird political things, like how you do internationally for your country. So, for example, if you don't know, it's actually the reason why Messi won his last Ballon d'Or is because Argentina won the World Cup. So even though, by the way, he was already playing in fucking MLS and wasn't even like an elite player anymore, he got to win it sort of cause his team then did an inspired run and he had the most goals in the tournament and won the Golden Boot and all that jazz, right? So basically, in that context, quite literally, explicitly in that context, Jamie Carragher pointed out that because Mo Salah plays for Egypt, and Egypt obviously doesn't play in the Euros or the they have to play in a thing called AFCON, which is where the it's like Confederation of African Nations or something, where all the African countries get together. And it's even weird compared to the Euros and the World Cup because it's not every 4 years, it's like every 2 years or something like that. And they go, and the worst part is during the season. I think they go over like Christmas or something mad. And it means that if you have one of those players, one for your team, they're not going to be available potentially because they're going to want to play for their country. But more importantly, they're going to play a tournament, and this is the point Jamie Carragher made, that unfortunately no one counts towards those awards. Like, if you win the AFCON, no one then goes, ooh, he might be on for the Ballon d'Or, which is essentially like Player of the Year if people don't know, right? So his point was, it's not a major tournament in that context. Like, it doesn't win you it, which, by the way, that statement he just said there is absolutely, it's provably correct, Yamato. Like, if you ever look in history, no one has ever given a fuck about who won that in this context, in terms of whoever was like the MVP of that tournament was never like, wow, should they win the Ballon d'Or? In fact, he's actually just right. People basically only care about the Euros and the World Cup. Sort of, maybe if you're like Brazil or Argentina, they care about the Copa America. But even then, that, quite frankly, winning that wouldn't ever win you like actually at the Ballon d'Or. You'd probably have to still be Messi or someone really insanely, or like fucking back in the day, Ronaldo, the Brazilian one. You'd have to be some really insane player to win. So that his point, right, had nothing to do with like Africans, for example, or what people think about Africa. But the whole thing on the internet for like a week, Yamato, for real, became Jamie Carragher just said AFCON isn't a major tournament. So he's saying nobody watches it, but 1 billion people watch it apparently. And he's saying Africans have no value in the world and don't mean it, which is like, this is just and I'm not joking, Yamato. This is so bad that as opposed to everyone just going, well, that's not what he said at all. The context of what he's saying is exactly the whole purpose of why he said it. And he's actually making a point, you morons, essentially in favor of the African player. He's sort of saying this guy could be the best in the world, but he doesn't have the same mechanism that like a French or a Spanish player would have, which is you go and you win the massive major tournament, and then that ensures you win the Ballon d'Or. So instead, right, for like a week, everyone just said, every African player and fucking football player came out and said he's bloody ignorant and racist and it all for like a week, bro. And at the end, this is how sad this is. The end thing wasn't like, wow, they all just like completely ignored my point. At the end, he had to sort of like walk it back and almost be like, I'm sorry. I do acknowledge it is a major, even though, by the way, that was never the point ever being made. So my point, if I rewind it all the way back, is like, this actually is a problem, Yamato. I didn't say all that just to say nothing. The reason I bring this all the way back is, actually, I actually made the same joke, bro, when Calist went to the upper bracket finals. My joke that I made was, it's like the Matrix. You want to believe that Calist, in his first time playing Hans Sama, just claps him straight up because you want it to be some, like, it's faker. He's here. He's just the best already. But it's like the Matrix, isn't it? You know that great scene in the first Matrix where even Neo fails the first jump? Because the idea is everyone fails the first. Until you've sort of done it, you don't know what failure is. It's only once you know failure, you can steel your mind to sort of overcome and transcend. It's actually a brilliant point, by the way, about like improving in life. Like, it's the idea that nobody really ever just succeeds the whole time, Yamato. The point is, normally our failures are like hidden. We just don't see it, or you already failed just before I was introduced to this person. So it's actually totally logical that Casey would lose some of these initial games. Look, we can get to the Flying Oyster one. That one's beyond the pale. The idea they can lose to TL is totally plausible. By the way, if they'd have gotten 2-0 clapped by TS, I wouldn't have gone like, what the hell's going on? Like, that makes sort of sense. By the way, it's actually why you notice a lot of us LPL glazers do give TES like a tiny asterisk, because Cream was one of the main people who just fell apart completely at that last MSI last year. Like, he's one of the reasons they just couldn't get any wins. In fact, they themselves almost lost to Fnatic in quite a similar sort of a game where he looked fucking pressed. So I don't think it's some sort of like outrageous opinion, the idea you'd suggest that Yon and Core JJ could be better than Targamas and Kalista. Let's just start there, mate, because here's what I don't get about that. The Yon guy, like, people think I'm a hater because I just thought he wasn't that good if you go back to like spring last year. Mate, he is a guy I think every 3 months just got better and better. Like, he actually looks now like the best part of Team Liquid. And then the like legacy best part of Team Liquid is Core JJ, who is like a fucking wizard. Everyone's seen he just works with everyone. He even got the tactical guy to fucking Worlds, bro. This guy's just a genius. He can just work with anyone. So, like, the idea that could be better than Kalist, who's a complete rookie, by the way, and we're all hoping makes all these first jumps and doesn't ever fail, doesn't ever have a bad moment, but it's totally understandable for he is. And then Targamas, even the context how everyone's praised him is in the context of his past splits. So, like, he's speaking now, or wow, he's like, the fact that we had lane swaps meant he could be more active on the map and he didn't have to be locked in a lane. All these things that overcame his boundaries. Like, I don't think it's even a vaguely unreasonable opinion. You'd have to admit that that would be a better 2v2. And also, spoiler, didn't it literally play out? I think we all just saw that in front of our eyes. Actually, what you were right. You were right, Yamato. You were right.
Yeah, I think the like I've had my tussles with the fan base. Like, it's I don't want to say the entire fan base, because I think that's reductive in a sense.
It's always the vocal minority, mate. Let's be real.
Yeah,
like, I can put it this way, I'll give you a very quick piece of maths that'll explain it to you. You might think my Reckless video had a really negative reaction, right? Because I think on total, Yamato, when I looked it up, there was maybe like 50,000 negative comments about this topic on the internet. But if I tell you, Yamato, there was something like 500,000 views on the content about that, then that means literally the majority is actually a silent majority that we don't even know what their opinion is. So, like, I know what you mean. The problem you have with all these fan bases, like T1 fans, back in the day, TSM, is the loudest vocal minority ends up looking like the whole majority. So that's why, for example, if you're a Karmine Corp fan, that's why everyone hates on you right now, because they've just seen all the people saying 0-1 in real life, and I hope your family wake up to a grey screen and all that like mental shit that they say. But the point is, that doesn't have to be the majority. It's just at the moment that he just looks at that because they're the loudest. Of course.
I think the danger always, right, is like I don't speak to any fan base as monoliths, because I think it's like the phenomenon always in terms of groups and sizes. But I do think there's a responsibility within a community to call out behavior that isn't
agreed.
That is like consistently bad. Like, I think you need to weed out like the bad actors, and I do think it's like mostly on Twitter. I feel like Twitter is the where nobody gets banned. There's always the people that are there, and it's kind of like a game almost in terms of like just bookmarking and getting points back.
PvP. You have to think of it that way, Yamato.
Yeah.
Like, if the rest of the esports is like PvE, World of Warcraft, this is like old school MMORPGs where if you log in, the second you leave the town, some bandits raid you and kill you and get your corpse, and you've got nothing. There's no point even going and respawning. That's fucking Twitter, mate. It's just PvP in it.
There's always like the extremes, right? It's like there's no rationality at all. No rationality at all. Casey can't do anything wrong. Because yesterday, like, I was very mild. Like, not yesterday, 2 days before, I posted a print screen of Umti being 4 levels ahead of Yike, and I wrote, damn. And then for me, that's, bro, Umti, Flame Horizoning Yike, when I expect Yike to be like one of the better junglers at the tournament, it's like a really big deal, you know?
Absolutely.
And bro, the aggressive ones, the crazy ones came after me. So, oh, you traitor. People insulted my mother and so forth. They insulted me, insulted my whole career. And I'm like, what the hell? It's like, how do you even survive on the internet if you get insulted by this? I pray to everything that is holy that nobody within the KC structure has this mentality, because I pray that they are resilient and don't give a shit about something like this, because I'm sure Yike even looked at himself and said, damn, I fucking entered. I played fucking bad. So it's like, it's just such a, they think they are protecting something, but I think it's just at a deep core, their own identity is so tied into being a fan, and it becomes kind of a measurement of who is the best fan. It's like, if I support them when they're playing their worst, I'm better than you. I'm a better fan than you are. It's like, you don't like them as much as I do, that means you're the enemy. And the sad part is, it radicalizes the other side, because there's also irrational people that are going to hate things just to hate. But it kind of, they kind of fuel each other, and they meet each other in the middle, because it gets to the point where people get afraid to speak up. My conclusion was, it's like, yesterday I was all in my head about it, because I am very, very, like, let's say I give anyone grace. I give them patience. I try to be understanding. I'm sitting and thinking, it's like, what should I say and communicate to these guys to make them understand, like, the error of this and what damage they're doing to the ecosystem and what's happening. That's what is my head. But today I came into this, like, I don't really care. Twitter is a fucking war zone. I just tweet and ghost, and I have fun with it. It's just like a kind of a side quest. Because in everything else, I do feel like interactions are good, you know? Like, on Twitch is good, YouTube is good. Most people aren't, like, crazy. But I do think, for example, what Kado did, right? Instantly, when there was any signs of, like, people, like, chat hopping and doing fucked up shit, like flaming teams that they are screaming against, whatever, he made it clear, made a statement. If you're spotted doing this, we're gonna ban you from the Twitch stream. And he made like a clear statement that this is not something that's supported. And I think that always there's a reflection of what's going on. You know, the weird thing is that I know Kameta as well is critical of his team. You know, he says things about his team when they're playing bad. You know, he's hoping that they perform good. You know, these are very, very like normal and basic things. Reaction to gameplay that you see on your screen. So I'm gonna just keep doing me. Like, in the end, the people that are attacking me, or usually it's like you can see like the history of comments on YouTube. I always check it, and it's always like they just come in to basically LARP, you know. They come in to just talk shit. So catering to these people is doesn't make any sense, you know, because the majority is fine, the majority is cool. People sit there and don't use Twitch chat, don't comment. So that's what it is in the end, you know.
By the way, one other thing as well is, like, obviously the first match, which was the Karmine Corp Team Liquid one, that's actually the sort of match we've been asking for years. We just want a series. This would be BL3, perfect, between like the best EU and the best NA team, instead of that bullshit, which I despise, by the way. As someone who, and I know a lot about formats because I've watched the entire history of esports, I hate people who ignore what the format is and then do that thing every year of like, but did NA outplay CU? It's like they're not playing the same fucking sport, you moron. You have to understand, if you get an easy Swiss draw and I get a hard Swiss draw, that's like we're both doing a sprint, but you're doing a 60-meter sprint and I'm doing a 100-meter sprint, and then you beat my time and you go, oh, I must be better than you. Like, well, no shit, you did like fucking 2/3 of what I did, roughly. Well, 3/5, whatever. You think in that scenario, it's easier for you. So what we want is this type of match. We want a direct head-to-head. And I have to say, I actually thought this match delivered, mate. I mean, it even had the perfect, like, KC bounce back with the win. So then you get like, the hype 30. Look, yes, it didn't end up maybe being as good as it could have been. That's why the KC, like, hate train began, which then was obviously compounded by the Flying Oyster ship. But actually, I don't even think it would have been the end of the world to just lose this opening series. I do think, though, this is one area where I will say, I think people very much do ignore psychology. They seem to only apply psychology, Yamato, in like an off-on binary manner, like it was a switch. So I think most people treat sports psychology for real as there's like a switch that players have. There's only 2 settings, Yamato. It's clutch or choke. And basically, a player who just is like at his first tournament, he's either faker, clutch. He's just, oh my God, he's clutch anyway. Uzi, he's just amazing. Or he's choking because he's just a rookie, isn't he? That's the way it happens. And even worse, they act like all the sports psychologist does is come in and go, oh, you haven't switched to that switch on. There you go, it's switched on now, right? Problem solved. I'm a sports psychologist, so you're now all clutch. We're now all going to win top, which, by the way, it doesn't even vaguely make sense. Some of the best sports psychologists of all time, unsurprisingly, have been hired to teams that had massive problems and they never got over the issues, or they mildly affected it, because maybe that wasn't the right guy for them. But anyway, the point I would make is this. I do think that the whole tournament might be different if Karmine Corp had won game 3 of this particular match. Like, I think actually starting with like the loss, because it's kind of like, to tie back into what you said, here's the real problem you had if you were a Karmine Corp fan, Yamato, is it kills all the hype that, 1, you lost your opening match, 2, it wasn't to the Asian teams, 3, it was to TL, so it was to NA, and then 4, TL wasn't actually the best LTA team until like the last minute of the tournament, basically. So the problem is no one really gives them respect, whereas the respect you supposedly earned as KC is like, hey, we just slayed G2. We took out Fnatic. Those were all like the GOAT. You're telling me like those were the G2 players, mate. Those are the ones I'm supposed to take years to topple. Well, now that I've toppled them, NA, that's not even a thing anymore. There is no LCS anymore. It's just some bullshit of like who can beat Whipple this week or something. That's just a good joke, whatever. And then, by the way, there's my other joke I'll just throw in there just to be petty, because that's what I'm always going to do. Whippo, mate, why don't you just tweet at Hillisang and tell him that he can contact you with his VODs and you'll review them on stream and teach him how to play an LEC again? Exactly, cocksucker. We can all do that game all day long. That's literally what you did to your competitors in the LTA, who, by the way, before the tournament even ended, beat you and eliminated you from the tournament. But that is hilarious all the same, that you're offering that. But so I'll just say that. I don't see you don't offer that to your boy Hillisang in that way, do you? Then again, the other thing you also could do, mate, is turn your stream on and just tell us all the private shit he said and thought about why he got kicked from Vitality. You can also just do that. Why change the habit of a lifetime? Anyway, let's rewind all that back. I want to actually talk about this TL series because, mate, I actually do think, as much as you can look at the KC side, it's actually mega positive for TL, this series, for me, mate. Like, they actually do show that, like, I'm actually now not bummed out they're there anymore. I thought they were so lackluster until the finals of LTA, Yamato. Like, they looked like they didn't even have, like, the same, like, actual, like, strength in the game. They just had, like, some basic aspects, and even their macro, they didn't even get to close games sometimes. So this actually looks like the team everyone was hyped about last year, where they were supposed to have this like poise and ability to close the game out and actually know how to play with an advantage. Like, I thought Team Liquid, we'll get to the KC thing in a second, I thought Team Liquid looked really good, mate.
Yeah, it's crazy when the jungler on your team like doesn't completely fucking run it down. What kind of a difference it can make. Like my core prediction, like what I put behind this match is that the timing of it is the worst possible for KC. It's the opening match, and Team Liquid as a team over time they lose steam because there's certain draft patterns that you're going to get hit by that is very specific to this team that you're not going to run into again.
Yeah, sure.
Right? For example, the Talia first pick after the Victor, Yon is out, like in game 3, is a beautiful one because Vladi is not ready to play the Orianna, so they have to commit to this all-in composition that was weaker. Or the Lucianami into the 4-5 of the Lulu ban. These are certain things that Team Liquid, in terms of their preparation, they are masters of hiding their weaknesses. And they streamlined the game super, super well for Umti, and they created situations where in the third game there was a Kisante, and I believe in the first game there was an Ornn for Impact. They basically created situations where APA could play things he's comfortable in, and he wasn't challenged to go outside of that. When he's falling on, like for example, on Azir and goes in that direction, this is where he looks weaker. So Team Liquid masked their weaknesses really, really well, and also highlighted their strengths, which is, I think, when their bot lane just has a matchup that is winning, like in the opening game, there was the Varus into the Ezreal winning. Like when Yeon and KoJJ have the agency in the game, they are driving the whole game. And the moment they push, they know how to connect everybody else within the game. And when Team Liquid is on the same screen, usually they look pretty damn good. I think macro-wise, conceptually, they look really good in North America as well, especially in that final weekend, because 100 Thieves, they had goal advantages. But in the end, they just kind of lost because in the setup and in the conclusions, Team Liquid was just better. It was like, regardless of what the gold bar was saying, which was visible back then, before the UI change, you basically just knew Team Liquid would just win because it was just a classic 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid, because 100 Thieves is just ogres just fucking hitting nails with a hammer. But in this one, I think what the key thing for me that looks so great about Team Liquid is that the team fighting seems to be back. They actually like played positions well. They were hiding around areas. They had like clear markers of when they want to go and when not to go, because this was the key thing that I thought was a problem at the Worlds last year, was a problem regionally this year. And this time around in this series, Team Liquid actually looked cohesive in the way they actually start fights. And I have to say again, bro, Yeon and CoJJ just find ways to surpass themselves, because these guys are just legit as fuck. While I think the other players, you can point to clear flaws that they have. Impact in that match they played against Kana when he had Ambessa into, of course, the Camille. There was a 2v2 on top side. This is not where you want to be if you're Team Liquid. 2v2ing skill matchups on top with Umti and Impact versus Kana and Yike. That's not where you want to be, you know. And then of course Camille Sejuani, you can argue this is a very strong combo, but that just broke open the game completely. And then you saw Impact back on the tanks. He's a stabilizer, and if they can pressure through bot, they look damn good. And I think this is just the key detail. It's like, if you know this about Team Liquid, you can actually adjust yourself towards them, and you just got to make sure that you have a winning bot lane matchup, because that's just the key for everything for TL.
I mean, the sad thing is, like, let's just stick with TL for a second. We'll do Karmine Corp in a sec. Like, I would even say if you watched the series against TS, it's like, look, now that Karmine Corp has beaten TS, it doesn't look as impressive. But, like, they were in game one, mate. They were, like, right in this series. Like, it wasn't like they were just outclassed minute one and there was nothing they could do. Like, I would even say the way they lost some of those games, like, is actually what is acceptable against the top Asian teams, which is people just have insane fucking carry potential on these teams like top esports and our life. You have some actual demons, like the absolute best player with the hands in those positions. So I didn't even think it was that terrible the way they lost to TS. Like, yes, obviously you'd like them to take a game or something, or for it to go a little bit further. But like, mate, you could believe for the first 15, 20 minutes, this is going to be a competitive series.
That game one, like Yeon was speaking different languages. You know, he was performing on the Ezreal. They had some angles in the game. I think game two was a little bit rougher because I think mid lane was just completely collapsed. I think as long as like Team Liquid, like in that game, they had the Rakan into the Braum, a decent matchup, and a jungler that level 3 ganks Jakob. That just seems to be the key. Because in that game, like that was one of the best games of Umti we saw all year long. Like he found the ganks, and then he went into the bush as well. And that was very, very similar to what we saw from Yike today. It's like spam ganking that bot lane seems to be just the key to breaking top esports. And that was definitely, they were in positions where they could have won. But the dangerous thing about top esports as a team is that they're a team that will take every fight possible, which can be really, really fucking bad in a lot of cases. But it also makes them the most trained in these random ass fights.
Absolutely.
They pull out fucking wins in team fights out of fucking nowhere all the time. There is very little stability in the way they play, but it also makes them very practiced in these scenarios where things are chaotic. And that's a key thing. It's like you got to keep up with what Team Liquid throw at you. Top esports throw at you. And in that series, I didn't feel like Team Liquid really did. It's like they were like losing on the side lanes, and then top esports found the windows to always like claw the game back, even though they were like in losing states. And that's what's so impressive about today, right? It's like KC had fantastic prep. I think 2 drafts straight up, just so much better. And at the same time, it's like they were challenging them. They were calling the bullshit. It's like they were posturing with confidence. Like when I see Kalis doing shit he did to like Super in the split to Jakilov, where he's posturing forward, baiting Varus ults out, Qs out, E's out, and posturing and challenging the enemy and not being afraid of the enemy doing exactly the same, because this is what top esports want to do. They're going to chin check you, they're going to face check you, and Crisp is going to act like he has 8 people behind him. Kanavi acts like he has 22 people behind him and 14 369s. But if you are in tune with where you're at in the game, you're not gonna fall for that shit. And that's what KC brought to the table today. A level of confidence in their view of the game. Because I think that's what top esports, when they played against Anyone's Legend, it seemed like Anyone's Legend believed them more than themselves when top esports was posturing. And that is the biggest challenge. If you overcome that, you can beat top esports for sure.
Actually, let's just do it in that order then. Since we were talking top esports, we'll connect that to KC and then we'll go back to the Flying Oyster one in a minute. If we just want to talk about the top esports win, mate, I also thought as well, that's exactly how you would want them to play. Like, they actually played super decisive and they were super ballsy early on. Like, mate, that one fight they even had where Gladi did that, like, Talia play was fucking baller. Like, if you actually watched that, that looked like TS thought they got the catch. They were the ones going to do, like, some demon time play and harass you, and then you're going to be all intimidated. Because I'm with you. The real problem as well is, Like this is one area I think like LCK took a long time to figure out the LPL teams. The LPL teams are amazing at doing what look like flip plays, but you're right, because they've done them 1 million times. It's not a full flip to them. They can sort of intuitively feel how it can work out. Like basically what you just said there applies to BLG for the last year since they had Knight, which is they would take every fight even when down in a game because they're just so good at team fighting. They can like actually that they sort of know that isn't always like a 30-70. For them, that's like a 45-55. And if the one guy, like the jungler just doesn't outplay or Knight does some godlike fucking holders on you, they can actually turn that and win that fight. Whereas to the other person, the Korean mentality is like, if it's not a 60-40, why take the fight? Like, it doesn't make sense. So I actually thought KC, this is also, by the way they play against TS, the way you have to play if you want to upset like an Asian team. You can't wait like TL did essentially until it's like, hey, we're at like an even mid-game state. Like, let's see who makes the better macro state. Listen, 1 million teams have tried that, mate. That's like take a number and get in line. 1 million people have lost doing that against the best Asian teams. If instead, essentially, you have to like out LPL the LPL, you have to like hit them in the mouth really early on because, bro, once they like accelerated this game early on, then Karmine Corp was in control. They looked really good, mate.
Oh, for sure. It's just that I'm happy that they had such a good read on what they needed to do for the bot lane matchup. It's like picking Ash Karma is cold. Like this is not what I associated KC with necessarily, and this is like a real-time adjustment to, of course, the new patch. Because if you stare down the barrel of a Kalista Renata, most teams in the past would just fucking look to play the lane swap and get out of that early lane situation. Where here they slam the Karma to match the early bot lane, and then the early ganks from of course the Skarner in the opening one was just so damn good. Like I think in terms of Kana as well, like the Jace into Ambessa, they picked like a really nice range composition.
If you think about what happened against Flying Oyster, everyone's number one thing, if they were doing that noob fan thing where you just pick the champion that didn't work, would be like, don't fucking pick Jace. What are you doing, ego picking that? Mate, it looked great in this game. What are we talking about? There was no problem at all.
Like when you can say currently in this alteration of KC, if Kana is the like worst performing player, it probably means KC is smurfing their face off.
Absolutely.
Because in this series, like Kana has been fantastic this tournament, even in the losses. But this series, he was the weakest performer. Yeah. And because like everybody on KC just stepped the fuck up. And in my mind, I think there were some misses that Top Esports did because we talked about the coach. We talked about Top Esports coach here. It's like letting the Talia through in the 4-5 when you're showing Kalista is crazy talk. It's like you are playing this composition that is so dash heavy with Ambessa and Kalista, and you give Talia on 4. I think that was just a massive mistake because getting Talia in 4-5 here when it's Vladi, who is a very known Talia player, I think was a huge mistake. Like they banned like Seraphine and Victor, I appreciate, but if they ban the Talia there, all of a sudden maybe the game looks different. And that's what's so important to highlight because I feel like everyone's so fucking reactionary in the community. It's like LEC lost against Team Liquid, and now I get the question is like, how do we fix Europe? How do we... It's like, they lost one best of 3. Yeah. It's like, my opinion of the state of the LEC will not change at all on the basis of First Stand. The First Stand is a 1-week tournament in like a very certain window in the year. Like you need to zoom out and look at things. Because I was concerned about LEC internationally because G2 lost Mickey. That's where my concern from. First Stand is not going to fucking change that conversation. But back to KC, the fact that they managed to get Talia in 4-5. That's crazy. And I think the whole world that is watching this, at least us Westerners, we are watching it and we see Ivan. He's going 4-5. Is he crazy? They're going to ban Ivan. He needed to pick Ivan on 3. They picked Leona. They're so greedy. They want to get the Ivan-Leona combo. They better fucking know, right? And then they banned Kennen and Xin Zhao, inviting the tree when you have Leona showing and Yon showing, like the perfect spot for, of course, Ivan. And then on top of that, like Top Esports, it's like the enemy picked Yon. I'm like thinking, Varus first pick, enemy picks Yon. I'm like, ooh, usually you ban Yon against Cream because Yon, like when you pick Yon against him, he's gonna slam Akali, he's gonna play Silas, and he's going to take the fight to you. This is the Chinese Zeka right here. And then he picks Koki. I'm like, what the fuck? Where's the prep? Then I'm like, okay, at least we're gonna get, let's say, like a Lilia or a Zyra. And then they pick Karthus. And don't point it out. Tom pointed out on stream that he pulled up like fucking Kanavi solo queue account and he saw that his match history was 5 Kartus losses.
Oh,
and
right.
he slammed Kartus. Like, what is that, bro? He's bringing his solo queue pain into the fucking series against Casey. I don't know about that. So prep wise, top esports got completely annihilated, and it's always, that's why like I brought back the point about the tournament and how people are judging everything, is that a moment in time performance can fluctuate based on so many different things. And that's why it's so damn impressive when teams have such a fucking high floor as well. Like that's why how a life looks so damn dangerous, because even on their worst day, on their goofiest champs, on their like 15th best champ in Vladimir and Zed, they still look like fucking demons. And getting that level of play is insanely difficult, and that's why we all were concerned about top esports, because their floor, like they are limbo dancing with fucking Satan sometime, you know, when they're playing at their worst. So their floor is in fucking like just down there, while their ceiling can be super, super high. So timing is key, prep is key, and now, like, if they played again tomorrow, am I gonna say that Casey is a favorite? No fucking way. It doesn't work like that. This was a great opportunity for Casey to punish, and they did really, really good prep, really good play across the board, level of confidence brimming through the roof. I loved what I saw from Casey.
I also thought as well, like, the difference is game 2 was actually quite a dominant game, mate. That was actually very good. Like, once they got properly ahead, there wasn't even any getting back in that going. I actually do think that Kanavi pick, mate, made it look like they were in his head. Because here's what I don't get. Like, this is basically what would have happened in the playoffs when you had, like, Fnatic play against KC. The logic is supposed to go, well, the problem for you if you're KC is they have the demon jungler in the league. They have Razork. He's just going to terrorize Yike, and then it's going to limit how effective you are in the game. It's the same with Kanavi. If people don't know, one of the reasons I was actually scared for a lot of teams. In fact, I think the number one reason you could say TES would be your favourite if you prefer them over Hanwha Life is surely Kanavi just abuses every jungler, including Peanut. Surely he's just going to fucking wreck these guys, because that's basically what Kanavi does. And you could tell, by the way, in game 1, he did try to do like Yamato. Like, he was trying to do that shit where he is like the ultimate like LPL jungler in the sense of like, just follow me up, bro. Wherever I go, even if I go fucking super balls deep 1.5 screens over, you better just be following me. My bot lane better be coming, my mid lane better be behind me, because that's just how he plays. But the thing is, when you do that, it is like, here's what I don't think people appreciate, Yamato. It's too easy to just watch a jungle performance when you have the fog of war off and you're watching on the stream and you're like a neutral party and go like, oh, he's pathing well. It's like what you forget is like what he sees, what comms he's getting, and what they'll never understand. They can never appreciate it except when they're playing. Funny. The reason why no one likes off-roll jungle in solo queue is it's the worst experience ever when you're behind in the game and you can't get any agency. But what they always forget is what it must be like to be a pro jungler and experience that. So, like, I don't think people know how intimidating someone like Kanavi is before, like, the game even begins, bro. Like you're saying, just in champ select, he can lock some shit and you're like, oh, great. Well, now I'm going to have the hardest game of my life. Like, I actually thought Yike held up really well, mate. Like, I actually think fair props to him. As much as people were criticizing the fuck out of him, unsurprisingly, yesterday, this is like a big statement win for me, mate. Because remember, that was the narrative everyone was taking from LEC finals. Like, maybe G2 let the wrong guy go instead of making it, they let Yike go. Like, well, this is actually believable in this game. He played dope in this one.
He smurfed his fucking face off. Like, I think the game opened up so well for KC in game 1, where there was a circumstance where basically Kanavi was in a situation where his bot lane was getting pushed in because enemies playing Ashe and Karma, and then he played for level 4 to try to contest on the wave that gets level 3 on bottom side. But I think Kanavi should have pivoted there and maybe level 3 gang bot, because there was this danger that Ashe used her hawk shot very early, and there was a window for them to get level 3 gang because they warded late as they were pushing wave 3. Kanavi didn't take it, and then they looked to play like the 3v3 on bottom side, but that's where Vladi like swooped in and just got like this double Talia combo, and Yak didn't get the reset. Like, they tried to all in, which is a sound idea with Kalista, Renata, Viego in that river, but then Yike kited out. He survived with low HP, used his abilities super well. Casey looked in sync, and they were making sure that the all-in swing of Renata Q and Viego W didn't fall into a reset. And then after that, bro, Kalista had no sums, Renata no sums. Yike just knew the point of the game, and that was just to path into bot, collect the Drakes, make sure that if Draculov even looks wrong on Kalist, to break his ankles. And it was the same in game number 2. I thought it was so strange that Kanavi went for that invade on Ivan. I don't know. This was like such a burger flip, because I don't know if he assumed that they would he was marking bot side camps and he's looking to create kind of the split map after taking blue. but he just smote the Raptors, and then Cards was just so late into bottom, and it collapsed with Ivan level 3 into bot because Ivan could just collect his camp so damn fast and of course get level 3 so quickly. They burn all the sums, and all of a sudden it was just a repeat of game 1 where all that pressure into bot, Leona kept flash, and then Kalis was just on the board with the early double kill. It just seems the top esports recipe is now clear on the table, and I think the key thing for me when it comes to KC, regardless of the prep or whatever, it is funny how scheduling is such a hell of a thing. Because if they were in a situation where, let's say, they played against How Alive yesterday and they had CFO to play and that was the last game, all of a sudden I would feel a lot more different. Like I would feel so different about it. But that's something that you just gotta deal with, right? You just gotta deal with. But I have to say, from a business perspective, also to schedule the early games for CFO, KC, TL, KC so early, I think it was not a good idea. You know, you want to have the hopes alive as long as possible. Because now we're sitting here. Right. Now we're sitting here thinking, oh, they have to beat How Alive. Well, that requires some fucking miracle. Top esports against CFO could maybe happen. Maybe top esports is the 5th best team at this tournament. Maybe, but in a world where they schedule the CFO KC match last, you would always have some crazy spice, to come through. But maybe they just assumed KC would beat Team Liquid because that's what the bookies thought, and that's what the world thought. So.
Let's talk about this, because here's the thing. On the one hand, if people don't know, it's actually so rare in series play that the Western team ever wins. Actually, just Karmine Corp beating TES is actually one of the bigger upsets in Western League of Legends history. Most stories are sadly just like that bullshit Misfits one from 2017 or FlyQuest last year, where it's like, we almost were. Like, I'm so bored of almost, mate. Like, the problem is you have to actually do it. It's like that great line I always tell you that I do think is one of the best quotes of all time, that Mourinho quote, where it's like, finals are for winning, not playing. Like, you're not supposed to go, hey, I was in the finals. Like, do you win it? Like, the point was, like, that was your chance to win, bro. That was the significance of it. It's not that he came second, which is good, but it's not the same as winning, is it? So the point is, right, look, the Karmine Corp over TS is actually a banger result. But on the other direction, losing the CFO in a best of 3, 2-0 is also really embarrassing, like, upset the other way around. Like, that, by the way, that's worse than losing the fucking Kaboom or whatever. Like, because the problem with this CFO game as well as this Yamato, like, it was a best of 3. You got 2-0 clapped. And if you watch the 2 games, these are actually embarrassing games, mate. Like, game 1 begins with that absolute clown fucking first blood, where they do like a bad solo queue play where the guy tries to teleport in behind like the trio, except his teleport, this isn't the old fucking meta where you can cancel the teleport. Like, he's fucked from the second he starts to teleport. And in fact, by the time he even presses that button, his team has like just lost enough health that you actually can see like, no, this is going to go fucking really badly, isn't it? And as soon as they match with the teleport, you're instantly going to be down in the game. And then after that, if you go to the next game, the second game, they get actually smashed, mate. It was really embarrassing. They just get the Dove bot lane. Like, this looked really amateurish, I've got to say. Like, as much as I want to give some props to Flying Oyster, like, remember, the Doggo guy all those years ago was, like, fucking actually pretty good on that PSG talent when they famously went, like, the 5 games in that MSI semi-final. Like, we know that guy. There's some players there, but then Yunjia, everyone who's watched the LPL knows that guy was really good. He's really good in the LMS/PCS as well. But the problem is, like, I thought the way that they lost is my problem with Karmine Corp. It's not even that you lost, but the way you lost was embarrassing, I thought. Like, you actually got outplayed in this series. What did you think?
Yeah, it was so strange because especially in the game 1 draft, it's like Ambessa, Vi, Kaiser, Aurora, Rakan. It should be you reach level 6 and it should be smooth sailing. Yeah. The coordination, the idea of the composition is so streamlined. It's basically press your buttons on the same target together. But even with that in mind, they struggle with that basic concept. There was moments where Yike like overreached, especially that mid fight. They had like a good fight going. They were 2 for 1 up, and they could have just reset and got Drake 3. But instead, Vi just like Q flashes in, and he just like overreaches guys.
Fighting in general, mate. Like, if you notice, they would do that thing that I hate, Yamato. Normally, it's like LPL teams that kill you for this. They would do it where it looks like positioning-wise you're winning the start of the fight, but then they just turn on you and collapse like back in on you and just destroy you. Like, the amount of times they got chased out and killed was sad in this series, mate.
Yeah, it was so strange. It was very, very strange. They looked, in that series in particular, they just looked like mentally broken. There was that one fight that happened in River where they were basically like in the game 2, they were hitting the dragon, right? And then Nautilus was like trapping in Tribush. And then they just all scattered in 4 different directions. Varus flew there, Nautilus flew there, and then Yon went there together with the jungle. And I was like, that was just insanity, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like where they landed draft-wise too, just being in a position where they're playing like Brand, like that's not the recipe that we know KC for, you know, like the super carry junglers is not what they like performed on. Brand also weaker on the patch. I was unhappy to see, you know, the Brand come through there, because this is just not what KC has showcased. And it just seemed like one of those moments where, ooh, we're not performing like this. Let's change things up. Let's turn the fruit bowl around, and maybe we see some different colors here, and the environment and the perspective is a little bit different. But it turns out, like on the other side, there's like rotten fruit, and you're like, you know, you want to fucking turn it back again. Make sure that Yak has utility and Skarner and Ivan and so forth, and it's just a better look. That KC best of three to find themselves between that day and the next day. I feel like looking at it from outside, it seems like they are digesting things real time, because to bounce back into top esports and play so fearlessly and really like one-to-one in terms of how they approach things against like a worse prep G2, like this was the level we wanted to see. But the short turnaround time, of course, carried a lot of risk, and the fact that Casey managed to bounce back from that terrible performance, because it was ass. That was like the weakest anyone ever looked in the entire tournament in terms of like the context of 1BO3. KC like set the floor for a performance at this tournament, and it was atrocious. But I'm impressed that it bounced back.
No, I mean, another thing I want to point out as well is this actually makes me think of something else, which is essentially what Karmine Corp is also learning about. Because you have to remember, their coach is a rookie at this level too. He hasn't been at fucking international tournaments. There's the differences in how you approach like the scale of where you're playing in the industry. So this is a point Peter Dunn made on my show, Best Damn League Show, many times throughout the split, which was he would identify drafts where it's like, oh, the reason Karmine Corp lost this draft is because those are like the champions that in the ERL they would have drafted and gotten away with it because they would have hands checked their opponents. And so they think that champion is fine to play or like works in this context. But what they discovered is at the LEC level where players are even better and can deal with stuff like that, maybe that's actually just a bad pick. Bro, I think some of that, actually what you've seen at this tournament, forget just player performance and his tag armors, all that shit, right? Pour that out the window. Just look at the drafts alone. It looks like also KC is adapting to what is our actual identity internationally, because that's the key thing, Yamato. You've been international. It's not, you're not identically the same team that you were domestically. You have to change it up, and especially if you're going to play against big dogs like the LPL and the LCK, you've got to come with like an angle. Like, what are my strengths? How do I come? By the way, think about what we just said about Team Liquid. That's why everyone reveres the Team Liquid coaching staff, because they're good at both things you'd want an underdog to do. They shore up their weaknesses. In fact, when they do a good job in draft, you don't notice they exist. That's why APA got away with being like, I'm the fucking NA caps for like a year almost. And then the other thing is you obviously emphasize your strengths. Like the joke is like people didn't even flame Umti until this year. By the way, he was never a great player in Team Liquid. They just were able to make it not look like he was an issue. So I think Karmine Corp, that's part of the teething problems too, right? They're also figuring out like what is our identity when we come internationally, and also what's our identity when we play people with better hands than us. That's like kind of a new thing for us.
Definitely, it's such a challenge because there is so much data flying at you. You know, it's like and every team falls into this hole. It's like Top East was sitting there and they're like, well, no, like fucking Ivan is a piece of shit. Like nobody fucking played this. Like, oh, Tazan played a game of Ivan and Tian did, but who cares? This champion, right? It's like there in that moment. It's like, do you trust the data that you have for sure, because they should know that he plays Ivan, or do you like play against it and just assume it's not good? It's like you have so many different things coming at you in terms of scrim data, in terms of how you react to certain games. It's very easy to like lose yourself in those decisions, because you need to kind of trust your gut in those moments. So if we look at any international tournament, for example, last year at Worlds, like there were teams that maybe Genji and How Alive had more to offer if they trusted the gut call of like letting go of, let's say, Ari earlier.
Yeah.
And Bilibili T1, they let go of Ari really early, even though they were a part of that hype train. Knight, Faker, yes. Everyone's playing Ari. And then Silas came into the picture. And then that series, How Alive versus Bilibili, it evolved to the point where Silas was first picked, right? In the final game. And then the Galio came through. And in that moment, it's like they dropped the Galio Kindred with Shun playing, of course. That's like a gut call that you follow. Either you go with the norm, with what you've practiced, and you just kind of let go with the flow in a sense and let it play out, or you fucking trust your gut with the little information you have, and you jump to the next level and elevate to the next level. And looking at these series, right, it's like finding yourself again, especially when there's such a big patch. Like, that's the crucial detail for me. It's like they could have just carried on doing the same shit. For example, for us, when I was at Worlds with Fnatic 2022, the whole meme was Ozzy, Lucian, Nami, right? So we played the whole fucking playoffs playing Ozzy, Lucian, Nami, Twitch, Yumi, Zeri, this meta with Lulu. And then we come to the World Championship, there was no major changes. So we just fucking stuck with the recipe. And we were, like, even though, obviously, I take pride in us beating T1 in that 1BO1, but they let us have Lucian, Nami 4-5. That's a crazy thing to consider, where the meme in the West is Yamato just drafts Azir Lucian Nami. And then I get Lucian Nami after picking Azir, Poppy, Aatrox in the 1-2-3. And the big curveball for us there was Europe played so much Poppy, and we knew that if we pick Aatrox, Poppy, jungle is going to mask all the counters that, of course, Zeus wants to play into the Aatrox. So this is something that, of course, real time, if you look at T1, if you zoom out, their problem in that tournament was that they were so used to countering Aatrox that they lost themselves in the value that even brings them. Because in the finals, in the end, they lost against Aatrox because they were so in like just inside the idea that we can give Aatrox and we can counter it, and that gives us value. But at some point, it wasn't giving value anymore, and Aatrox just dominated the series. But it's just a question of how do you assess that data? There's so many examples of this happening real time. Another great one is like 2019 G2. If they didn't scrim, maybe they would have beat FPX. Because scrimming just fucked them up completely. And they were sitting there fucking theory crafting, and they ended up on Pike mid lane. You know, sometimes just going in the wrong direction just ruins everything, and you just look so terrible on the day. And I guess that's the beauty of League in the end.
No, I think a point you were making there that maybe was a little bit more subtle because how you ended the point is that, like, essentially even the information you're getting from your scrims, that feedback can be misleading. I mean, by the way, the joke is you've even been in this position yourself, mate. It's why, if everyone doesn't know, one of the hardest scrim partners ever in the LEC were all the different lineups of LEC, of Fnatic, when they had like fucking Hillsang, when they had Self-Made, because these are players that in scrims just like end the scrim at 9 minutes, like win or lose, by the way. So that skews so much what you think you can do in the game, and even what your opponent does. Like, the joke is, if you're an LEC fan who only ever watched the games and you don't know behind the scenes, I get why you actually think Self-Made was overrated, and I was just like glazing him because he had mechanics. Like, you don't know how crazy, it's the same with Bo, you don't know how crazy these guys are in scrims. Like, the stories are actually unbelievable. But the problem is, it's hard to know, both as the opponent and your own team, how much do I trust that info? Like, will this even work in the game? So I agree, same thing. Like, if people don't know, that really is like the number. If you could make one wish about G2 2019, it wouldn't even be like, oh, do this, do that. It would just be like you're saying, I just want to, 1 second before the final, Yamato, just do that Men in Black device and just tell them, like, you don't even know who FPX are. Because I actually feel like if they just played a normal straight up 5v5 game, they'd have had a chance. Whereas actually what they did, simultaneously, they already were like weak to that style anyway. And then they just drafted themselves into a complete corner. And the worst thing is they looked like they had no agency in the game. So no, I know what you mean. It's really hard to know, because actually, like, first of all, someone's destroying you in scrims. You're going to think, well, I can't possibly play against that. So it's going to skew your whole draft against that. And then even worse, you'll just get sometimes fake info from your own scrims of like, oh, this is fucking sick. And then, like, the most famous example ever, think about how everyone reveres Dylan Falco. Dylan Falco himself had that really embarrassing Hooney plays Lucian top fucking playoff series where he thought that was the shit because they apparently played like CLG or something. It worked. And then the joke was every other team not only could deal with that, but could deal with it like lol and then just win the game. Like that's real. Like, that doesn't mean the coach is an idiot. Like, what you're trying to do, and this is the really hard part, right, is you're trying to figure out which parts are the noise in this signal and which parts are the signal, like which parts the important data here, which also the learning curve when you're at a tournament like this, like we say, it's day to day, mate. Like, you haven't got a week to get your shit together like Worlds. Like, you have to get together today, because if you didn't win the match today against TS, it was over already. Like, you were basically done in the group. So no, also the pressure on the KCE coach stuff, like I said, and Team Liquid is enormous. Yeah, it's enormous. They're also mad under pressure. It's not just the players.
Oh, 100%. Bro, the deciphering like data is like fucking deciphering news outlets, you know, that are pushing the same story.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this script, fake news. It's fake news. And I was like, oh, I
Yes.
know that. And then it's like, it helps to know history, you know, it helps to know history because some of the patterns
Yeah.
reemerge. It's like everyone out there watching, they're like, why the fuck? Why the fuck is this team? Where did they get the confidence from to fucking look in Italy? Like, that's such a common thing that just like shows up. There was this meme I remember in the LEC. It was when playoffs comes around, everyone starts blind picking Braum because everyone is in their head in the regular split. It's like, no, you can't lane Braum. It's impossible. They're gonna pick trash. I'm gonna fucking stomp it into the game. It happens in scrims. Trash lanes go 3-0. Braum gets fucked. The game is over. But then it's like, oh, we come into playoffs, and then you see the experienced players like a fucking, let's say like a Mebdi, or let's say fucking Hilly, you know, they start locking in Braum and they win games because they realize what fucking matters. And navigating that is always fucking fun because you see teams falling into the same traps over and over again. But that is the challenge, especially with players, because they can be very, let's say, you know, very sensitive in terms of their information too, because you need to kind of pad your words in a pillow sometimes. It's like they can come in, it's like, I just played solo queue. I got fucked by this Hecarim. I want to play Hecarim. And you're like, what the fuck? He just played one game and now his whole worldview has changed. How do I navigate this, you know? And it's just a question of like, you have to have a foundation. And then if that foundation moves, it needs to be with good fucking reasons. Because if it's spontaneous, you have no foundation and everything becomes so random. I remember that fucking year when we were terrible with Fnatic in spring 2021, where we were so terrible, that was such a big problem for us. Like Selfmade in particular, he had a very skewed view on champs because he would like play all the assassins because this was like the Talon and the Diana era, and he was so good at them. We played them in scrims. I wanted to play them more, but then he was like, oh, I don't want to play them, and then it just became like we were in this constant limbo where I didn't know where I had my jungler coming into the next day. It's like, does he want to play that? Does he want to play this? I don't know what the hell is happening, and that could be that is also like a part of the challenge. You need to like just have conviction, stick with it, because if you are worried that you're doing the wrong thing, you end up doing nothing at all, and that can also be a massive fucking problem.
Agreed. And by the way, I've also realised that you could actually do, sadly no one has the balls to do this because they just like get hit on, he look me funny. You can actually do an amazing Donald Trump skit that's just about him like reacting to drafts. I've realised there, Yamato, like fake news. Everyone's saying the Carthus jungles, the fake news. It's not it. Listen, Yamato, he's a fucking great coach. He's tremendous. On a mountain somewhere, I'd like to be on a mountain, but I'm stuck here with you guys in the White House. And you could do a whole fucking thing like that, mate. It could be amazing. But you'd have to have the balls to pull it off. There you go. Okay, right. There you go. True that.
Oh, man.
You're still going home, Yamato. You did get vitality in that Worlds, but you're going home to Serbia, wherever it is. Poland. There you go, Poland. There you go.
Funnily enough, you know, like I we probably heard the story, right? But I signed with Team Liquid, and then like this was peak COVID 2020, and they were like, "This is not gonna work." Because fucking Trump just closed the borders. Like it's impossible to get a green card. And that's when I went to Sandbox. Yeah. And so it's like I signed, everything was a done deal. I would join the Team Liquid. There was fucking not even playoffs the year before. This was in double lift left.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, this is a fantastic opportunity. Work Team Liquid. I like the org and so forth. Called JJ. And then Trump said, no. Green cards, no green cards for anybody.
Funnily enough, that's another thing people don't know. It wasn't just because of what then ensued in the next few years that changed history. That did the same in my career, Yamato. A detail a lot of people won't know. I'll just briefly do a sidebar about it here. Because you wouldn't have known this in League because it didn't change things at the time. This is when we'd already started doing Summoning Insight again. Because I think it was like latter part of maybe like 2019 that Monty came back and we started doing all that content. Because if you remember, Season 9 Worlds was the one where we actually did it from that like studio where like we did like the NFL Red Zone. We had Loco Doco and did all those skits and cold opens, and I came to LA, etc. And what people don't know is the next year we hadn't done this company yet, but we were thinking of something like this. Like we knew one day down the line, for example, one thing we want to do is things like skits. So the actual idea, if people don't know, when I was doing this tournament called Flashpoint, was I wasn't just coming to do the tournament, which was going to last like a month. I was actually coming originally, Yamato, to move all my entire life to LA, and I would have lived in LA, and I would have done like this Flashpoint tournament and like, you know, shows. But then the idea was, because me and Monty would have been in person, we could have like hired a space and done like all skits and crazy shit and done like content that would have been like had a production level you couldn't have through webcams, basically. But exactly the same thing happened, which was right around this exact time. Obviously, it then changed. Like I had my visa at the time, but then that was for a limited period of time. And then, for example, like the status of like how you live there and how long you stay for and what's good shit. And so luckily, it actually in the end sort of worked out because I didn't end up moving there completely. I just went and did that first tournament, then came back. And actually, it turns out now years later, I don't want to go there. I don't want to live there. But I actually would have just been like sort of trapped at that point in time, Lo. So in a weird way, the timing was actually pretty good for me in that sense. So wait a minute, you would have basically been on the Team Liquid that was like the one where they had to bench doublelift immediately, right? You would have had like the real lineup from the really good one, the one that was like the MSF
Broxa, JJ, Tactical, Impact.
Ooh, okay.
Well, that's the fucking bro. I was like, damn, this is a fucking fantastic opportunity. And they didn't make playoffs. Jesus. Bro, this is gonna look good on the resume, you know, because this is easy work, bro. Fucking legends across the board. And they made worlds. They had that win against what was it, the European team? Which European team was it? I fucking forget.
Mad Lions, maybe? No. Wait, sorry, 2020. Who was it they beat?
Shit, who was it they beat?
Team Liquid in 2020.
2020.
Because 2020 was the Damn One Worlds. So who could they have beaten? I think didn't they beat G2 in a game? I think they won a game against G2. It was the group with Sunning. It was the group with Sunning and G2 in, and it was like there was a million.
Yeah.
They had a game against
Graves, Oriana, Horn. Yeah. That was the one with the late invade. Yeah. No, this was it. Yeah, they were legit. They were legit. They were cool. It's thinking back at what could have been, bro. It's crazy because it's like then I went to Korea instead, and it's weird how everything is so fragile, which brings us back to the tournament. You know, it's like you mentioned at the beginning of the show. It's like one result changes the narrative of the conversation. And what I wanted to bring it to is it's crazy to me. Like I don't know what your thoughts on this is, but if anyone draws any conclusions on the state of LEC or state of LTA based off of this tournament, which has so much random elements and new kind of things to it. This is like borderline EWC, you know, this tournament, but with a slightly better format. But it's kind of like wild that we got the questions like, oh, what will you do to save LEC? No, bro, it's the fucking usual shit. It's like KC did a great job locally, and they are underperforming during 1 week. Like that's not a fucking detriment to what they accomplished. That doesn't mean that KC and like G2 and Fnatic are that garbage because KC underperformed against CFO. That there's no connection there at all. It's underperformance on the day, and you need to look at the body of work. And I think there was a lot of overreactions, man.
No, I'm with you. I also think as well, people have to remember, Europe didn't even get to Fearless until playoffs began. Before that, it was just BO1. So that wasn't even really playing the same format. Like you were getting no experience based on that could apply to this tournament. Then secondly, this tournament is not the same style of League of Legends because of the lane swap shit that we had in LEC, which is what KC won off, by the way. That was like a major factor as to how they won. I mean, that's one of the reasons, if you don't get it, guys, that's implied as to how they made Tag Armors work. Like they just were very smart and shrewd with how they did the lane swaps and what they picked, etc. So already you were going to have to answer those questions. And then secondly, you are right. This is one of the areas, people, it's actually one of the simplest analytical lenses, but it's really, really bad, unfortunately, which is you can't do what it's called. Like I first heard of this in the sport MMA, UFC, Yamato. So I always term it what they called it on forums there. It's called MMA math. The MMA math goes like this, right? I'll give you a random example. The MMA math goes, right? Well, since, what's his name? Oh, I'll give you a great example of it, actually. Since that guy, Stipe Miocic, lost to John Jones, but then previously Stipe Miocic has also beaten Francis Ngannou, that means that John Jones would beat Francis Ngannou. Because the logic goes, John Jones beat the one guy who himself beat someone else. So that means John Jones would beat that guy. But you know this, that's not at all how matchups work in sports. Like the question always will be head to head though, how would John Jones match up against Ngannou, right? That's the question. And so what you're saying here, which is correct, is like you can't say, because of that TL series, that means that TL would also smash Fnatic and G. No, that's not actually how that works at all. In fact, I even made this point on the last episode. When you actually saw how the final worked out, now you can even see why it's even implied that even though Fnatic came third, the other teams maybe even thought they might have been the best team and looked like they were maybe going to do the run to the final, and G2 was potentially even prepping mentally for Fnatic more than they were for Karmine Corp. So it doesn't work that way. I mean, it's the same problem that I think the LPL's had all these years, Yamato, which is because every single year, one LPL team is sort of shit in the group stage that shouldn't be, and then nearly always one or two of them just fall apart in the actual playoffs. People just take that as like, right, that means all of Korea is better, and since the Korean team wins the tournament, the LPL is significantly worse. So it's like, no, because the question in this scenario is like the specific LPL team. So I'm with you. The reason why that doesn't work also is specifically the rookie aspect of Karmine Corp. Like, one, G2 and Fnatic actually have much more veteran players. I don't think they would have played as scared in some of these games. So the joke is they might even have done better. But then at the same time, like, the reason why they lost also is they weren't playing against this Karmine Corp. Like, you know what? If Fnatic had played against the Karmine Corp that played against CFO, yeah, they probably won that season. They'd be in the final. The point is, though, it was a different set of circumstances. That's why that CFO Karmine Corp didn't show up in the LEC. So I'm with you. That seems like a simple way to solve it. Like, well, if you beat the champion of a region, you would beat all that. That sounds like it makes sense, but it actually makes less sense the more factors you consider and the more you sort of look at like the specific circumstances. I'm with you, because I also do think, as I give the example there, this has been a very simple way that people who don't watch the LPL just dismiss the LPL. What you do is you see the LPL like on the Leaguepedia and you go, what the hell? FPX is smurfing. And then they go to Worlds and bomb the group stage. You go, I knew that region was just trash anyway. Well, it's like, that's not how you can't do extreme examples like that. I mean, I can tell you, we actually have had an equivalent of this in games like Counter-Strike for many years, Yamato. We don't have it anymore, but we used to have actual national scenes in Counter-Strike. You could have like the Swedish qualifier for a tournament like the World Cyber Games. And it used to be famous, actually, that sometimes you'd have a team which was actually like not particularly good domestically. They'd always lose to their rivals, but they were the better team internationally. They just matched up better against like, the Danish squad or the American squad or the German squad. Meanwhile, the team that was like the best in Sweden might only be the best in Sweden. They might be like the fifth best when they go international. You sometimes get weird aspects like that, because the other thing you are adding in here as well is the circumstances of LEC and First Stand aren't just like it's not European teams. It's like the pressure's different. You're in bloody Korea right now. There's another thing we didn't even mention, by the way. If you had to say on paper what team should fail immediately in an international tournament, how about one where the two carries, there's Vladdy and Kalist, are like essentially rookies. Vladdy played a split last year, guys. They're rookies, and you go into another continent. It's Asia at that, by the way, where the clock's going to be super fucked. Remember, they always say going west to east is the hardest. Asia for Europeans is the west to east. We all know that North Americans complain about going from North America to Europe. You get that if you go from Europe to fucking Korea. So it's already going to be the worst time in hours. And then I'll even throw in there, you never know with some of these teams. I've known people from the west, believe it or not, Swedes are actually terrible for this, Yamato. Some of them back in the day used to be really against the idea of trying foreign food. So famously, this might blow your mind, because now it's the opposite in esports. If you go now to Korea or China, people know, like, hey, even if I haven't had it before, I should try some of this food. I've heard it's really fucking good. Back in the day, people used to be so ignorant. I'm not even joking, Yamato. I went to an event in China once where every Swedish player complained that the only food he could eat was like KFC nuggets because he wasn't going to try Chinese food. And they were making it sound like it was like some alien shit. I remember telling them, like, mate, it's fucking banging. What are you talking? It's cheap as fuck. But if you're against that, you're going to have a very different perspective on what those 2 weeks was like than me if I'm enjoying all the fucking noodles. If you could only have KFC nuggets 3 times a day, like, you're going to think you're in prison. So, like, I think people actually underestimate how different the circumstances are. This hasn't been in the LEC studios, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. And then the flip side, right? It's like how our life is looking crispy clean, but they're playing in the same fucking studio. They have their offices, their apartments. Yeah. Like, logistics is a part of the game, man. That's a part of the game.
Great.
So I don't like when people think it's an insult where you say it's like, oh, T1 is really good at navigating all the chaos of worlds. That's a skill. That's a skill. And we've seen a lot of players be underwhelming at the World Championship and not make it through because, they are unfamiliar to those circumstances. But speaking of looking good in the game, I want to help everybody that is watching to look good outside of the game. Look at us, bro. Look at our shirts, bro. Look fucking marvelous. Look at this, man. Fantastic. Everybody knows what it is. It's Into the AM. Into the AM currently, they have a 70%, up to 70% clearance sale on graphic tees. And if you combine that, of course, with, our code, the elephant, you're going to get an additional 10% off, which is crazy. Usually people don't allow you to combine sales like that. I've worn this t-shirt so many times. Thorin says it best every time. We wash these, and I'm not an expert at washing, bro. I never read the label. I don't do anything. Like, I'm not a wizard at all. All my clothes shrink, not these bad boys. And what I like about these shirts too, they make us like they're kind of snug here,
They do
you
actually. They
know,
look
at the
they're good
arms,
fitting,
and then
aren't
they
they?
kind of like
Yeah,
slim you
true.
down, you know.
True.
Like, bro,
It is true.
I should work out more, but
Yeah.
these kind of, it's kind of like a cheat code for me, you know, and I'm
Yes.
kind of exposing myself for saying this, but you know, we are we are promoting a product, so I gotta be truthful. And the print stays the same. You know, I have like this Genji jersey, like a ruler Genji worn jersey, and I wear it sometimes, and then I go put it in the washer, but the print just disappears,
Oh,
bro.
it's sad, isn't it? It's just sad.
It hurts my heart.
Yeah,
And
of
this has
course.
remained the same. This has survived. The fabric is super, super nice.
Yeah.
I'm happy with it. My other shirts, my fiance keeps stealing them from me, but that's life, you know. That's just what you commit to when you put a ring on something, you know. You just, all your clothes are forever theirs. And I'm not the type of guy to I'm not gonna go in the other direction. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna wear feminine clothes. It's just not my style. But back to the code LFN. Go into the am.com/LFN. Get yourself 10% off. Utilize that 70% clearance sale. It's gonna do you good. Look good. Feel good. Thank you to LFN for always, you know, backing us up, and let them know that we sent you.
Yes. By the way, loads of people have bought into the stuff. It's been one of the most successful partnerships. And also, I agree with Yamato. It's actually just really good quality stuff. Like, I've had this one at loads as well. Look how, this looks like it's brand new, mate. Look at the colours. Like, they're all just popping off. So, I'm actually very impressed with that. I told you, I was very cynical. I assumed it was just a nature. By the way, I didn't even know this was about tech. I thought just all clothes, just like, it just fades in the wash and it gets worse quality and it feels terrible. I thought it's just like how many times you've worn it, like you say. But I've actually been very impressed with how durable these are, yeah. And obviously, I agree with you. I think that sale aspect is dope. I'm amazed more companies don't think to do this. But the fact that you can like stack the discounts basically is fucking baller too. So yeah, take advantage of that if you can. Thank you to the TM. Right, let's keep talking. So I think what we do now is we haven't really talked actually much about Hanwha Life. We just briefly touched on there, right? When Hanwha Life won the LCK, I think already on paper you had to say they're probably the best team in League of Legends. Because if you look who they had to beat, I mean, they not only beat all the best teams, basically, but the way they did it, like back to back to back to back and going full series all the way into the Fearless. And they could even, one of the things I thought was most impressive was they didn't, unlike, think about how Karmine Corp won LEC. From the lower bracket on, they just looked really good in most of the games, almost every player. There's actually games where like Peanut could sometimes look shit and they could still win the series. Like, that was what was even making me think, like, bro, I don't know if they're just the Fearless team or something, or just the Game 5 team, but this team is just built for like this current state of League of Legends. Like, they can just survive everything. And right, you might think as a result they should be like number one favorite for this tournament. Well, look, mixed with the fact that KC has already beaten TES, and TES, like I said, had a game against TL that looked a bit so. Mate, Hanwha Life look like right now, as of this moment, they are going to walk this tournament, bro. They just look way too good. Give me some thoughts.
I don't even think that they're gonna drop a game. Like, it just seems unfathomable because first, they have a range of champions that they can play at such a high level that no one can match. And at the same time, individually, it's very easy. Like, I thought Peanut, you know, there's something that is not aging well about my tier list is that I put Kanavi over Peanut, and I even went so far to put Yike over Peanut, which was the bold one.
Okay.
And that's the reoccurring meme now. It's like Yike over Peanut, Omega Lul, you know, which is fair, you know. Like, I dish and I can take, you know, it is what it is. But Peanut is performing well too. You know, he's playing a standard game. Like, some of the wizardry they fucking pull off when necessary. They have an aura. It just kind of reminds me of like Genji and Spring last year when they were like fucking like when they were just like throwing away these like lower bottom LCK teams. It's like, oh, you did something positive. It doesn't fucking matter. Go fuck yourself. And then it's like Zeka just activated in that Azir game against Top Esports where he just throws Kanavi into the turret of a fucking insane read where Kanavi, he's predicting that Kanavi is going to queue over the Raptor wall because of the natural progression of the game, pushes him into the turret, Nash is gone, Atakan is gone, the game explodes, and at the same time, it just seems like How Alive just don't miss a beat at all. It's like if anything goes wrong in the game, like a 3v3 or anything, it just doesn't seem to matter at all. Even today, they were having fun. I guess, be honest, it's like enemy shows Gragas blind. Zeus usually picks Aatrox. He picks Gnar. He plays that. But here they went Vladimir Zed. You know, it's not optimized drafting, but the fact that they can play these champions at an insane level, because just looking at the items, how they're playing mechanically and how they're playing the matchups, insane on these champions. And that in itself they just use that as a statement game to strike fear into the rest of the world. Like they are preparing for coming back to LCK, that people remember these champions, that they are playing them. You know, it looked like one of those games where a team is just playing for skins. I don't think that there is any team in this tournament that does any aspect of the game better than How Alive right now. How Alive has to trip over themselves. The competition for them is sadly not in this tournament. And it comes back to the same initial question. I am excited for How Alive when they're going to play against a T1 again, where they're playing standard lane matchups. Let's see that. Let's see that in fucking action. Let's see Korea in action again. And that brings me back to the fact that, you know, this patch is just so fucking different that the wrong teams are here. I want to see Elkin On versus Viper Delight in a 2v2 matchup with a jungler that just wants to go bot and party. I want to see T1 versus How Alive, and I also want to see this jazz. But I'm with you. How Alive, even dropping one game should be considered like a massive failure, unless they like do what they did today and pick like Vladimir Zed and lose against a team that is better prepared than a CFO. But nothing more to add about How Alive, man. They're too good.
Oh, that reminds me, there is one other thing we need to talk about, which is in terms of things not looking quite as good as you might have hoped at the international tournament, right? We actually have a problem that has only just reared its head right now in League of Legends, Yamato, but it's actually a semi-common thing in Counter-Strike if anyone follows it, which is in Counter-Strike, one of the problems with the game is Counter-Strike, especially, by the way, even more than League, needs like a HUD that is really good, like a good UI that you can see very quick. Like the famous one is recently ESL changed theirs. ESL had a really iconic one in Counter-Strike that if you've seen, it's like the best thing about it was always very, very uniform. And so the second your brain, if you're a Counter-Strike fan, would watch the screen, it's like a real HUD. If you were in like a mech suit, your brain knows like sort of where to quickly look with your eye. And so you wouldn't even have to think about like how much health does he have, what weapons there. Your brain would just quickly see it in your peripheral vision as you're watching. And it's like you wouldn't have to stop paying attention, right? In League, it's almost never changed. It's actually been a very, very simple overlay for most of the history of League of Legends. They haven't really tried to get fancy. Now, the reason in Counter-Strike why they've changed the HUD and the UI many times is one, you sometimes do it for style reasons. You're trying to show you're different to a competitor because in Counter-Strike, we have different tournament operators. It's not just Riot Games, as it were, here. And then secondly, sometimes you're also trying to actually like level up the process I just said. Like you're trying to make a HUD that has like more intuitive like way of showing. For example, in Counter-Strike, some of the things that are hard to show initially is things like the sidearm, like what pistol do they have, or like do they have a kit? Is that like bold enough? Did I make that like off to the side? Is it blocking some information on the screen? There's another thing you don't want to. In Counter-Strike, you're going to put it on the sides of the screen, so you don't want it too much over. By the way, they have the same problem in League. Sometimes in League, the reason why you can't see what the score is they turn that scoreboard off when they're having the fight in the Nexus, don't they? So that nothing gets covered on the bottom of the screen. A guy can't do a flank there and you miss it because of the scoreboard. So when they did this UI change, what did you think? Because I noticed everyone's initial reaction, it's nearly always the case anyway, it's because you're not used to seeing it, is you just think this fucking sucks. Why have you But I want to know, now you've seen it for a few days, what do you think of the HUD change overall? Like, is there like a logic to some of it? Do you think it's worse? What's your overall take at the moment?
Like in my mind, like I think the key idea that you don't want to show the champion portraits twice. I think trying to experiment ways to only show the champion portraits once makes sense, because that does take like screen real estate.
Yeah, that's true.
That is like important. And at the same time, what League players are like used to is that when you click somebody in game, you see their stats in the top left corner. That is usually the corner where the least interesting thing is occurring. So they wanted to move that. The change in the first place, like obviously, it's like we've watched League for fucking forever, so it's a fucking smack in the face when it changed. But I do think in the beginning, like the adjustments they did in between the days was a massive game changer. I don't know, it's borderline. It was so bad in the beginning that I always think that Riot started it off really, really bad, so they could look like heroes. And then the adjustment, it's like the adjustment period. That is my conspiracy. That the adjustments they made are so well welcomed that, you know, the pain from the first day feels lessened. Because if they started where they were today, I think people wouldn't have as positive of a reaction to it on, of course, day 3. So I wonder if Riot did that intentionally, because what was so weird in the beginning was that the bar, due to the champion icons being a little bit too big, it wasn't uniform with the information. Like the boxes weren't the same size as the text and where the HP was and so forth, that the box was a little bit too big. So when they were showing like stats or I have like MasterCard gold graphs or whatever, it just looked like it was out of place because it was just this black bar that just wasn't, like my OCD was just like fucking going crazy because I'm just seeing that bar. I was like, whoa, but this is just not in the center. It's driving me insane. Today, they did change, they changed the size of that bar. They made it smaller. The icons are smaller and the XP is there. I think these changes are really, really good. The final thing that I would want is that in the top corner, I think in terms of how they present the data there, I think the colors are a little bit fucking, it is just too glaring to me. And at the same time, I would say that like showing a screen with like, oh, the 1-0 Rift Herald, 1-0 Atakan, I think that's completely pointless. And I think that showing feat of strength, I think that's something that they should do more active if, of course, the casters are talking about it. It's like, oh, the feat of strength right now, they're playing for this. Because it's such an insignificant point in the game that it feels just shoehorned in. Like that rotating thing they have in the top left, I'm just sitting there and waiting for the Drake count. I don't think that makes sense. Like Drake count is the most important thing, and then grub count matters too, but you can put the grub count on that Drake counter, and then there you go. Don't rotate it. I don't need to see feat of strength. I don't need to see which team took Herald. It only really matters if they have it in their inventory and they used it, because past that point, I'm not sitting 28 minutes into the game. It's like, oh, which team took Rift Herald? No, who fucking cares? So I think as long as they fix that rotating thing, I think this UI, I think it comes from a good place. Because I do think when they switch the view, where they remove the bottom bar and the HP and everything is on left and right, I think that was super clean from day one. What was your impression, Thorin? What did you think? Did you have to fight back?
I thought it looked way worse,
was...
mate. I thought it did look way worse. Not just because of the initial effect that like your eye doesn't know where to look or what you're looking at, and you sort of like having to sort of manually do it before you get used to like robotically just knowing, like I say, with your peripheral vision. But I also did think that the information was less clear. Like I actually was really confused as to what they thought the aim was. Like I'll give you an example. If someone goes on LS's Twitter, the Korean one had a way better one. Their like health bar had the little lines. You know the classic thing in League where the problem is a health bar doesn't get larger because it'd get ludicrous for like a fucking Cho'Gath or something. What happens is you make those little lines to show that this bar just contains more health because the lines become closer together. They already had that on the Korean one, believe it or not. So their health bars already made way more sense and were more intuitive. They looked almost like a fighting game health bar, if someone knows the analogy. So I do think stuff like that is what you need to level up. The problem is, this is what I don't get, is I don't know why you debut something like that on like an international tournament. Like test that out regionally, you know what I mean? Go through like, make this like a regular season thing where you fuck around with these things. Like if you want, then try one thing one week, try one thing another. It's not that the stakes aren't that high. The problem is when people are tuning in to watch, like, luckily it hasn't been the biggest matches yet, but when it's like TES versus Animal Life, like people don't want to be thinking about things like, what the fuck am I looking at? Or where's the, I can't quite read it. Like that's the game where you want it all to be set. And like I say, automatically we all know how it all works and your eyes are tuned to it. Because I will give them a slight bit of leeway, which is, as I said before, I've noticed in Counter-Strike, I also by default would almost always be like, this is worse, because it just was taking more time for my brain to like remap the screen, as it were, in my brain. So sometimes it can turn out like the change is better, and in the long run that information it shows is better to see than whatever it used to have. The problem is I'm skeptical about these ones though. Like I don't hate the idea of changing it, but I do think actually the old scoreboard was incredibly simplistic. It didn't really like it had a lot of useless information on that which wasn't necessary. I even think, by the way, things like even things like summoners don't have to be shown in the same way. Like we just take that for granted that like in the same way as when we play the game, it's on a scoreboard. We just feel like these things have to be on the screen. I'm with you though. I'm not against the idea of like trying to tell the story of the game in a different way. Like one thing they've done as a quick sidebar on broadcasts in the last few years that they don't quite, the problem is they don't quite commit to it, Yamato, so they don't really make it work. But I like the effort at least. Is, you know, where they'll try and show you, they show now like when he completed an item. I always thought the better approach, because I came up watching League of Legends with Monte Cristo as a commentator, and I've always said if you were an outsider from League or you didn't play the game and spam it loads, one of the best things he always did was outline win conditions for players and teams in the game. Like this comp needs to get to this point in the game with this person on 3 items, and then they're going to have like a spike when they get to this particular item where they're going to be able to take the objective. When he would do it that way, I would always think this is brilliant to watch the game, because now I actually have like a set of expectations, and he's given me like a recipe there. Like I can follow, if they follow this recipe, I can see that, like, for example, example, that the best games, by the way, where this would work the most effectively would be where it would be like a team was able to scale and do a comeback in the game when it looked like from the lanes they were just going to lose the lane. And if you just played solo queue and you'd think, well, this game's over, but actually this team, their whole comp was built that like they had like a Caitlyn that could just farm waves or something, you know, and get fed, and at the end of the game they could carry. So one thing I always wanted them to do on the broadcast more with the HUD is I want them to do like a predictive version of that. I want them to be like, right, in this game, Khalees needs on it to get to this third item as ADC, which is probably going to be, and then you guess whatever it might be, Lord Dominic's Revenge or something. And when he gets to this item, like we're going to track how far he is from that item, and we're going to look in the game. This might be when they'll do a base, or this might be where they'll give up a dragon to get more. I always thought that aspect, like the reason I'm bringing this point up, Yamato, is that is not the way currently they do the UI at all. That's not even how they try to tell the story in the broadcast. But I'm giving you an example of how an alternative way where you're focusing on different things, not just uniformly looking at all 10 players, could tell the story of the game very differently, though. So it's up to, it all depends what you want the broadcast to be. Do you want the broadcast to be just a load of information, like a stock trader? And if you're an expert, you get everything. And if you're a noob, you're like, oh, it's just too much info. I guess I just watch the people hitting each other on the screen. Or do you want to like tell a certain story? Do you want to highlight certain aspects that you think are more important? I actually think a lot of the like laning stuff that's shown isn't even that relevant. Like most people, by the way, don't even know how to interpret CS differences. Like that's not actually as big as people think. You could have that, like you're saying, on a side panel that when you click that person's character, it shows their farm, and you're like, oh, he's actually keep rubbing farm. Like some stuff that we take for granted that already is on the screen isn't necessarily integral information.
It brings me back to Heroes of the Storm. I feel like Heroes of the Storm, even though like Blizzard is really, really horrible at running their esports, Heroes of the Storm, basically, I don't know if you played it, but for anyone out there that didn't play, Heroes of the Storm was so easy visually because XP was team-wide and there was no items to purchase. So there was just one thing on the scoreboard, and that was experience. Right. It's like you just saw the XP, and that was like the arms race. It's like, oh, they just reached level 17 and the enemy is stuck on 16. So it's like if you got XP and you were solo killing someone, that just benefited the whole team. So like visually it was so damn streamlined and so damn easy because there was no like additional info besides like the talent points that you would like put in when you got like key levels like 4, 7, and then 10, 14, something like this. I don't remember exactly what it was. But in regards to what they could show more, what I would want to see more like in the game, I do think there's too little emphasis on XP. I think XP just as significant as gold. If I saw this team has 35,000 XP against 30,000 XP here, because like gold leads can be so deceptive. Because in the end, everything just matters about spent gold. I think putting more emphasis on that. This is something that showed up, I think, on the LCK broadcast. And there I do see it a couple of times. This is the spent gold. It's like the gold lead is 4K, but they didn't. This gold wasn't concentrated on the right person.
There's famous ones, right? One, as you're saying, one is like, did they even spend it? Is it just like in the bank? In which case, there's not that lead isn't an advantage yet. And then two, as you nailed it, if anyone saw those NIP playoff games, if all the fucking gold's on the spot who keeps killing the fucking champion instead of letting Doinby get the kill, then yeah, that is relevant gold. Like that's not actually making Doinby get an item and kill the game. So no, I know what you mean. Like in that scenario, it'd be way better to know that like the mid laner has a mad XP advantage. That would be way more telling of what's going to happen in this game, right?
For sure. And there's definitely, I'm happy. I'm with you. I'm happy that they're trying things because I think things need to stay fresh. And this is also an avenue that has been the same for a very long time. And I also agree with the notion that maybe an international is not the best time to do so. I guess it's just the issue that every region has their own like overlay and HUD, and this is what they're playing with, and they're not like keeping it uniform, because maybe that's also something that they want to do eventually, that every region uses the same kind of UI, because I think that also makes sense as a viewer to have, you know, continuity in what you're consuming, and the games and the names just being different.
Yeah. Right. Let me think. I'm trying to think there was one other thing. Oh, just for hilarity purposes, I'll bring this one thing up, actually. I don't know if you saw this, because it was on another thing that LS posted on Twitter, but it was straight fire, is when Annual Life was played, did anyone see this? Where that fan had that sign, Yamato, of like describing each of the players in Annual Life. Did you see this? I'll find it for you and link it to you really quickly.
Link it to me. Link it to me.
This is straight fire, mate, because it's one of those things where one of the best things about Koreans is they're really earnest and they just don't know like a lot of Western memes and degenerate shit. So they'll just like really honestly just make like a comment when they don't even think it through. So like, look at this, right? What I want you to do, bring it up on stream if you can, producer, right? So what they did is they took the concept that each of the players in Herbalife is a god, right? So what I'll do is I'll purposely set it up. So I'll read in a different order than they did. So you had the 5 positions in league. So you had Zeus, so that's the god of thunder, because, you know, I mean, it's not even correct, actually. Like, that would be fucking Thor, wouldn't it, you idiot? But we get it. You trying to do, like, Zeus, lightning bolts, and they thought thunder is Zeus, right? We get, that's easy to understand why they got it wrong. Just some Evangelion shit where they're taking some Western stuff and put it over the top. Then you had for Zeka. Well, obviously, Zeka's won those 9 game 5, so he's the god of round 5. We know they mean game 5, but we'll let them say round 5. Again, we're just being really charitable here. Then you have Viper, one of the best ADCs of all time. So god of AD carry. I'm loving that one already. That's straight fire. Yeah, he's sort of the god of AD carry. Also classic ADC player. Then you've got Delight, who's obviously a fucking demon at the Rakan. So he's the god of initiating. And then we have one left. We have Peanut, that legendary LCK player. So he's obviously the god of Not, isn't he? He's the god of Not. Like, listen, I see what you were going for with the other ones, but that does just make it sound like you're saying Peanut is the League of Legends Bonnie Blue. Bro, listen, please, Korean fans, look up what Not means. Please don't say he's the god of Not. Like, you know. We know what you mean, but fucking hell, you know.
There has to be something better. Like,
I know, that's just so better than that. Come on.
Even if we just take the meaning, it's like, well, he's the god of some food item. You know?
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I know.
even at that level, you know, even at that level, if we're being, you know, taking it for what it is.
I know.
Just god of nut.
Well, it's one of those ones where it's pure. It's just a harmless mistake, Yamato. That's my favorite ones. And by the way, actually, let me ask you as a sidebar. Did you ever see this? Maybe you can confirm this. Bro, people think you're memeing when you say this. It's certainly the case in China, but I even found this in Korea, bro, in Seoul. I was always shocked. You actually will, for real, sometimes when you're walking, I'll give you 2 examples. It's either, Yamato, first of all, if you go to restaurants, you'll just sometimes see random like gibberish English written on the walls, in the same way as if I made like a restaurant in the West and I didn't know Japanese. I might put some random Japanese, you know, kanji or whatever on the wall, and then I might later find out like, oh, this isn't me what I thought it said. People do that in English, first of all. So like, for example, I used to go to like a fried chicken place and it would just have almost like, it was like someone had taken poetry and put it through like a fucked up translator and just messed it all up, all the syntax. So it would say something about like I'd be in a fried chicken restaurant, and on the wall in really beautiful like calligraphy in English, it would have something written like, and there is a happy home with a lovely chicken in it. And you're like, what? Like, and they mean something like, you know, like I don't know, fresh chicken makes like, you know, a home or something. I think they were going for some angle like that, but they've just scoffed it completely. But the worst one ever is if you sometimes would go into the equivalent of like Uniqlo or like Primark or something, like, you know, some mass retail, like fast fashion, you know, shit that's like super cheap and it's all like, you would have, no joke, t-shirts that had like offensive shit in English written, but that the people buying it didn't know it was offensive. I've actually seen, I'm not joking, like a Korean grandma wearing a t-shirt that's just like, fuck you. Just said like, fuck you on it. And you're like, what? Like, if you wore that, you'd be like an edgy teenager if you wore that. Like, and by the way, there's no way this grandma's like fucking like on some like aggressive shit. She's just some old grandma. She just thinks like, again, like it's just some cool foreign language. Did you ever find that? Did you ever find weird shit like that again, where like their cultures like viewing ours through a weird prism? Did you ever see that in Korea?
Definitely. Like I have more memories of it happening on my trips to Japan as well.
Oh,
it's
right.
Like, sometimes there's like these signs where they're trying to like inform tourists of what not to do, and it just turns out. And I remember like this. This one that stood out to me. I think I have a picture of it. Summit. There was like signs on the bathrooms where it just said, "Please don't shit on top of toilets." I was like, what just happened here? Why is this a sign, and what are they trying to say? I'm not so sure.
Also, by the way, even though this is one of those things you're probably not supposed to talk about because everyone pretends Koreans are all perfect. Mate, I'll tell you one thing that is really jarring when you go on the subway in Korea. They actually, to this day, show those ads because, you know, on the screens, they have all those quick ads they show of, like, you know, like some dungeon crawl game on your mobile, some fucking whatever, like K-pop song or something. One of the ones they show religiously on the underground is an ad that basically shows a cartoon of someone, like, pinching a girl's ass on the, and sort of telling you, like, do not do this. Like, and you're like, what? Because apparently, I guess people would just be getting on with there's a packed train and just doing some like high school shit of like squeezing fucking women's asses or something. And they had to have like an ad sort of tell it, don't do that. You're like, what the fuck? It's okay, whatever. It's just a different world, mate. It's a different world.
I wonder if anyone had the intention of doing something fucked up, and then they read a sign that's like,
I
"Don't
know.
do that."
Did
And
anyone
like,
ever do that? I know.
This has changed my
Oh,
life.
wait. Yeah, true. That is antisocial, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. I like the way this is like Korean subway version of like lane swap thing. Like, leave the lane. This is not what you got. Leave the lane immediately. Stop touching her ass. Like, all right. Maybe that's just the way things have to be now. Now, here's the thing, Yamato. Speaking of like the UI changing, fearless, maybe we're going to continue on, keeping things fresh. Well, you know, one of the best ways to keep things fresh is to have a delicious designed diet. So one of our sponsors for this episode is going to be Green Chef. Now, what is Green Chef, you ask? Well, Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for clean eating, delivering pre-portioned and prepped quality whole foods with limited processed ingredients. So those are all excellent things, aren't they? It stands for, they send you organic, fresh produce, responsibly sourced proteins, and chef-designed recipes in every box for satisfying, nourishing, and convenient meals that make it easy to stick to a clean eating routine. By the way, in general, one of the things you will have noticed if you ever see anyone who goes on any like serious like health kick is they all do that meal prep, don't they? Because one, when you prepare the meal in advance, it's more likely the next day when you don't feel like making a meal that you'll still eat that meal. That's a secret to it. And then two, obviously you can just very simply replicate a bunch of meals. But I'll tell you the biggest downside ever that anyone's done is there is a very like young man masculine vibe to that, which is you're also doing that thing where it's like you're pretending like you have to suffer to be swole. You have to be like, oh, I'm in the dojo, bro. Like, you know, I'm fucking eating clean. And what you don't realize is that's actually not necessary. It doesn't have to taste like boiled chicken with dry rice and just broccoli with no sauce on it. Like the real secret is once you actually learn like cooking and how to do all this stuff in advance, like a lot of the things that are extra, you also can have done beforehand. Like you could have a nice sauce that you could balance it with something that doesn't even, by the way, there are sauces that don't have loads of carbs in it. So you can have some delicious sauce that go with meats and vegetables and carbs, etc. So what people don't realize is that's why one of the reasons also I think that you can get into a good routine is you just use a service like this. Like it all comes prepped. They've all got it going so that, like I say, they have pre-made sauces and pre-portioned ingredients. There's way less prep, less mess as well. You just have like less time necessary to eat a delicious flavor meal. They also, if you want to actually get better eating habits, they have dietitian developed recipe options, including fresh organic produce, whole foods delivered to your door each week. So you don't have to go out and shop. It's just delivered to you. So if you want to set your health goals in motion, why not use their Reset collection, available for a limited time? Whether you're starting a weight loss journey or looking to maintain, Green Chef has you covered with a curated assortment of dietitian-approved recipes that offer fiber support, are lower in saturated fat, and come in under 700 calories per serving. So they have the whole thing checked out, by the way, how much calories is in it, what type it is. You can obviously pick the profile that you want. So stay on track, even on your busiest days, with salads ready in 5 minutes or less, ready to blend smoothies, and grab-and-go protein-packed breakfasts. So basically, if you're in a rush, they've also got the stuff that you can just basically pick up, immediately prep, or just eat immediately on the way out the door. You don't have to even sit down and do something for 20 minutes. So thrive all year with clean, easy meals from Green Chef. Go to greenchef.com/LFN-free. Like I said, use the code LFN-free to get started with free salads for 2 months, plus 50% off your first box. So you get it's half price for the first one, and you get a bunch of free salads to just get all out. This is also that Green Chef is actually owned by HelloFresh, which is a company we've promoted in the past that obviously had their own like prep kits and their own ingredients they would send you to do. And with this is a service though that has a wider array of meal plans to choose from. There's something for everyone. So yeah, I actually think, by the way, if you don't know, I think all those brands are excellent. Green Chef, HelloFresh, Factor Meals, it's all the same set of people. I think they've all been excellent from the times that we've worked with them. So yes, thank you. And everyone, if you want to take advantage of Green Chef, check it out. If you previously used HelloFresh, maybe you'll enjoy it. Right, let's get back into it. Just edit that together in post, make it look good.
Bro, Monty, send me samples. What are you doing, Monty, man? I'm hungry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me some samples,
By the
bro.
way, that is actually also, unironically, one of the best things about the modern era of something is that we have like proper sponsors that have real gear. When they just send you the boxes, mate, you know, when you just get, it's like Christmas and oh, what's this? What's this box I've got? And you open it. Free shit's always the best anyway. What we are talking about, it's easily the best. Right. I think now we do some like format complaining, mate, because now we need to talk about this shit. Right. Here's the problem. It's basically just a remix of the, oh, by the way, also the Sackdown is now on Dom's channel on I Will Dominate. It's still all affiliate with LFN. We'll sell the ads on it, etc. But obviously it will get more viewership if it's on that channel. The most recent episode was Mickey X was a return guest again and talked about a bunch of stuff. By the way, do you guys actually tease who the upcoming people are? Is it known who the next person is yet?
It's sometimes we do it spontaneously. Like sometimes Dom just reveals it, and then I'm like sitting there without knowing because Dom is in the he's in the fuck you money phase of his life. But the next one I could tease it here is we got Tabe, bro. We got Tabe, man.
Okay.
We got Tabe right after the finals.
Whisperer. If people don't know, this guy's had an incredible career. Not only was he there for some of the like championship teams as an assistant coach, he was with the BLG team when they had Yagal that actually broke the record for most wins in the JDG era, by the way, the Golden Road era. Then he was with, obviously more recently, Anyone's Legend and got them to the fact, like this guy's had an unbelievable career. So no, that'll be very spicy. And also, as people will know from Season 3 Worlds, he has actually had more interaction with the West than a lot of people from his region. And so he's actually in theory able to speak like English and be more open with his opinions. That could be a banger, mate. Yeah, definitely check that one out. Right, let's go then. Obviously, the discussion, like I said, is basically a remix of what we did at the beginning of the year, Yamato. It's the topic of like, what do people think of Fearless Draft? Is this League of Legends and should it continue? Now, when it was initially rolled out, Yamato, it was obviously rolled out as like, look, everyone said winter split doesn't matter, but we're going to make a winter split international tournament. So what we'll do is we'll just bundle it all together. In fact, I would even have said before this recent change, it looked like they were going towards almost like an MTG style, different formats. So like winter split is going to be this weird fearless one. Then you swap over to traditional and then you just do the rest of the year. And so it's like, on the one hand, you can write off winter split if you don't give a fuck about it, because it's not like winning first stand gets you into worlds or something. But at the same time, it's at least something to play for because you qualify for your region, go to the first stand. But then after that, it's like, right, everyone changed the mentality. Now we're back to normal League of Legends with the normal drafts. Instead, it's basically implied now, because it was already said they were going to do this in LCK, it's implied that the entire world of League of Legends, all the regions, will just be, not even next year, this year, they will just be fearless from here on out, including worlds, by the way, as in like MSI and worlds as well. So everything. So even though people have done it as a remix of do you like Fearless or not, I actually want to ask on this bigger topic first, Yamato. What do you think of the idea that like it changes mid-season for the whole year? What do you think of that part? If it happens, we assume it's going to happen based on the report.
I think it's so insane because the implications are massive. The implications are so massive because if you real time can go back on a commitment at the beginning of the year, it's like in terms of how you evaluate players, it is in the context of the calendar year that is competitive. I had this discussion on Twitter, like someone made the point, it's like, so you think that coaches sit there and think about which players are going to get for Fearless and not Fearless? It's like, no, they think about them in terms of their strengths. And obviously there's players that are going to perform better or worse in Fearless because it forces you to go a lot deeper in terms of the champions that you play. You're going to lose out on a lot of like specialists over time, and you're going to lose that precision. There's definitely players out there that want to rotate fewer champions. It's like Chovy, for example, this year, his split was one of the weaker ones in terms of his individual performance. And I think that you can mention that in regards to like Fearless, it forces him to widen his champion pool when in most cases, he is the one who locks in the same champion over and over again until it gets banned or the series is over. He is the most stubborn player ever in terms of champion choices. And it was, you know, his peak, right, in spring last year. That was a series where he played 5 games of Azir straight. So definitely, I think from a competitive standpoint, I think this lacks competitive integrity, and the implications that changes like this can happen real time in a year when this commitment's made is kind of crazy. Maybe next year there's going to be like pressure on making the format. Let's say all of a sudden everyone wants double elimination. And let's say MSI was such a fantastic tournament. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but let's say as an example, and there's external pressures from the fans. We really want double elimination. This is the greatest thing ever. Are they going to just change that for Worlds? Because now it just seems like the viewership is king, and it could be like internal things in terms of what the teams feel also. But I think this is just a decision that is made for the viewership, which I can understand. But doing it in the middle of the year, I think it does lack competitive integrity in my mind. And it was the same for First Stand, right? It's like they view it through the lens of, oh, it seems like the sentiment globally, Kedu mentioned it, it's like the fans mentioned it, we don't want lane swaps. And then they shoehorned it in for First Stand just in an effort to make, of course, the viewers happy. Which, in the grand scheme of things, I understand. But there was always like a line that they would never cross, that they've crossed now. With the First Stand change, and now also, of course, the change to making the whole year fearless. Because I thought we had this discussion with Monty, right? So when we talk about fearless, we were like, oh, it's a winter split, it's the experimental one, and then maybe with that data, they're going to make decisions for the future of League. But they are just jumping on it now. I think it carries a lot of risk because it's just such a tight window, and maybe even now we're not going to realize what we lose. Because thinking about League history, even though, of course, in Fearless, moments are going to be created too with an Olaf in Game 5 or whatever, but we have the Galio. We have, of course, Galio Faker when it came to 2017, that series against RNG, 5 games, Galio straight, Azir. We have Bin Jax. There's so many legendary champions. We have like matchups of both sides of the matchups, whether it's Akali versus Sylas, and we get to see both sides of the matchups. There's going to be legendary moments of players playing specific champions that are not going to be as impactful in my mind, because the level of precision and the overperformance that is needed in such a moment is going to be, so far-fetched now in Fearless. And sure, Fearless is going to create its own moments, but I hate the fact that it's happening mid-year. I would feel very, very bad from the team side.
I also, just as a general rule, don't think you should ever change anything partway through. Like, by the way, I think one of the worst things any tournament organizer ever does is decide that like a rule was interpreted wrong in the past, or they're going to change the rule mid-tournament. Like, that immediately destroys the competitive integrity of the tournament, because you've already begun a certain way and applied that rule differently elsewhere. And even if you are right, even if you are correct that like you've identified, actually, I prefer this other thing, you wait until the tournament's ended and you make that one tournament a complete entity where the whole rule applied, and then you do it next time. So my problem with this is, Yamato, it also seems so incredibly fickle, because if you actually wanted this before this split, then you could have just had the balls to just announce it for the whole year anyway. And ideally, I think you would announce this sort of a thing, by the way, the day World's End, so that people have a full off season potentially to adapt to what they're going to do. That you don't, or you do it like this, you do it for this COP or the winter split, and then you say at the end of this year, it worked so well, we've now decided that 2026 Tall Circuit will be fearless, at which point people have like a wind-up time, they have a chance themselves to think what it was like with normal versus the... By the way, that would even potentially be better for the off-season, bro. Now I can actually test who was good in their first period when I used Fearless, who was good in this later period when we went to the normal draft. Like, does that give me a sense of who I can work with, who practices effectively, who even has the champion? That might give you at least some sense, because I do hate the idea that, like, remember all the discussions we're having about LPL super teams and LCK super teams and people like G2 making enormous offers to get the best players. If you do all these moves as a GM, you are literally going to be judged on the results, but you're essentially recruiting for almost like a different game. Like, if you think about how radical this would be, like if they changed something radical in the game, guys. What if like we all recruited normally at the end of last season, and then this year it turned out, Yamato, for the whole year we're having double jungle? Well, that would very much change how I would have done my off-season if I'd known that was like a thing. Like, I was doing it based on the old jungle setup where I want Kanavi, or I want whoever you might be, the best jungler from some Skewmon, because I worked in BDS Academy. So first of all, I hate it from like a team and a player perspective. You have no way to prep for this. You have no way. In fact, you're just finding out like everyone. That's the maddest thing. During the season, like if you're Karmine Corp, you're finishing playing a game at First Stand, your first international tournament, then you're reading online, wait a minute, the rest of the year might be in fear. Like, what even is that, bro? Like, that's just nonsense. Then if you want to go to the specific thing, let's get into the actual specifics of what do you think of Fearless? Because the main motivation, as far as I can tell, is not what people are saying. It's just that people like the novelty that you get to see a lot of different champions. Now they're changing how they explain that, Yamato. They never say I like the novelty. They say it increases diversity, which by the way, politically already is supposed to automatically be a good thing. Anytime you have more diversity, it's just better. So their logic goes, it increases the diversity in the number of champions played. I mean, the obvious example would be if you play a full best of 5, you play like 50 champions. Well, there's only like, what, 170 in the game or something. So at that point, you're playing like a third of the bloody champions in the game almost in a full series. Then secondly, they tie into the idea that it's better. They always just say that it's going to like help viewership because this is more exciting. Or so, right? I've got 2 quick things to say. One, that latter point, it's going to help the viewership, has yet to be proven. And if it was, it might be a decent argument because at the moment, the sports industry only survives off eyeballs. It does need entertainment aspects. It's why I always say I actually do have to kind of chastise people in UFC and MMA when I watch it because they will talk as though it was like a purist sport. And I always have to remind them, no, it's prize fighting. Like you have to understand the actual job of the UFC is just make the fights that you will pay the highest pay-per-view for. It's not, by the way, if they really do think that Miocic versus Jones sells more pay-per-views than Aspinall versus Jones, they'll do that, even though by the rules of the sport, you have to have Aspinall fight Jones because he's the interim champion. They don't care about that. Their whole sport is basically like it's about eyeballs and then converting the eyeballs into dollars. That is what esports is right now. We, the fans, me personally, I give nothing. I don't pay 1 cent to watch League of Legends. If I'm watching First Stand today for free with amazing production value and all the best casters hired and giant fucking in Korea with when I'm getting all that for free and I'm not paying, I have to understand as a fan, if something else would benefit viewership, then potentially I don't get a say in that. They're going to do it. Now, first of all, though, I don't think that's been established. I mean, I just looked it up now, Yamato. It's not that like the final of LCK Cup was higher. If you don't know, the biggest match was T1 versus Hannibal Life in day 2 of the playoffs because T1 brings the viewership as far as I can tell in LCK, not the format. So I don't yet know that we've even proven it does increase viewership. And this is split 1. So if anything, the novelty effect would still be kicking in now. That's why, by the way, we'll find this out this year. Well, let's see in summer when you have like the dip for the Western regions. Does the viewership increase? Does it help, etc.? But the more important thing I want to frame, and let's get into some of the specifics of Fearless and see what you think here, is I do believe when you have an argument, Yamato, you're supposed to figure out your principles first, then apply them to each topic. And the principle should apply in each case. You can't go, wait a minute, I'll give you, without saying the players, I'll give you an obvious example recently. Wow, I don't like this pro, so if he hinted scrims, he's a piece of shit. But then you'll go, but I do like this pro, so if he hinted scrims, is it really that bad? You don't have a principle there. All you're doing is, do you like him or not? That's what you're deciding what is good or bad in the world. You're not even taking, is hitting scrims good or bad? So when people say that line, by the way, those 2 lines, Yamato, about it increases viewership and it increases diversity, the problem I have with those terms is you haven't set like a range to them. You haven't added a qualifier where, like, I'll give you the example. Back in the day, Freak once tried to do this to me over formats. Believe it or not, they used to, just like LTA North now, that used to be the playoff format for all the Western regions in LCS. It used to be the first and the second round of the playoffs were best of 3, and only the final was a best of 5. And when I argued, every playoff match should be best of 5. That's like proper League of Legends where you have like exploration of the pools and the matchups and you have to adapt it. So what Freak famously said to me on Reddit was when I said the more matches you have, like if you go from a best of 3 to a best of 5, you're going to make like the better team win. He did what you call an argument from absurdity. He said, well, in that case, we should just do best of 69 because then we definitely see who the... Now, the obvious qualifier I can add that makes that stupid, Yamato, is there's no time to do best of 69. It would also fatigue people. Like at that point, all the positives I'm saying of having more matches actually become negatives. It would actually flip the other way and it would become bad, right? The problem in this scenario is when people tell me it increases viewership or diversity, no one's adding any restraints in. So I'll give you the obvious example. If you all want to be dickheads, I'll do what's called accelerationism and ruin it using your logic. So if you want more diversity, guys, then immediately do what LS says. Don't just do hardcore Fearless. Do Ironman Fearless where all the bands stack. And then by the time you get to game 5, bro, a guy could have like 20 champions banned against him. Well, you know what? If it's about adapting and more viewership and crazy angles, you're going to get loads there, mate. It's going to increase diversity. You can end up playing nearly all the champions. Isn't the game League of Legends? Wouldn't I be seeing who's better at League of... See what I mean? You can take all the same arguments and really stretch them. So I want to know where you're actually at, Yamato. Where are you at on the idea of like If it increases, do you think it will increase viewership to stick to Fearless? Will that be good? Do you think actually more champions is better in the game? Where are you at on these things, Yamato? Where you at?
I do think that you're hitting such a good point in terms of how Riot always evaluate where their viewership is at. Because right now, like if you look at LEC, I think a large part of the LEC success has nothing to do with Fearless. Is the fact that KC was extremely fucking competitive.
Yeah.
And Koi was also up there, right? And these are like
Bro,
really,
if
really
the
big fan
final had
bases.
been G2 against GX, there's no universe with the viewerships like that. No way. Come on. You know, it's true. Yeah.
And like, but it's just, it's like, it's fun. It's fun. I think it's fun, but that's like, I don't know how long that will last. It's like, I'm looking at it from the perspective of, you know, it's like, oh, I think it's interesting because it's not solved yet. It makes the mind work very, very differently. And that's how I consume it. But if this is going to be the norm, what are they going to blame if the viewership stagnates? Are we then going to have randomly a new format just because you want something new? Because I think that precedent is what's so scary, is that if it's tied to what the viewers want, what happens in a world, let's say, let's look at this through the lens of T1. T1 hired Thorin, who is a role player, right? Who definitely, as Fearless goes deeper, is going to suffer, right? They lost Zeus, right, in this equation. They had Gumayushi, who is a player who obviously loves to play Kate, Varus, and Jin, and this stuff. And he's very happy that Lane Swap is gone, but definitely keeps his pool tighter because he doesn't like to play Zeri, Ezreal, and of course, Kaiser. This is not what he likes to play. And this is what Smash came in and played and did super, super well. Now, let's say there's a position where T1, let's say, due to these changes that occurred in terms of how MSI is approached and Fearless continuing, let's say there's a world where T1 don't make it. And T1 have a massive fucking fan base that are going to be angry at things. Like we saw KC fans, of course, who are big fans of KC. They were very angry about the remake that happened. You're looking to claw at anything to remove responsibility from the team, right? It's like, oh, Team Liquid cheated. They got this remake and draft. They had Kaiser hovered and then they picked Kisante Nocturne instead. That's fucked up. They broke the rules, right? Imagine a world if T1 don't make it to Worlds, right? Let's say they don't make it to Worlds for some reason. Probably they will, right? But let's say they don't win Worlds. And this was in part because of these fucking, you can argue that this change has impacted now the entire view of T1. And then they have so much social energy behind them that the uproar that could happen behind this, is that going to make Riot move the needle and change a decision? Because that's how it looks like from outside. It's like, oh, everyone loved this, so we should do more of this. But it's like you don't have, like, take a breather, It's like you have this whole year, and you can easily say from the competitive standpoint, it's like, we are continuing with our commitment. We are monitoring Fearless. We are very excited about the results. We're going to really, really sit down with all of the teams, all the regions, all the commissioners, and figure out how the esports calendar is going to look for next year. We look forward to bringing you guys the news and the conclusions of what we reached. And I think everyone would have been fine with that. Everyone would have been okay with that. Now they put themselves in a position where Fearless is committed. And then, as you say, it's like, what happens if the viewership doesn't work? Or let's say these elements that's really, really shoot up your viewership into the sky are not there, then what happens? Because the social energy is behind the biggest fucking teams. When there's KC, T1, or fucking Billy, if these teams are not there, what's happening then? Are you going to change the format to make sure that the big dogs are there? What's going to happen? Because now you're democratizing your fucking system, which is crazy, because people are not so involved,
No, I'm with you. I also think, like I said, if you just make a principled argument but you haven't thought it through, you will just end up making the format stupid. Like, you could, if you're going to say things like, you just have to adapt, that's part of being a pro. Say the same people cheering when Riot artificially removed lane swaps. Where's the adaptation to that? Like, that was just part of the game. By the way, do you want me to actually blow your minds, League of Legends fans, as to why I always dunk on you and tell you you're playing the fucking Babby's first MOBA and that's a shit version of Dota? In Dota, they literally allow the meta to completely change as to what roles even exist in the game, just if that's what happens in the game. They don't go, oh, wait, that's not how the game should be played. Change that. Like, they've had whole years where the meta was completely alien to League of Legends. You would never have understood understood it if you'd have tuned in, like the tri-lane and stuff. You would have had no clue what was happening because that's just the way they allowed the game itself to evolve. Riot doesn't do that. Riot lets it start to develop, and then certain aspects, like a bonsai tree, they come in and clip it and go, no, grow back this way. I want you to go back into this pattern instead, because they have a vision of what the game represents. So if you say things like, well, it's good because diversity is good and this increases diversity, well, then you know what? 10 bans per game each. Mate, you want diversity, 10 bans a game, you're going to have hella diversity. Imagine where you're going to be on game 5. And then before you say all the arguments that are logical, like, yeah, but who practices that many champions? Oh, no, sorry. If you're going to be a pro, adapt. Just, in fact, and by the way, there's another thing people don't realize. Eventually, when you had Fearless for long enough, you will also get adaptation. It's just everyone will adapt to a worse environment. What you'll get is there won't be people who are as extremely good on one champion like a one trick, because they won't actually be able to put in enough prep time on it, because you have to prep so many champions for the general pool that you're right. Everyone will get their base level on like 10 champions fairly decent, but you won't have what I actually think was one of the best charms of League of Legends, which is when you see Mickey X lock in Poppy, you don't even care if he entered the last 2 games. This could be the game he wins. He could get that fight because he's just so much better on Poppy than like the joke was at the last year. Any other role on Poppy, even the junglers, like he's just better than them, unless you were maybe Peanut. Similarly, if you had Delight on Rakan, mate, game on. I'll put him against anyone on that champion. But if instead he doesn't practice Rakan as much as Rakan is as good, and now he's just like better on his 10th best champion. I mean, look, it makes the game more novel. As I said, it might make it more thrilling in the draft phase. I think you're actually going to get a worse game 5 out of it. You're not going to get, because I actually do think that's one of the things I didn't like about this last split, Yamato, is I felt a lot of the time when people were saying players played like shit, and especially when they said coaches drafted shit, I go back and I look, and it's like people aren't applying Fearless logic. They're looking at the draft and forgetting, like, in game 5, nobody could ever have prepped this far. Like, you could never know what's going to be even available in game 5. So at that point, what was I practicing for? I was practicing general concepts. I'm now trying to like piece together like a weird jigsaw puzzle with different jigsaw pieces in it and hope it makes a color at the like a fucking picture at the end. Like in that scenario, I think you put unreasonable expectations on players and coaches. So like if people could be really reasonable, which is hard, and update their thinking, we could handle this. But I don't think they're going to. So I think the worst thing is you're going to get a whole year of people just getting flamed for being shit at League. But it's actually going to be really hard to be a pro League player or coach for my money, mate.
I think, bro, if anything, it's like we talk about off seasons. It's like, bro, like now, if I was a coach who was actively coaching now, like, and you're doing a good job, you know, you would want to say, well, I deserve to get paid more.
Yeah.
Like, we mentioned the legends, you know, like Tabe and Ohm, and you know, like Dylan Falco, or you know, fucking now with Hammer Life, with Mowgli and Andy, and so forth.
Even the KC guy, the rare guy, definitely changed his draft strategy from upper bracket final to the final. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure, it's like it's so weighted now towards what coaches can do, and the approach definitely like shifts a lot. Like JNG, for example, let's say maybe they would have done more to retain Mata, because Mata went to T1 as an example. You know, it's like these question marks should never be there. That's what competitive integrity is. It's like there should never be a question. It's kind of like you know, you don't. The same conversation always occurred in it's like this the same way community views fucking conflicts of interest is the same way people view like competitive integrity. It's like it's by extension, if a question can even be asked and implied, that's already a problem in itself. And this just opens the floodgates, man. It's like now, as I can, the League community, are we now positioning ourselves where the League community, the majority, whoever's going to be the loudest, is going to be able to evoke changes? That can be dangerous, I think, in the long term. And I don't know what the evolution will be. It's like if Fearless doesn't work out and the viewership stagnates, where are we going to go from there? Are we going to walk back then? It's like, oh, this year, let's say the big teams are not as successful and the viewership goes down. Is that an accurate way of assessing the metrics that it didn't work? That part to me is going to be the roughest one. Like I don't know how they're going to assess the data and really make concrete decisions, because now it's like the League community has in a way they have gotten wins, right? They got Hextech chess change back, the UI changed real time towards complaints, which is a good thing. The Hextech chess, good thing. And now the Fearless thing, I think, is just a step too far, where Riot kind of lose control over their own, tournament circuits. But I do understand from Riot's side what they always constantly try to achieve. It's like always in the early days of any game, you have players that can single-handedly just carry games. It's kind of like I would maybe drop a CS example, and you can maybe let me know if it makes sense. I feel like before Astralis era, I did feel like there were way more like pop-offs, and I feel like Astralis came in with a very, very controlled variant of the game. And as we were moving in and as things continued, I imagined that as Astralis was fucking winning everything, that people would begin to like model shit after them. It's like, oh, they're very controlled in the way they play. Yeah. And it's like everyone is taking a more controlled and more disciplined approach to the game rather than being like, oof, I'm feeling myself, I'm gonna fucking ace, I'm gonna fucking give me the gun, that type of shit. And in League in the past, like season 3, season 4, 5, these early seasons, you had fucking crazy like players like Faker that would just completely 1v9 series and matches. And when we moved into 2020, 2021, everything became so controlled, disciplined, and I think for most, boring. And it seems like Riot is trying to actively fight against that to make games about team fights, to make it as digestible as possible for the average viewer and make it less about the nuance. And it's always, every game suffers with that. Over time, the game becomes too nuanced, and for a player to come in, can't make sense of it. And maybe with Fearless now, it's going to be chaotic enough. And the idea is that, if every player out there at some point can see their favorite champion on the Rift, maybe the casual will just want to be more involved, and the mistakes that I'm seeing on screen are a little bit more, digestible. Like an example I can say, it's like last year World Finals. I thought that was insane. And then people in the chat, it's like, this is kind of boring. It's just stomps. I'm like, what the fuck? No, it means like this critical decision early in the game decides everything, and they're taking a lead and ballooning that, and then you have the other team understanding the nature of the game and finding the timers, and they're trying to call the way back and look at the precision of gameplay. It's like, no, Yamato, this is boring. It's not even close. It's one stomp. But it's like that's what League of Legends is in the pure form, and it feels like Riot's like trying to pull us away from that over and over again. It's like, no, T1, you're playing fucking perfect League of Legends at Worlds. Fuck you. You start over. We don't want you. We don't want you to do that. Zeus perfected the flank. Let us change the landscape of the map here. Make it easy. Everybody can flank now. It's so easy. It's it's like a fucking runway at an airport. It's like someone like pointing arrows, like flank this way, this choke point, go around here, this cliff. That's all there is. And they're just trying to simplify the game, I guess. That's where we're at. But how simple can it get? How much nuance are we going to lose? In the end, we're probably going to have this thing where, like in a couple of years, it's going to be like you lane, and then you're going to be dropped in an arena where you have to fight to the death, like every 5 minutes. That's going to be the game at some point, man.
No, I actually think that the final you're talking about, the world's final of BLG and T1 last year, is a perfect example, actually, touching back on what I said earlier, which is if you could go back in a time machine now and you work on that broadcast, you wouldn't approach it the same way. Like, what you should have done and set up is this. If you'd have done it Monty style, what you would have explained was that the reason why in the first 3 games BLG was going to win Worlds is they didn't actually let T1 just permanently have like that grub control and get ahead in the early game. Like T1 at the time, it looked like the meta in that final was whoever is ahead in the mid game probably wins the game. Well, that's why it was then incredible the last 2 games, because then T1 was behind on those 2 games, by the way, facing championship point, and they actually fought their way back into the game. That was the most impressive part. And then similarly, if you went back, by the way, so much of the beauty of that final wouldn't exist with Fearless. You couldn't have the run backs on the jacks. You couldn't have the Galio picks. Like these things wouldn't even be there. There'd be a different thing. Maybe it'd be a more exciting, who the fuck knows, but it would. There's a certain beauty of that type of a match. I mean, in some ways, it's almost fitting, Yamato. If we never ever get real standard league again, that was a pretty good high point of a series, as the way how it was played and how different the regional styles were and the strengths of the teams and where people were strong strong and where they were. Because I'm with you. I actually think that final was an example of the one that gave you everything. It had the stomps, but back and forth. It had different people popping off in different games. In the end, it was won by the team who actually outplayed the other team, but it was really close and it had an amazing dynamic, as you said, the push and pull. People do this thing. They do the same thing in Counter-Strike Yamato. They pretend the best game always is the overtime third map. But it's like, bro, some of the best series ever for real are just 2-0s, but they're just ones where it's like, it's the dynamic that made it fun. Like, for example, maybe one team's a front runner and they're ahead in one game, but the other team pulls it out late. But then the next game, the team that's the front runner can't get a goal in the game, and then they're trapped out, and you see these totally different styles and strengths portrayed. They're thinking everything has to be like a nail biter, like, you know, last guy dies in a full 10-man team fight. Like, that's just one style of League of Legends. I agree with you. I actually thought the storyline of that final was fucking incredible, man. It was like anime-esque.
For sure, man. I think this is just the biggest change ever. Like I can't think anything that is comparable. This is like marks a big point in league history. Like, this is like we are moving into fucking League 2.0 pretty much. Like, this is so massive in everything. I don't know what's to come. Like, we might just see like new champions across the board. Like, all of the favorites coming through to this year, you know, most of them, at least, they didn't perform, you know, and those teams, are they going to be left on the wayside? Was it coincidental? Because another detail, like, if you're playing through the fearless part, not thinking the next split is not going to be fearless, I imagine that all teams like restructured their practice. They thought about things differently. They didn't like hard commit to the fearless ideas and so forth. I don't know what the outcome and the aftermath will be. We might just have like a different kind of list for who are going to be like the top 5 players in each position, because everyone's being tested on very, very unique metrics now.
Right. There's actually one thing I want to talk about, though, which is if you want to upgrade something, I don't know if the format's it, that's never been here or there, but what you could upgrade, Yamato, is your wallet. Because actually, I've been sponsored by these people from years ago, Ridge. It's the Ridge wallet. And one of the best things is, I used to be like the mega boomer with my wallet. First of all, I used to literally have the old wallet like a little kid with that section like you pull that little zip and it has like a coin section, Velcro. They can't slide open, can it? Right. So first of all, I had that one. Then when I grew up, I got the adult wallet, which is just a leather wallet that you put 1 million cards and coupons in. And then on that one, you know, like, you obviously can't usually fit coins on there. If you can, it's like in a slip area where it can fall out your pocket, right? There's so many downsides to that. You can just see how once upon a time it looked really classy. Obviously, the leather thing was the big part, wasn't it? And it just looks professional in the same way as a suit does. But I have to say, it's not really great tech. Like, there's a lot of flaws to that. Like, especially even by the way, the fact that it almost encourages, like I said, just stacking loads and loads of extra cards you don't need. And then all of a sudden, you're not just getting out the card you need, like a discount card. You're like rummaging through stuff and you're getting lost. And the person behind you in the checkout, are you finished? Like, what? And you feel the pressure, the mounting pressure of the woman asking for the money. So one of the best things I have to say when I got one of these Ridge wallets, I got mine like in 2020, is first of all, it's super durable. Like, this is an upgraded one I got like a year ago or so, but the one I had before that, it looked identical. There was no breaks. It just was slightly, you know, scuffed here because I had it like 4 years and it had gone against keys and everything else. I didn't have the key case back then. But actually, these ones are really, really good. First of all, they're way smaller. If you look at the size of my hand, look at the size of the wallet. I'm not holding it back here. It's right there. It's tiny. Look on the side. It's basically like the width of my hand. You can fit up to 12 cards in it. I don't even have 12 in mine. I've like, I don't know, 10 or something. So you don't need more than 12, by the way. Also, it's literally going to help you to actually trim out the cards you don't need when you get with this one. And I personally use the one where it has like a band on it like this. So even if I had 5 cards in, the band would adjust. It would still be tight and held in like that. They wouldn't fall out, which is obviously the flaw of the wallet. I think that's also why people overstack them so that one card doesn't fall out. That doesn't happen with this. The like unique slim design is really good. They're made with premium materials. Like, they have them with aluminium, titanium, carbon fiber. So they're also very durable. They have 50 plus colors and styles to choose from. I just chose the basic blue one, but as you can imagine, probably in future episodes, people like Monty will show they've got like stylish one. There's ones where you can get like a bauble carbon leather or something crazy. Like you can get the tobacco leather, I think it was. It was a bunch of like really stylish as well. If you go on there, there's all different materials and covers, etc. Also, all of them have a lifetime warranty. So in theory, this is the last wallet you need to buy. And they have this special thing. If you know about this, I wasn't even aware this was a thing. Apparently, there's actually digital pickpockets that use things that can just read your cards, like essentially from a distance. But this has RFID blocking technology, so someone can't do that to you. So yeah, there's actually loads of positives. Also, they have free shipping, a 99-day risk-free trial, and as I say, a lifetime warranty. So right now, Ridge is having their once-a-year anniversary sale. You can get up to 40% off at, it's on the screen, ridge.com/SI, just the code SI. Just head to ridge.com/SI to see their biggest sale of the year. After you purchase, they will ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them LFN sent you. Also, like I say, I've actually had this wallet for years. It is really good. Also, check out the key case. The key case can fit up to 6 keys. It doesn't jangle, holds them all in place. You have a clip on the back if you want to put on your clothes or put it as a magnet on the wall. I actually think it's an excellent product. Like, genuinely, if they never sponsored us again, I would buy another one of these in a few years. I think it's excellent. And I've bought actually as gifts for many people. So thank you to Ridge Wallet. Thank you to anyone who upgrades their wallet today, takes better care of their money. Now let's get on with the rest of the show. So actually, I want to ask you something, Yamato, which goes like this. In this tournament, we have the Fearless, but it is best of 3. And best of 3, if you have a look at it, the problem is, it only really, for me, feels like truly like Fearless by the time you get to game 3, because you could just have 2 different drafts anyway in a normal series of just game 1 and game 2, and you're going to get some adaptation. So I notice LS is back on his usual bullshit, which I love him for, which is he'll always just be LS. He'll always have his own opinions. In fact, by the way, if people don't even know, he had some actually very unique opinions about my Reckless video and all that, where I think it would surprise people. He had very different opinions to a lot of other people on the scene, because one thing I appreciate about him is he actually is willing to be an iconoclast. He'll just stick true to what he thinks. Well, one of the things people might not know is this, Yamato. You know, we're all spiraling on these shows and on Twitter like, Fearless isn't even what League is. Like, you've ripped out the heart of the game and the adaptation and the years of meta. No, you have to understand, we're all thinking Fearless hardcore's too far. You are aware, Yamato, LS sits there like that meme of fucking Kylo Ren, like, because he actually wants Ironman Fearless. If you don't know, guys, he wants Fearless draft where you just stack the bans. The bans from game 1 carry to game 2, carry to game 3. So essentially, it becomes like your champion pool has to go infinite depth at that point. And he even thinks you should, for best of 3, just do all 3 drafts before the first game's played and just live with it and just play with that as the fucking draft. So, I'm putting this out there because obviously if we're going to expand the horizons of this discussion, this isn't even something being suggested by Riot, by the way. No one else is even I don't think some people are even aware this is actually one of LS's preferred formats of Fearless. What do you think of that approach, Yamato? What do you think if they were to introduce that? Like because he essentially wants them to go even further. What do you think of that type of a Fearless draft?
Honestly, in the context of best of 3, like I could definitely.
I think he meant it specifically for BO3 to, like I say, to make it more like actual feel like Fearless, you know.
Yeah, best of 5 will be absolutely psychotic, but in best of 3, I can see it. I can definitely see it in best of 3 because as you mentioned, it's like I watch so many best of 3s now, and I watched BO1 Fearless too, and that was completely pointless. You know, BO3s definitely there was a lot of moments where. It's like I know also contextually from scrims, like scrimming with Roddy Sack and hearing from people. It's like the game 4-5 scrims are the ones that really, really go deep because in terms of how many mutations you get into, tend to usually in game 1, 2, 3, it tends to be kind of similar. A lot of things kind of replicate themselves. You're building drafts around the same champs. And the amount of mutations possible are not there, but then it just fucking exponentially gets crazier in game 4 and 5. So putting a lot more pressure on the best of 3s, I do think it kind of makes sense. The only concern would be is like there is a lot of opportunities for abuse in the sense that sure, there's enough champions to play everywhere, right? But if bans stick, it's a lot easier to throw bans in one direction. And instead of like locking in, it's like people were talking about, fuck it, let's lock in 5 supports and just burn a game to make sure that the light can't play engage. It's like, that's a bigger commitment than fucking banning champions out, you know? And especially in terms of how sides are, it's like blue side becomes so much stronger in a best of 3 scenario. So you're playing blue side, and in most cases you have a lot more throwaway bans because red side needs to kind of ban like OPs as an opener, or maybe they decide not to because they want to just get them out of the pool, whatever. It's like they ban them once because they're preparing for their potential second red side game, right, that they're playing. because the first game is red side, right? That parity in terms of sides, I think it would just be like extremely blown out of proportion in terms of how powerful blue side would be. So if you walk into a series and you know don't need to ban like Scan or whatever, like with your blue side, and then you just like ban, let's say, 3 Delight champions in the first one and you just can't play them, that's far less of a commitment. So that would be like my only fear. I think if you want to explore, then I think that the sequencing of bans would have to change. It can't be 3 into 3. It has to be like pick 1, 2, and then ban, ban, and pick, ban, ban, pick, ban, ban, pick, ban, 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 pick, something like this. Because the current sequencing would just be fucking atrocious. We wouldn't be able to survive. Like blue side would be just too OP. But best of 3 definitely spicing it up more. I can see the angle for sure, but let's just change the order of bans, and then I can hop aboard this crazy ship.
I'm also with you in the sense it is very different if you do it for BO3. It's one thing for BO3 if you want to make it spicier in that sense. I think BO5 would be insane. Like, I just said it earlier, but I don't think it really clocked for people. You know what I just said earlier? That in a full 5-game series like Cannibal Life had, you are having 50 champions, right? Let me just quickly Google now. Do you know what the actual number is? How many champions are there in League of Legends total? I want to know the actual number.
Something.
It says 170 when you Google, but I don't know if that's still true. It says as of January, there was 170, right? Yamato, if I'm playing something like a fourth of the champions that exist in the game in one series, I think that makes an utterly untenable, unbearable burden on the pro player as to what he's practicing and what he understands. And we're not even that's not even fair, bro. It's not like I'm playing 50 champions, but I know the 50. I'm playing potentially, not literally any of the 170, but let's say I'm playing 50 out of a possible, I don't know, 90. There's no one can practice that many champions. You can't know the matchups. You can't know the comps. You can't know all the champion dynamics and interactions. You can't know all the wombo combo. You can't know so many things about that the obvious questions become, one, what actually are we testing for at that point in time in certain roles, Yamato? Because here's the problem. As you might know, there are some all-time great players, most notably in mid lane, that can play 10 champions a season. That's just what they can do. In fact, I'd even say the real irony of what happened to Chovy in Fearless Draft is Chovy was amazing for having an unlimited champion pool. It's just that it's because you had to keep prepping for the 3 he was a god on that all the weird picks would work all the time because you weren't expecting him to play a away game out of nowhere. But if you make it so like he just has to go to these champions, he actually wasn't as effective. You actually took away some of his edge, which was to sort of selectively use the champion pool when it fit him and when it didn't go to the limited champion pool. The obvious role that I think immediately, they wouldn't even just do badly, Yamato, they would never stop crying is AD carry. Bro, what the fuck in an Ironman best of 5? Right, here's what I'm doing, Yamato. I'm literally, if I'm a shit team like SK Gaming, I'm not even drafting for my team anymore, bro. I'm just taking your AD carry and he's playing his 14th best AD carry in game 5. Enjoy. Like, I don't know what the fuck it's going to be, like I'm a dinger or fucking Syndra. I don't know what it's going to be at that point in time because like there's not even going to be champions left in the game. And as you say, not only can I ban, but I can pick, fuck it, troll draft game 1 and all 5 bans go to him. Like, you could actually make some really fucking dog shit games by doing this approach. Like, I can see the upside when it works. I think the downside would be so overwhelming, though. It would be crazy, bro. I think, and as I say, this is what I don't think people get. I already thought League was really hard to practice as it is. Like, we were just talking about how bad scrim data is. What are you going to get out of scrims if we use this format? Like, by the time we get to game 4 and game 5, we're not going off anything from scrims. In fact, we might not be going off anything we've ever seen before. There might even be a draft board that looks like anything we've ever seen. I don't know what. Don't people want practice? If you don't know, guys, practice is what makes people excellent. Is like repeating the same things, getting them down, making them automatic, making that like an intuitive feel in the game instead of a decision you have to stop and calculate. Like, a lot of that I feel like is going to be lost if you go to too extreme a format. I mean, they keep saying adapt. Like, bro, you can't just keep telling people to adapt when you're making it harder and harder and harder and harder. That's like I make your test 2 times harder and you fail it. Well, just adapt. Well, get smarter. Like, what am I supposed to do?
You don't want to be in a position where fucking all the players need to be like fucking cockroaches to survive. You know, it's fucking nuclear warfare. like you want to have the beauty of it all. You know, you want a swan to be able to thrive and all these like all different elements. You know, you don't want something fucking designed for nuclear war to be the only thing surviving. Like, in my mind, if I added another layer to the Ironman idea.
Go on.
Like my idea would be to then also incorporate blind pick. Basically, you start 5 games, 5 champions, you ban them, and then what you pick is blind because you have access to both. But when they are picked, they're out of the pool. So there's going to be like crossover, and the chess game becomes, we are removing things from our pool, but the enemy team can also pick it away, and we are going to have mirror matchups in some cases. And I think this would be like pretty sick, because then you also have situations where you don't see what the enemy bans, and the nature of how like there's going to be like scenarios where both teams ban Scanner, and then there's going to be crossover like that, and then whatever exposure, whatever you create for yourself, the enemy can recreate that. And I think that could be also sick.
So instead of blind pick, you're doing like blind ban essentially.
Like blind ban into like blind pick too. And then like you remove the champions from the pool, just so there's like a scenario where you cannot create a version where you trap the enemy the same way, because they are basically in the same box as you. And if they're capable, they are going to pull through or do something different, right? And I think this could also be super, super interesting. That's a weird part, bro. If Fearless doesn't save viewership, how deep are we gonna go, bro? It's gonna be 4v4s, 6v6s. I don't know what's gonna happen. It's gonna be just arena for fucking seeding before a world championship. Who fucking knows, man?
Also, I noticed one of the areas people are ignoring here is they're just selectively choosing that things that favor viewership are what we're going to do. Bro, I'll tell you an obvious thing that I think would increase viewership. I think we've seen it both from teams like Karmine Corp and from like the changes in the game over the last few years, which is it costs money, but again, I didn't hear that used as a factor for or against any format issues. You know, they've just announced now that they're doing like roadshow style stuff again. I saw Fnatic announce they're going to be part of like whatever, was it like the Koi roadshow or something, whoever it was that's arranging it. I actually think that's an obvious way you could potentially increase viewership, because I can tell you in Counter-Strike, one of the reasons that you get hyped for a playoff match at the Cologne tournament, for example, is because you get the crowd mics and you hear the crowd roar and people play up to the crowd. It's not just the match. The match has to be there and it has to be great to provide the platform for that. But then you add it all in and you get that feeling, Yamato. This is one thing I think is very underrated about sports. Actually, people don't talk about this. It is amazing to go to a live sports game, but the difference in how they've made the feel at home feel compared to what it used to be like is night and day. Like when you were a boy, Yamato, in the 90s, and you were watching a TV with football on it, that's like 10 feet away from you, and it's this big, and so you watch. That's not the same feeling as being in the stadium. Mate, if you watch like a modern day broadcast, it's incredible. You hear the crowd mics really good. You hear the chanting of the fans. If it's in somewhere like the Bernabeu or Anfield, it's fucking amazing atmosphere. Even at home, you're like, this is sick. You get those matches during the regular season, that like the big televised game. That feels like it's the final. You're like, is this like a cup final? This feels fucking sick. Like everyone's ready to just explode, right? You don't get that from the LEC studio. They've tried to do their version of it, which is just KC fans go do the blue wall thing. But the problem is that doesn't even show off the enormity of what KC fans would be like. When I watch, you know what's sad? Here's what people don't get. The one area I'm on the side of KC fans and fucking staff is I do think that the biggest revolution in League of Legends in the West for the last like 5 years are those like homestand type things they're doing in the off season, bro, where they will actually like sometimes just to announce the roster, they can get like 15,000 people in a stadium, everyone with a jersey, everyone doing some massive like drums and shit. People, if you didn't see when they were walking out for those show matches, guys, but the joke is, like, Sakan in real life in France, never even been a good LEC player, by the way, is, like, more famous than, like, I don't know, some, like, all-time grip, like, upset in fucking LEC. Like, he just would be. Like, his response from a crowd would be, like, 10 times more. So that's what you should be playing to. If you want to make, like, a cool atmosphere on the game, if you want stakes to feel really high, and especially, by the way, if you want playoff matches to feel, like, crazy. Like, I'll tell you what, right? You know, in the LEC studio, here's the best example. You know that moment where after the series between MCoy and Fnatic, Upset and Super had that like back and forth where like Super pushed him. Bro, if that happened on stage with all the crowd reacting, that would be fucking insane drama. That would be fucking spicy as fuck. Holy shit, that would be amazing. Think about how insane, by the way, the Karmine Corp fan base would have been during that Fnatic Best of 5, which going all the way to Game 5, and it's like a fucking heavyweight boxing match. They're punching us early on, we're fighting back. That atmosphere would have been like legendary. People would talk about that like that old CLG TSM game where the Winians won it at like 2014 PAX. That, by the way, wasn't even a good game, but you just remember it because it was a PAX and everyone was losing their minds and the crowd was crazy. Like, that's what we should play up. Like, I actually think the roadshow angle's an obvious one. Like, I understand it costs money and I understand the logistics are a nightmare. It's way easier to just go to a studio every week. But if you want to make everything seem cooler, make the stakes feel big, if you want people to get engaged in a different way, that's the way you reignite the viewer base. Because I also think as well, mate, every viewer isn't the same viewer. I don't care about the random guy just watching on a second monitor. I want the guy who lives and breathes the game and he's watching it because it's super important to him. That guy, by the way, I can even tell you from my own company, that guy's way more motivated to buy products and support someone than the guy just watching a logo on a screen like, well, I might drink that drink later, all right? Not, who gives a fuck? I'm just watching anything on the screen. What do you think about this aspect, doing like live shows and stuff?
It was like my come up, right? It's like when I was a player, it was all about the live events. Like even my first opening match where I played against fucking Moscow 5 when I subbed in for Dragonborns was in the Zenith in Lille in front of 12,000 people, wooden arena, everything was fucking...
Because it was against Moscow 5.
Bro, I at the time, I had this delusional level of confidence, you know? So for me, the fucked up part was, but moving into that, it's like, I get told by my manager, it's like, Yamato, you need to use SteelSeries gear. I was like, bro, I have been using this Razer Abyssus my whole life. Like, you want me to switch? And then it's like, we don't have extra gear for you, but we have this prototype keyboard that they gave us that you can use. I was like, what the fuck is this? No, some office keyboard. And then they're like, you're going to use Expect's mouse. And I was like, damn, Expect's mouse? Let's go, baby. So we played, right? We lost, but it's like the arena was made out of wood. Everything was fucking shaking. Like everyone, when everyone was stomping, it was like fucking electric, bro. You could feel the air, the presence, the everything. It's like those moments in time, I think, are so crucial because it creates a memory that lasts so fucking long. It's like, you just know, it's like a lot of the fans that are like fans of Fnatic of old, it's like a lot of those guys experience those things in those big fucking arenas. Those are memories that last a lifetime. And it's going to motivate, as you tell the story, it motivates more and more. And it also goes from the player side too. There was this period, like Humanoid, he had his come up, peak COVID. He played Worlds in Iceland. He played MSI in Iceland in front of no crowd, won 2 championships with no crowd, nothing, right? And this always pained him. He was so pissed off that this was the case because it goes both ways too. It's like those stories, seeing like greatness unfold with everyone in tune with the same idea at that level. When you have like 10,000 people being in tune with the same thing, the energy there is indescribable. And I think it's just something that just lasts with you. Like, that's how you make an eternal fan. And you need to invite those opportunities more and more because the benefit of that is just so great. And that's why the Casey fans are so damn crazy and passionate. It's like they were bought in every single point of the way. And Casey did a fantastic job of capturing that. It's like I was at a KCX. I was at KCX4. It is insane. It's crazy. I was like there in like the VIP section sitting with like more known people, but it's like 27,000 people, everyone singing the same chant, everyone just in tune with the same energy. I imagine for everybody involved, it's like, it's a fucking great experience, a fucking fun experience. And that shit, when you brag about that to your homies, they want to get involved. And the scattered effect of something like that is just, it's just endless. So I'm with you, man. I'm happy that they brought it back. Such a good idea. Great idea of leveraging the strength of these partners, right? And the shame of it all, I hope over time, it requires a lot of luck, right? But I hope that eventually, like we mentioned, like the idea of like Kato getting involved or whatever, even though it's a quick jump, right? It's a quick jump and there's a lot of like factors in place. But if somehow Kato had a team too, it's like the rivalries that can spawn and the all League of Legends social energy just goes into one thing, that would just be so damn powerful because that's what it just comes down to. It's like, if we didn't have big personalities, like let's say Kameto didn't buy a slot in the LEC and we still had Astralis. Or like, let's say Ibai was so pissed off with this partnership with Rogue and said, fuck LEC, I'm out. It's like, what would we have left, you know? it would be so dull. It would just be G2 versus Fnatic, which is nice, but then that's it. It would just flatline. Nothing else beyond that.
By the way, this does tie in, though, as I pointed out at the beginning of the episode, so we'll tie it in now. This does tie in, though, why on the one hand, it's not totally stupid that these fans are like, hey, when does Los Ratones get into LEC? It's like, that's not even how that works. Like, look, yeah, if Cadwell goes and gets like a investor and he has like, I don't know how many millions it would be at this point. Actually, I'd be very interested to know. I actually don't think it probably would be like the Karmine Corp 30 mil. Maybe it'd be less now. It'd definitely be more than the LCS, like 6 million to fuck off and then be a guest. So it'd be, I don't know, let's say it's 15 or 20 million. It's still a big investment. But at the same time, I do think, by the way, not only because he's Cadwell with a giant stream, but also literally having names like Reckless, who are still like the most fucking Google searched people in the universe, and then having like massive streamers, this would all help. Like, you could potentially do it, but that isn't the same as like, this team is good and you like them, so they get to be an LEC. That's a totally different business decision. And by the way, that won't even happen till the end of the year, so your age is off that happening. But here's the one area those fans are right, Yamato, which is they care about that team in NLC, even by the way, before they won NLC, more than they care about some of the teams at the bottom of LEC, even though, by the way, the LEC team in theory has bigger budget, a slot, and in theory better players, but that's even debatable in certain cases. Now, the point that the person's right about is the NLC team in this case, if it is the Roddy Sack or Los Ratones, or maybe Double Lift's team in the future could have this, we'll see, is they are able to actually capture a fan base that is more energized and engaged than just a generic fan base. So one thing that would be right is, I'm with you. One thing you could immediately do, though, is it'd have to be at the moment in exhibition tournaments. But the idea that we're not using those teams for live events is mental. Because I can tell you in Counter-Strike, another game that's also about eyeballs, people are very cynical, Yamato. Like, before it got changed now, Valve made it now, so you sort of have to invite people based on sort of a world rankings, basically, to your event. If there are certain slots, you're not allowed to just sort of say, well, fuck you, I'm inviting this other guy. But before, it was like the UFC example I gave. If you really wanted to, you would go out of your way, Yamato, to invite, like, Furia, the best Brazilian team, because Brazilian team automatically ensures like 300,000 viewership, because they have a massive engaged viewer base that really support their team super heavily and nationalistic. So you actually want them in the tournament. Famously, back in the day, it used to be different demographically back then, but Na'Vi used to bring, it sounds bad now, but the Russian language audience, that used to be the people that supported Na'Vi, because all their players were Russian and Ukrainian back in the day. So the joke used to be, back in CS, even if these teams weren't top 5, the best final any TO could dream of would be a Furia against Na'Vi. That would just automatically like break the viewership record. Meanwhile, and this did happen, in the online era, we had a couple of times where some like lesser teams who were really good made the finals and the viewership was non-existent. Everyone just tuned out because no one knew who the fuck they were. So what's funny is, there is a world right now where if you want to go MMA, UFC style and just make like big events that have loads of viewership, of course you'd bring Los Ratones. That'd be that'd easily be a top 5 team in Europe that you'd bring to this event. So if you could have like a road show, like an IEM or some tournament that doesn't count for the circuit, you'd activate those teams tomorrow, mate. And I also think you're right as well. They haven't just activated like a fan is a fan of that team. I think those people, not only could they like sell tickets in a stadium, they're the teams that can do the fucking like live watch party in their home city or in some like in Berlin or something, like in a way that I don't think SK Gaming and Rogue can, quite frankly. I don't believe they actually have the same level of interaction or engagement from their fan base. So, by the way, if we're going to do this whole thing, like it's about viewership and it's about an entertainment product, then let's go ahead and get rid of a lot of these Riot sort of like guardrails and things that are blocking people out. There's a lot of things we could do to maximize viewership in European League of Legends, mate. Like, that's actually the one area where LEC is very different to the environment of LTA. Below LTA, there is nothing. That's why there's this whole thing about Double Lift could just walk in and just like take over the scene tomorrow and then also fuck off the day after that if he wants. Like, in Europe, we already had it with Karmine Corp before they were in LEC. We have teams that already are essentially operating like some of the biggest European esports clubs, whether they're in LEC or not. So it feels almost foolish to me not to include those people on some level. Like I say, maybe it has to be a third-party tournament or you let the Saudis run it or something. But you'd be a fool not to take advantage of it, Yamato. Like, I understand also there's an aspect I'll very quickly address like in 30 seconds. It goes like this. The problem is the franchise system. You haven't just sold people a slot. Remember, you're selling them the slot. You're also selling the idea that you're all collectively as a league doing things. So in theory, you have to get everyone else's permission also for people to join the league. And they themselves, this is why Carlos got his slot taken away in VCT in Valorant. It's the idea of, do we want to be in business with you? Maybe you represent things we don't care about. That's aged very poorly, but that was the thinking back then. So what do you think on this aspect? Like, on the one hand, I do think it's silly to think like, no, that even if you could have promotion system again, I don't know that you'd want to just promote streamer teams into the LEC. I don't know that it'd go as well as people think, but I can see why there's an impetus for it. Obviously, people do care about that team way more than they care about the worst LEC team. That's true.
I think the qualification process as long as it's fair, if streamer teams make it through, I think that's what it needs to be, right? It's like thinking back to what the relegation system was in the past. It
Even though
was that
technically, you know, I could. Here's the obvious thing I could say to you, Matt. Wouldn't that have been your team getting demoted last year to a streamer team? Could have been, right? Could have been.
Could have been, yeah. It's
You
like
can with that. You could live with that.
it's like that's a part of the risk, right? That's a part of the risk, and I would accept both sides of it. Casey probably not deflected by
True. Okay.
But let's say technically they won EMA Masters and then qualified. Let's say, but
Yeah.
I do think that would change like the approach completely, right? So, like if that level of tension is there already in winter and you can qualify differently, I would take a fucking completely different approach to things. But that's a different conversation. I think if you qualify fair and square in the system that is there, I think that's what it is. It's like I think some of the stories that we had, right, of past teams that made it through, like in LCK was the case with fucking Griffin and the gang, and we had the Origin, and we had the G2 even qualifying at some point. I do think it shakes things up in a way that it forces the teams that are playing to survive or to fucking pinch every penny to do things appropriately. Because I do think from an organizational standpoint, to be challenged on what you do is something crucial to make sure that you keep fucking swimming. You know, like if you have sharks coming behind you, you have to fucking keep swimming. I think this is so crucial because at the end of the day, like what I wanted to follow up, but you mentioned it yourself. It's like the EWC can potentially do the funniest thing possible. Because who the fuck are they inviting? They're inviting T1, Billy, and then Los Ratones is gonna show up, bro.
Why not?
Like, Los Ratones playing at EWC. You know, they can just swing money bags around, and they have every incentive to make the biggest
like I say, if
possible.
someone wants to experiment with viewership, that would be a very interesting experiment. What happens if you drop in Los Ratones to play BLG and T1? That would be fucking... By the way, we don't even care if these are the number one teams in their regions. Just do it for the viewership. Just make it like a crazy UFC card with all the best fucking big name fighters against each other. Yeah. Could be crazy, right?
It's just... It's weird that we have moved in this direction. But I think it's just... It's always been a question of proximity, right? It's like the proximity to the players, to the fans. In the past, it was the big streamers, TSM, COG, and there's like Fnatic One Worlds. So in terms of where the most diehard fans came through, it was through the streams and it was also through the live events. And we're circling back to the same thing. It's like the teams lost that along the way because the full focus was on performance. And the personality was lost in the process because players just didn't have the bandwidth or the energy to keep streaming and to keep being like a personality. And also like streaming in terms of how popular it was in the past. It's like Bjergsen could be playing fucking solo queue and he would drop like 50, 60, 70k bangers. Fucking Burger King, got the Burger King sponsorship and all that jazz. Streaming was very, very different back then. But I think it's cool that we're circling back to the same thing. Back to the live events. That's where you get the diehard fans. And the diehard fans are the ones that follow certain personalities. And I do think it's like in terms of how much viewership you manage to manifest, it's about capturing just lightning in a bottle. But that lightning at this point in time is just the fucking big streamers that are creating these fucking grassroots projects. So I feel bad for NA because I do think they fucked up a lot of things format-wise for themselves. And also I feel bad for Brazil because they did exactly that. They created rivalries within the region that was so beautiful and everyone was bought into the stories and everyone was involved in and then Riot just killed that in hopes of stimulating, of course, LTA North. But now in terms of the social energy and in terms of like the personalities that we have there, it's like we have some spice with APA talking shit, Whippo talking every now and then. But beyond that, what do we really have, you know? Just a bunch of players that want to be pros, want to focus on being pros. And I think the streamers are bringing back what people care about because it's like esports is interesting because of the proximity. It's like esports is interesting because you can go on the Twitter of a player that played bad and tweet at him, yo, you play like shit. It's like there's no proximity in fucking traditional sports. And traditional sports has let's say the nostalgia of the sports that have so much history and that your parents played and their grandparents played. There's a lot of nostalgia there. So you need to have that proximity at all times, whether it's live events or of course streaming personalities. So I think we are going back to step one, which I'm happy with. But I
The problem-
want, bro, give us a way to qualify. Come on, like
That's the
LTA.
problem, though, mate. The problem is those two different directions, they aren't even vaguely aligned. So essentially what you're asking is the difference between how do we make the most competitive league? I'm sorry, we already know that answer. You just make a competition mode where you can qualify and you can demote people. That literally will make automatically the most competitive system. The problem is currently that goes almost completely counter to what helps business and in the long run will actually help viewership. This might sound weird because to a fan they go, that's not true though. I just want to watch the best teams play. You're wrong. I just gave an example earlier that shows that is not true. If you believe that in your heart of hearts, you might just be a very unique person, but you are not the majority of the people who watch esports. People who watch esports are very casual. They really are people doing stuff like, oh, is the LTA final on? Is TSM in it? That's like a casual fan. Like there are people that like, they're a Fnatic fan, but they haven't even watched that closely. They're just a Fnatic fan because in this case, I don't know, they're Razork fan or they used to be a Wreckers fan or a SOAS fan back in the day. Like you have fan bases that exist and have a momentum and an inertia to them that aren't wiped away by one bad split or one bad year. And so here's the problem. If you ever really did demote Fnatic out of LEC, it's a bit like TSM leaving LCS. You've ruined the league. You actually have. Like, it doesn't even matter if the team that comes in is better than them. The team that could come in could be generational, win every championship. The point is, you're not going to have that decade-long fan base and people who keep dipping back in have a reason to come back. And so essentially the problem is, if you notice the way franchise leagues work, it's like the idea of that Super League in football that was recommended. It wasn't about who were the best teams on the pitch. It was about who were the best clubs in terms of media size, because those clubs want to be in business with each other because their logic goes like this, Yamato. Even if Barcelona, to be fair, like Real Madrid and Barcelona this season just take turns every month deciding who's good and who's bad. But let's say this month, like if you go back earlier in the year, at one point it looked like actually Barcelona was a bit sketch. They were doing a bit bad, right? You wouldn't ever want Barcelona not to be in La Liga. Like no team coming up, even if they were better on the pitch, can be better than Barcelona the org because of all the Barcelona fans and their stadium and the fact that, you know, eventually, logic goes, eventually they're going to get it together again. They're going to get their shit together. If it's not this year, it's not, and then it's going to be in 3 years, whatever. They're going to get a new draft class and fucking players from their academy as they have that are all sick as fuck, and they're going to somehow do it that way. Same way as in Real Madrid. Real Madrid could have a doff season, but you know in 2 years they're going to have amazing strikers again. They're going to sign all the biggest players and fucking spend low. So that's the reason why, in business senses, you do it with the club, not with the players. So I'm with you. I actually, listen, I would prefer like the best teams being. I would prefer like if you were, I've always said this, the biggest bummer for me is that Crownie does have to just hope an LEC team picks him up or Cadril buys a slot. I prefer a world where Crownie just goes and plays a game against Rogue tomorrow and smurfs all over Patrick and then he's just in the LEC. And that question isn't even a thing. Then it's just which team wants Crownie at that point. Which team wants Jizuki? Which team wants Southmid? These people could just go and force their way back in, no matter what the rep was. But the downside would be, like I say, if you ever demote Karmine Corp, by the way, they could have been demoted last year by that logic. That would be terrible for the league. They lose all that fan base. If you actually had a scenario where, like I say, God forbid a Fnatic or a giant, a massive former Titan ever falls away, it takes years to build up the momentum. In fact, some of those orgs, by the way, the Fnatics of the world, that's not even just some league, dude. They're like multi-game orgs that built their reps and made them the massive teams in the world. So it'd be so tricky in that sense. But anyway, to bring it all the way back, you know the thing about those fans that pack in those stadiums, they all stink, Yamato. Now you're going to think, oh, Thorin, you've gone too far now. Look, you've said everything about these fans already. Now they stink as well, do they? No, they stink, Yamato, because they're human and we all stink. That's actually the secret. What people don't know is, one, as gamers, in this case, people are packed into a big stadium. They might not have the best personal hygiene. At home, gamers sit all day playing games with the fucking fluorescent lights on. And one thing I think is mega underrated is, if you went and played a five-a-side football game for an hour or went to the gym, you'd know after that, well, I better have a fucking shower now. I'm going to be fucking stinking and sweating, right? What people don't understand for real is actually when you sit at your PC and play a game of solo queue, you absolutely are sweating. You absolutely are like generating a smell. Your hygiene is no longer at an optimal state. But with our sponsor Mando, you can take care of that because their products are actually ideal for people either going and mixing with a bunch of other sweaty nerd fans. So you want to be the one that smells nice. Or if you're sat at home right now, I can take care of your situation without even needing to go and have a shower. Like they have, for example, their whole body deodorant, safe to use anywhere on your body, by the way. So any part that smells, just go ahead and go ham on it. Belly button, butt crack, feet, pits, all that shit. It was created by a doctor who actually observed that basically people misunderstand body odor. It's not actually about the bacteria bacteria. It's about the fact that the bacteria eats your sweat and makes the smell as a result, as like a after product. So essentially that's what they attack. It's just getting rid of the smell. So this actually can control odor for up to 72 hours. So if you are just a lazy gamer nerd, like a lot of us are, you don't have to do this every day. If you do this like every 2 days, you'll be totally cool. You'll be in great condition. They have all sorts of different products. They have like the solid stick deodorant. They have spray deodorant. By the way, these are all like baking soda free, paraben free. All the shit that you don't want in there isn't in there. They've got loads of delicious scents as well. Especially, by the way, if you're a man, these aren't like girly flavors. They've got like Clover Woods, Mount Fuji. My favorite is the bourbon leather one. I think that smells really nice on the soap. And as I say, they control odor, not only for all that time, but they actually do it better than soap. Like the old traditional granddad, like bath soap. That's not as good actually as like these products. So supposedly 12 hours after a shower, they have a system called a Grundle odor scale. An average man is 5 out of 10. But if you use Mando, then the Grundle odor is 0 out of 10. So you can see how effective it is overall. So try America's #1 whole body deodorant formula right now. You can find them at Walmart, Target, and other retailers across America. So if you go to shopmando.com and use code summoning, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with this code. And it comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice. You can pick mini body wash. Deodorant wipes is an excellent one. Again, if you just sat at your PC all day long, and especially if you haven't had a shower that day, it's actually one of the best ones you can do to just quickly upgrade your thing. And it comes with free shipping. So that's a special offer for listeners. New customers get $5 off a starter pack. Shopmando.com. Summoning. Thank you. Let them know that we sent you. Thank you to everyone who's purchased that. Right, let's just do a little break and then we'll do some viewer questions to end with. All good?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
We'll be back in 5 minutes. Right, we're back for the last segment of the show, which is, of course, viewer questions. If you notice, they tend to be quite varied anyway. A lot of them aren't even like time specific to that week. So if you don't know the way you ask a viewer question, it's one of the other ways to support the show, aside from people who support our sponsors, which we appreciate, is you subscribe to the Last Free Nation Discord. If you do that, you will then have access to a bunch of channels. One of them is called SI Questions, where you put in questions for this segment. There's also, by the way, a one for the Four Horsemen, if you want to ask questions there. There's also one for, at the moment, League of Legends hot take point made. You can submit a take there. There was actually one we roasted on a past episode where a guy said that like Jun was the best BLG player in all of Worlds, which is like, I don't know what the fuck that guy was smoking, but can I get some please? So there's that take. And also we're going to do that in CS as well. We've decided we're going to make one for CS where people can submit mad hot takes and we'll probably just roast them and be very derogatory towards fans, because why break the habit of a lifetime? So anyway, we will now go through some of these questions for this episode. What's sad as well as Yamato is in the modern day, people don't even get that mad when I do flame them. It almost became like part of the charm. Like people almost want to be flamed by me on some fucked up level. I feel like it's like when comedians are really famous for wrecking hecklers. You can tell people start just heckling just to like give them material or something, you know. So let's see. Here's one to start with. That's already a bit edgy, but we'll start here. Architect of Korean esports based show asks, which country has the hottest girls? What's the answer, Yamato?
I have to say Kazakhstan.
Okay.
My fiance is from Kazakhstan. She's born in Kazakhstan, but she has a Russian-Ukrainian background, so that's what I have to answer. But I think Eastern European girls, this direction is my taste.
I would sort of agree. Like, I would say essentially most people who have any sort of like Nordic origin, if you don't know, by the way, guys, one of the reasons why actually Ukrainian and Russian women look the way they do is people like Sweden came down in that like deluge period and just conquered all that area, etc. So I would just say in general, to me, it's also because of my specific background. To me, in my eyes, I think Nordic people look the most beautiful. So like, I do think like Sweden's a great example. Like blonde people who have blonde hair look just naturally better looking to me. So I think that is the homeland of people who are like that. There's also a lot of them in the Netherlands that are, by the way. They're very tall and there's a lot of blondes, etc. So yeah, I think that's a banger. That's a pretty good one. Like here's the thing: there's plenty of countries you can go with for this, but it's more what your particular preference is, obviously. Right. Next question. Here's one. It's technically this is about LFN, so we can do this one for fun. But Powder 420 says, who wins in an LFN battle royale? So imagine all the LFN contributors and staff, we're all in a battle royale to the death. So the question is, who is the first to fall? Who's the weakest? And who ends with the highest kill count? Who would you pick, Yamato? Who's going to be the best?
Oh, the first one to fall, bro. Like, I think Digon is too nice, bro.
Okay.
He's way too nice. You're like, guys, maybe we should just make peace, you know? Maybe we should just have a conversation about this. And then, you know, he would just be the first one to fall for sure. He's just too nice to survive, bro. Like, I would pick myself, bro. Like, I grew up with some tough people, and I definitely, you know, can. I would believe in myself. I would believe in myself.
Okay, I can see what you. Here's the thing: if I'm answering jokingly, I would say like the first. I agree, it'd be someone like Monty or Dagon, because as you say, the problem is they would even be like, "We could work together, you know. We don't have to fight me. Like, just fucking kill this guy already." Like everyone would immediately betray that person and kill them. They'd be dead immediately. Then
Monty
also,
has father strength, though. He has father strength, but that's a superpower.
We'll see about that. And then the other thing is, though, if I was doing a real answer, I'm like you, I'd back myself. And here's why, Yamato. One area I don't believe. Here's what's funny. You might notice in my life, I do think it's very important to live with honor. But that's because in the real world and like society, the reason why you can actually choose to be honorable is it's a luxury. You can do that because we do live in a world where people don't have to steal and kill everyone and don't have to be like brutal and exert physical force over people all the time. If you're in a fight, though, bro, to the death, I'm sorry, at that point, you have to do whatever it takes to survive. Like, it's no longer about like, but it's just the right. So in a fight, by the way, you have to understand, Yamato, I'm like that guy in Game of Thrones, like season whatever it was, like 1, like, you know, the Bronn guy where it's like, you didn't fight with honor. And he's like, he did. The guy just fucking kicked out that moon door. I'm like that guy, mate. If I'm in a fight, that's how I know people who've already been in fights, like at school where people are holding you back, like, hey, break it up, man, break it up after like one punch, or like a movie where they've just seen someone like, hey, don't talk shit to. If you've been in a real fight, you will know the following premise, which is you do anything it takes to survive. Like, for all you know, when you fight with honor, his mate just comes up behind you and punches you in the back of the head and you're on the floor getting your shit kicked out. You're like, you don't ever put yourself in a bad scenario in a fight. So you have to understand, in a fight, I'll do anything. I'll fucking bite your nuts off. I'll fucking gouge your eyes out. I'll fucking, like, if I see your finger, I'll rip that shit. If you have any earrings on, I'm gonna rip that motherfucker right out your ear, tear it all bloody. It's not honorable. Yeah, it's gonna be honorable when I'm shit stomping your head, motherfucker. And at the end, I'm like fucking Conan, like, I'm the only one that's alive still. So here's the problem, I would win this, but at the end, I wouldn't even be me anymore. I'd have turned myself into some sort of demon to destroy and kill all of my own friends and colleagues in this analogy. I'd be there with your blood and your skull. Poor Yamato, what have I done? Who am I anymore? And then, so in that sense, would I have won? Or would I have just also lost to the darkness?
Just to follow up, it's like me growing up in like scenarios. It's like you never fight anyone that you think you're stronger than him, but if he's crazier than you never fight. You never take that risk, bro. You don't know if he's gonna pull up a gun, a knife, whatever the fuck. Like, I remember there was this dude. I grew up playing football in the club, right? I remember like when I was in the 3rd grade, I remember this guy was just disrespecting the teacher, disrespecting the teacher. And then at some point I just slapped him. Slapped him. The whole world stopped, We were 3rd grade, I slapped him, and then he did this like fake, like not fake, but it's like almost holding back tears type thing, with like a pouty mouth, whatever. That guy went on to be like one of the craziest fucking criminals in all of the fucking city.
Okay, so you could have gone clapped, okay.
We were like in the local, like fucking, what was this, rec center, like in the rec center, where they play fucking ping pong, whatever. And there's like fighting with this dude that nobody would fight with because everybody knew like this guy does martial arts, he competes, he's fucking almost 2 meters, he's beating the shit out of him, right? He's beating the shit out of this guy, and this fucking other dude that I slapped, luckily, like, he forgot. Luckily, he forgot. This was like years later. He fought against this dude, and he's getting his shit beaten, but he just keeps standing up, he keeps fighting back, and then he fucking pulls out a knife. He pulls out a fucking knife, and then the whole world stops. No rules fucking apply anymore. People just realize this guy is ready to fuck up his whole life and this guy's life to fucking, for some honor, And then all bets are off, you know? In that point in time, all you do is run. Like everybody's running. Nobody wants fucking partake in that shit. And then it was like a police hunt. And then I discovered that this guy was also like fucking holding guns too. And you just realize that, bro, like if I slapped him at the wrong moment in time, he maybe would have killed me, you know? So that's like, that was always weighing in my mind whenever I saw him, eye contact. It's like, does he remember that I slapped the shit out of him like 8 years ago? No? Okay, thank God. Don't fucking tell him, Freddy, you dumbass. Don't tell him. He's like giggling, you know, my homie's like, oh, I'm going to fuck you up, that type of shit. But luckily, he forgot. So God bless. I think he's in prison now.
By the way, if you actually want a more serious answer, there's a guy I do the show Hot Take Point Me with in CS who is from Serbia, and he's like a Serbian who's of the age where he literally was in those bomb shelters when like NATO was like bombing his country. Mate, I'd just say those are the people in real life you don't want to fuck with. Like that sort of person also might just be way tougher than you were aware. So he'd probably win if I had to guess. Right. Salentia says, how much do you value a player's ability to fit into and increase the ceiling of multiple rosters? So he means like over their career, this means. Does it detract from a player's greatness if they can reach championship level, but only with a narrow selection of teammates and play styles? Example being Uzi playing resource heavy, while Viper can flexibly take resources depending on game plan. Right. So essentially it's more of like evaluating a player's like value to you over their whole career here. So is it a problem for you, and does it detract from how great they are if they have like a very specific type of team fit around them as opposed to somebody who's more flexible? How do you evaluate that?
I think it's extremely important. Like any player that has like great longevity usually does that, because most rosters don't like stick together. It's like Caps as a player in Europe, he has dominated for such a long time, and obviously he attracts great players too, and that's an element of it. But he has consistently like adapted, and he finds ways to, of course, make players around him bend to the way how he likes to play the game. This already started in like 2018 Fnatic, where everyone just knew, like, if I rally around Caps, I'm going to fucking win. And any support that he worked with and the players that he played with just rallied around him as a player. And as a contrast, I think this is probably like the biggest criticism you would aim towards Humanoid. Humanoid, extremely talented. Anyone that worked with him is going to tell you that he's insanely good, but he is going to only be as good as what you give him. He's never going to be like the solution to a problem. Like Humanoid is not going to be the type of player to bring a team that might have 8th, 9th, 10th place players and bring them to like a 5th, 4th place finish. It's like a player like Crownie is capable of doing so because he can rally people around him. But in the grand scheme of things, when I think of like Humanoid as a player, when you're surrounded with strong players, strong leaders, then he is capable of performing at a very high level. But is he going to provide that leadership? Is he going to push the team in his direction to dominate the game? No, that's just not who Humanoid is. And I think that's usually like the big fucking contrast. It's like people think, oh, Humanoid, like there was that fucking split, right? It's like you think back to that split when they went fucking 9th, 10th with Rux and Reckless.
Oh yeah,
it's like, bro,
yeah.
Like if you're as good as Razork and Humanoid are, right, you should be able to fucking carry some fucking games over the finish line, but they didn't, right? They didn't, and it requires a very specific character to do so. So I think it's extremely important.
The only thing is, though, I feel like this wasn't framed the way I would frame it as a question, though, because here's the problem. It's very different if someone's like a one trick and they're really good on like one thing and then they can't adapt to the rest of the game. If you're, it's not that like Uzi can only do that. It's that Uzi is so exceptionally good at carrying as an AD carry that actually I would even argue once you get to the highest skill level, sometimes it almost becomes a positive that there's an obvious way to play through these people. So like if I give you a contrast, if you want to look at someone's whole career, this is why the question for me is, am I evaluating the player individually or like value to my team? Because I'll give you an example. I do think that peak Zeus might provide the most value of any top laner to any team if I'm making a super team or a team tomorrow, because he can play weak side, he can play strong side, he can play pocket picks, he can play as the blind pick, he can play as the counter, he can do so many things that if I don't know the rest of my squad, that might be the best top laner you could possibly give me. But if you're going to give me a team though, Yamato, where like I've always thought this is an obvious one, if you'd have given me the like original T1 dynasties, the ones where they used to have the sort of like just decent go-even bot lane of Bang and Wolf. Faker was like a monster in the mid lane, but it's like more his like global picks, etc. And then you have the jungler used to be a bit sus, but it was just about being like a ward jungler, basically. And then top laner would always be a carry top laner. Bro, on that sort of a team, actually Zeus probably wouldn't be the best top lane pick because a lot of his like extra things he's bringing, you wouldn't be flexing into Bang all day long as your comp. You'd still want to play the carry tops. So on that team, maybe the Shy at his peak would be better because the Shy wants to be played through all day long and have all the resources and all the jungle ganks and have nothing go mid. Like, so it depends. Because here's the problem: I do think they're really, really like uber insanely good players. Sometimes, even though it can be a flaw that Uzi has to be played through, since he contrasted it there with Viper, bro, I get sometimes mad at Viper in some of the games where like he picks like a game 5 Ziggs. I'm like, bro, you're Viper. Like, leave the Ziggs pick like that for like fucking Pays or something, you know? Like, if you were on like an Ezreal or a fucking Zeri here, mate, you just carry this whole game. Like, you essentially, what I want Viper sometimes to be is to be Uzi and be like, bro, we go through me this game because I'm so exceptionally good. So I think I get like every single set of rules in the world, Yamato, there are exceptions to the rules that when you are extraordinary, ordinary rules don't apply to you. So I take the general premise. I agree. Being able to be flexible, have extra, what do you call it? Like strings to your bow as it goes is good. But I also do think if you're insanely good at the game almost tells you to play through that person. You know what I mean? Same thing with every great player.
Yeah. I do think the evolution of the game too is getting to the point where like players need to have like a widespread. It's like role players rarely like fucking get far enough to fucking win a championship. It's like very, very rare. They perform in very specific conditions. Like you mentioned Zeus, who I think is just the best player in the world right now. It's like what is his weakness? It's like there are definitely players that get ingrained in what they do. Like you mentioned, Viper not like fucking taking the bulls by the horn. I think that the How Life series versus Bilibili is a great example of last year. It's like meta constricts you in many, many ways, right? And but to see him go out on playing like Misfortune in a game that was like basically unplayable in a scenario where there's not even any fearless, definitely is like painful because then it's like, oh, the game was in the hands of Doran on his Gnar, and that just that shit didn't fucking it just didn't hit at all. So definitely there's that. But then it's like the contrast now. It's like Viper today played like a Misfortune. He can play Ashe, no problem, because he has fucking Zeus and Zeka. So he has just a wide enough spread. And when you have plays like this, this is the real shit. But you can see like T1, another example. I mentioned Doran, but Gumiushi as well. It's like he is specialized in a very certain thing, and you could see in the modern day he suffered, and Smash came in and showcased something else. And Smash could play like every range of champions. So I do think we are moving in a direction that it's very hard to get away with being just a specialist on one certain thing, even though there's a certain beauty to that, like Impact when he played the Ornn and K'Sante. Like there's a lot of beauty in that, but it definitely you could see the flaw in that when he played the Mbessa Caitlyn matchup. I mean, Camille.
Right, Hellfire206 says, what is a hobby that you think is truly unhinged?
Unhinged, holy. Do you have something? I need to think a bit.
I mean, to me, the obvious ones, it's going to be unpopular because it does have a tie into esports. But I actually do think that being like the equivalent of a K-pop stan is really unhinged because what happens is it's all about parasocial behavior where you don't just like that band or that singer or the lyrics or the music. You almost like think that person is your friend in real life and you act in your life as you talk about them as if you know them as a person and like, what's he going through? Like, to me, it's like you've taken like the idea of a soap opera, but you're doing it with real human beings that you don't know, but you act like you know. Like, the reason why I say that'll be very unpopular is because one of the downsides of the internet where no one's allowed to be offended is then all the people that are into the really weird thing will go, hey, it's totally normal, stop hating on me. It's like, no, in this scenario, I don't think that's something I'm at all interested in. I find it really weird. So to me, it's unhinged. I think when I look at those people, they don't seem like they're healthy and having a great time. They almost seem like they're living out some weird fantasy life that I think could even be damaging to their, I don't know, fucking personality. So I don't know, what would your take be? What are you going to pick?
I do. I like the line of thinking that you have because I do sometimes find myself like thinking it's like you get like some fucking unhinged comment your way, like some crazy fan in terms of a fan base, and you open their profile and you just scroll down and they're just fucking just being poisonous to everybody. And I'm just thinking, it's like, who is behind this? It's like, how much does this person, how does he feel if he's investing?
They're not just flaming you. It's like everyone they're messaging, they're just flaming everyone. Everyone's piece of shit. Is that right?
It's always like that. And it's just like, what is the person that is behind this? But sadly, it's like, bro, like I'm so out of tune with like hobbies that are like a detriment. The only thing that came to mind is like, bro, I'm recognizing the flaw of me because I watched like The Office, and the first thing that came to my mind was fucking Dwight had a fucking hobby of collecting cat poops because they were so different.
Okay.
I think if someone told me they did that shit in real life, I would be fucking unhinged because there's like I have knowledge on cats now, bro. Fucking cat poops have fucking parasites and all that jazz. Okay. That would be completely fucked. But I don't think anyone does that in real life. I hope so, at least. But there's a lot of people in the world, so maybe someone out there does that.
I feel like this one's going to be quick. S. Sassy says, for each of you, who is your favorite classical military commander? Common picks are usually Napoleon or Julius Caesar, but my personal favorite is Frederick the Great, the flute-playing Prussian emperor. So what's your answer? What's your favorite classical military commander?
Jesus. Like, how classic are we talking? Because I have the basic bitch answer in Sun Tzu, you know, fucking Art of War, you know, like I have applied so many Art of War concepts to League of Legends, and that's as far as my knowledge goes. But whoever invented Scorched Earth, like I think that person, like that Russia managed to do it against Napoleon, and they managed to do it in World War II, and same thing kind of played out in terms of sacrificing for the greater good. I think to have the guts to do something like that is crazy because it ended, you know, two massive fucking wars at a great cost, you know, but they could see like the greater thing. I remember also this thing that happened in, I don't know the exact details of it, but there was like the Japanese invasion of China where they like broke the dam down to stop the invasion of the Japanese in China. And it's like those fucking tactics, but to have the guts to drop something like that is nuts.
I will just say I don't pretend to have studied any military commanders. So the few times I've actually listened to podcasts and read about Napoleon, it does seem like he was super brilliant. So I'll say Napoleon. Like, if you don't know, one of the things that's cool is there's some stat where, like, on average, to have a chance to win against his army, you had to have something mental. Like, yours had to be like 20% larger. Otherwise, he just auto won, basically, because he was just so, like, brilliant in terms of the things he was doing and how he'd use his pieces and how we would, like, set up uncommon. By the way, what's funny is, I'm not even trolling. If you are, like, a coach in sports like League of Legends, you could actually learn a lot by reading, like, military anecdotes about these great military commanders. Because people like Napoleon, essentially, were doing things like disruptive battlefield tactics or, like, unique ways to use pieces on the field that change how you think of the dynamic of that piece. And these are all things that actually in the game do apply. Like, you can change how you use a certain champion or your piece or a player that has a unique strength. You can think outside the box of the meta, as it were. Right. The dog says you're transported back in time to G2's practice room 5 days. This is going to tie into what we were talking about earlier. 5 days before the 2019 World Finals. Could you coach the team to win Worlds in that time? You have as much prep time as you need. Obviously, he says here, before you go back. So what would your approach be? Like, essentially, the mission here is, we're just before the finals against FPX. What do you do differently, Yamato, to get G2 to win?
With the knowledge of how the series went down, I would think that the information you carry would be good enough to win. But the biggest issue is that you're popping up in that G2 room and you need to convince the players that what you're saying is coming from, you know, that you're from the future and you have the solution. It's like, are you going to reveal to them that you're from the future? Are you going to just give them advice on certain things? Because there's a lot of things in terms of how the games have evolved, and in terms of draft approach. There's certainly like a lot of fixes that they could have pulled through, but it's just a question of, if you can convince them that your information is sound and get them to listen to you in this moment, then I think it's doable. But I think that's the main challenge. But with the info that you have, and they just accept it for what it is, for sure you can beat FPX 100%.
I mean, here's the thing I would do. I would do a mixture of essentially like general coaching, and then I'd have some very specifics. So here's what I would do generally. I would, for real, just mega big up all the players and be like, bro, look who's in this fucking room. Like, you are aware we've got like Caps here, who's like, at this point in time, by the way, like top 3 mid laner in the fucking world. We've got Perks, who so far in this time period, by the way, nobody had an answer for as a bot laner. Because remember, he wasn't an ADC, he was a bot laner. He would like play the fucking Syndra and shit like that and do all these crazy picks. And also, one of the only ADCs I've ever seen carry games that looked like he had 0 peel and 0 resources invested in him. He should just play. Like, the joke is he was already doing the fucking reckless shit years in advance where you're just on Kaiser Zaya and you're just getting in and getting out and you're just controlling it yourself. So I would big up all the players, make them realize, like, stop looking at the other team and realize how good you are as players. And then I would say more specifically, literally in this finals, obviously in each draft game, we're going to consider meta context, you know, what are they stronger? But we're not going to do what they obviously did, which is go way too deep on scrim results and think things like, well, we can't play that or we need to surprise them. No, what we want to do instead is, here's what I always want to tell my players after a big final. I want to leave the final, win or lose, without regret. I want to know that I gave myself a chance to win this game. If I win, great. If I lose, at least I actually picked things that made sense. I didn't do like a pick that only made sense if I win the game in this very specific context. And if I don't, because this is what they did in this final, I feel like an idiot. And even worse, forever I'll regret that pick. Like, even if it had worked, I'd have sort of gone, it wasn't really my choice of a pick, but lol, I guess we won. The problem is, that's the only upside. The downside of that, when it doesn't work, is terrible. You do really do, like they say, you wake up in a cold sweat, like, oh, fuck, why did I pick Pike mid? Like, you know what I mean? That forever's going to be a regret. So instead, look, you can't do it in a general sense, but in a more general sense, pick things that, like, you know you're great on, you are excellent on, you can thrive on, you have agency in the game within your role on. Pick those things and then we'll have less regrets. And then lastly, and this is for real, one thing I'd just say, guys, this is real. Go back in this tournament. Splice won a game on them. Fnatic won a game on them. Bros, we're not getting 3-0 by these motherfuckers. And then I'd just send them out. There you go. Send them out to war.
Bro, you took the approach that you didn't even use the data of the finals, bro. You just did pure legit coaching, bro. Like I was thinking I'm Doctor Strange. I go back in time. You kept it clean.
A more serious point I was trying to make there was, I do feel like the mistake that G2 had was they drafted like it was a normal series against an opponent that you're just facing on that day. What they didn't realize was this, Yamato, you never get back there again. That was your chance. You can do that if you are like FPX. Maybe you could go back to another World Fight. Maybe you can be in World Semis again. Like, the problem is, if you knew that was really your one chance ever to win, I don't think you'd do some of those drafts, bro. I think those drafts were way too, as you say, deep in the weeds. You were just like, it's like you mind gamed yourself 7 levels of chess deep of like, well, they're going to do this, so I'm going to do this, so I'm going to get ahead of them. Again, if you'd have just made it simple and been like, Wonder, how about you play Nah, mate? Hey, Caps, maybe in a car league. You know what I mean? These are just the ones where you win or lose, you wouldn't regret that pick. But like, that's why I actually think it's the worst example I've ever seen of regret, mate. That Pike pick is one of the craziest regrets any player. And it's from a Worlds final. Like, you have to understand, that's why Caps almost has to say in interviews, I still believe I can win Worlds. Because if he couldn't, he'd fucking stop playing the game, wouldn't he? Because it's already over. He already got to the final boss fight and lost the boss fight. He's never even going to get back there again. You're not going to keep guiding in Dark Souls at that point, are you? You want to fucking win the game.
Fucking twice even, bro. But the FPX one is just too different. True. I just remember like their bands. Bro, fucking Tian played Lee Sin 3 games in a row, bro. Yeah. Lee Sin kicked the shit out of 3 games in a row.
Which, by the way, also in hindsight looks so poor. You gave Tian just Lee Sin every game. Like, in hindsight, you sound like a more. That's like some Ban Cassidy against Expected shit, isn't it? Like, what are you doing, bro? That's his champion. If you're not aware, guys, Tian has had, like, probably at this point in time, like 5 splits where he might be the best jungler in the world because of that champion. Like, he's just cracked on it. No, I agree. Right. Big Boy says, here's a good one. This is going to be from way back in the day, so we're not going to go super deep. We're just going to come from memory here, Yamato. He wants to know, for 2012, you know, the open circuit way back in the day, who would our all-pro team be? So we're just making like an Avengers of the open circuit. So we're going to go back in our memories. Who are we picking for this team?
Oh, shit, bro. I don't know. The 2 teams that fucking stand out is just fucking Moscow 5 and TPA, but TPA weren't fucking impactful before Worlds. So
and there's definitely some players I'm not taking from. I'm not fucking putting Darian on my all-pro team. I don't even know that he was the best player for their team. Like, he probably shouldn't even have been on that team. You know what I mean? Like,
That is a fucking goofball. Oh, it's like we need to like I need to fucking I put Diamond Prox in there. Diamond Prox needs to
That's
be
a
my
good one.
guy. 80, 80, 80.
Here's
Shit,
the thing,
man.
Yamato, they've left it wide open for me here. Because you know what? You can talk shit on any other year, but 2012, Froggen mid lane, lock that in. Because if you don't know, guys, that wasn't even like an era where, oh, just farms. Froggen would play like fucking Lee Sin mid lane and shit on everyone, by the way. Like, he had an unbelievable shot. So we can actually take two Westerners in. We can have Diamond Prox, Froggen. We're definitely going to take some Asians, though. Like, who are we taking for the other roles?
Bro, we
I
need to
know.
world elites
He's-
bowling.
Isn't AD world? Yeah, it's Wei Xiao. Come on, Wei
Yes.
Xiao was the shit, bro. That guy was the god.
He
If
was
I-
fucking nutty.
Here's what we're doing. We're doing Wei Xiao AD carry. I know exactly. His support's Mad Life, though. Oh, could you even imagine? Can you even imagine real Blitzcrank Mad Life with fucking Wei Xiao? Like, who for top lane, though? Who would you pick for top lane? Who would your pick be back then?
Damn, bro. Who the fucking was playing top lane back then, bro? I'm thinking about Najin, but was it too early for Najin?
You had McNoon.
I'm thinking McNoon comes to mind. It's like, was Flame cooking people already in 2012?
That was at the end of the year. Maybe Shy from Frost was pretty good already.
Yeah.
Who else? I mean, Westerners, you did have like Wicked was pretty good at the time still.
Wicked was good.
Soaz is around back then.
was deep frying
These are
as
all
well.
top players. These are all top players, yeah.
Like we just need to have a real top laner.
He was a pretty sick top laner. We can maybe do McNoon. I thought he was a beast, mate.
Holy, what a roster.
Anyway, that's a straight, unironically, that is a fucking banger roster. That would be really good.
That's the Duolingo roster right here, bro.
That's a Space Jam one for sure. Right, Franny Boy asks, what idioms do you still consider classics or are your general favorites to say?
That's an idiom. I need to Google the definition.
I mean, essentially, like, it's those things where it's like a slang way of saying something. Like, let's have a look. What do they even say if you put example idiom? Right. When, you know, in English, when someone's going to go on stage for a play, you say break a leg, which means like good luck. Or you say like, you're barking up the wrong tree. By the way, English is full of them. Like English people, in fact, I always say one of the hardest things about the English language isn't the language. It's that people, if they're from the UK, are using idioms all the time. Everything's like, that cost me a bloody arm and a leg, mate. Like, as a foreigner, you can understand the English perfectly. What the fuck does that mean? So what is your favorites? What are the ones you like to use?
I say bite the bullet all the time, bro. Bite the bullet. Okay. It's like just fucking take the punishment. You know, it is what it is. Bite the bullet. Take a recall. That's one I like a lot. What else, bro? It's so weird because the way I communicate, it's like, especially on stream, like I think of fucking new phrases to say about every fucking name, but when I'm on the spot, like I need the medium in front of me to get my mind going. But I guess bite the bullet, fucking, I'll take bite the bullet.
I mean, I will say, like, there are a bazillion in English. Like, almost all these ones here I use all the time. Like, by the skin of your teeth is a classic one. There's a million, mate. Add insult to injury is another classic one. Oh, there's so many. It actually makes you realize how much English is just almost about knowing the idioms people use, not even like the specifics of the word. So that's loads. I also think they're just very good in general. Right, Canopa. There's not that many more to go. Canopa, how would you rank the careers of the noteworthy Griffin personnel against each other? So think of all the people. He's also counting technically Kanavi because he was discovered by CV Max, you know. So if you think of all the players, they had like Sword and Doran, Tarzan, Kanavi, and then they had Chova, Vipe, Lehen, CV Max. Essentially, like, we're just ranking them within that. Like, who would be number one? Who's number one out of those? Chovy? Is it Chovy?
It has to be Chovy or Viper, right? Like Viper.
I mean, Viper has the whole career. He has everything. He has LCK. He has fucking Worlds. Yeah, he just doesn't have MSI.
Probably a first stand. But I think in terms of like warping the role, like I put like Chovy was always on like in the conversation, just being the best mid lane for such a long time, big periods. If you just don't count the World Championship, because Viper definitely like had years when he was on the wrong roster and he was not there, right? His LPL return. Like the returning to LCK, he just was, I guess, like the How Alive management is like, we promise you, we're going to buy great players. You just need to be patient. And it paid off. But I guess Chovy first, I think Viper second makes sense, right? Third, Kanavi needs to be.
It has to be. I like to think about what we talked about last episode. Think about how many MVPs at championships. Like, the guy's won everything except Worlds.
For sure. I think Tarzan, you know, Lehen's, I think as a player definitely was good, but there's something about it's just when I think of the body of work for Tarzan, is like he's just titleless. So that's like the main issue. But also when Griffin was like playing, like fucking Tarzan was
was
crazy.
Really
Was absolutely nuts. And I think there's never been a period in time, unless it's like fucking a final BO5 against T1 where Tarzan fucking went down. But when we're talking about like career, like at least if it's no trophies in the cabinet, that does look bad in the outcome of things if you try to explain it. But we know the body of work, so like Tarzan needs to be my guy there, man. After, and then Lehens.
Yeah, I'm with you, by the way. I would also put Tarzan probably way higher than other people would on that one. Like, the problem is Lehens has an amazing career, but I just don't think impact-wise. Like, people like Tarzan have been the best jungler in the world many times over, in my opinion. Same with Kanavi. They're demons. Right, Nadnerb says, is this first stand group of mid laners the weakest at an international event in LOL history? It's not a bad question, actually. Because it's not the strongest name. Think about it. Like, there's not Chovy, it's Zika, it's Cream instead of like Knight or someone like that, or Rookie back in the day. If you look, it's really not that strong. Like, look, Vladdy's really good now, but it's not Caps. It's not Perks. If you look at the fucking TL one, APA's not like Jensen or Bjergsen. Like, he's actually right. It sounds silly at first, but he's not wrong. It is a bit more weak than you'd imagine. I think he's right.
Yeah. I think it's a fair one. Yeah, I just compare it to fucking, let's say, MSI of last year. It's like Faker, Knight, fucking Chovy is there, and Cream is there. It's like the Caps is there, Humanoid. It's like you are sending like the best mid laners out of your region because it's a central point. I think it's interesting on the other side of it too. It's like in terms of junglers, in hindsight, it's like you have the junglers that are known for worse international performances. It's kind of funny how that is also like a coincidence that occurred in terms of the jungle pool.
No, I'm with you. I actually think you might be right. I think it will be. I mean, look, part of it's cheating because, spoiler, you don't have Caps, already Europe's worse. You don't have Bjergsen or Jensen, so NA is worse. And then actually just turns out right now, I sort of agree, the actual Asian teams just aren't the monster names. Like, the point is, someone like Cream one day might be, but he isn't now. He isn't yet. And Zika's like, we're giving him some respect, but he's not fucking Chovy. He's not peak Chovy. Think about Chovy from like fucking last year, mate. He was a demon. No one could beat that guy. So I'm with it. I think you might be right. Tallahassee Riot Supervisor says, you're allowed to have one active player and one retired player from the same position. Listen, do a Dragon Ball Z fusion dance where they become one person. So what current player are we going to improve with the retired player? Who are we doing?
Oof. Who needs improving? That's the first question.
I've got one that's spicy as fuck, but I want to see where you want to go on this one. Shall I do mine first? Because here's the thing, mine won't at all affect yours. I'm actually going to take a really weird mix that's going to make you all like, what the fuck? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Peanut, the aforementioned god of Nut. And I'm actually going to, and the problem with Peanut is, in this analogy, his ability to be the god of Nut also makes him ejaculate too early. He just gets too tense when he's under pressure. He blows his load. You already know this guy's probably a tantric sex master. That's LCK. But if you put him internationally, oh, sorry, dear. He goes. So instead, and what I need to do, I think Peanut has all the skill set and mind as a jungler to be the best jungler ever, bro. But I'll tell you what, his nerve is fucking garbage internationally. So you ready? It's going to shock people. The player I'm going to merge him with is actually Xsmithy from Team Liquid. Because I always thought Xsmithy had amazing mental international. Like, if you put this guy in a tough game in jungle, like behind, you fuck up the first quadrant, you get the wrong pick. This guy it's like he never mentally broke. I feel like if you could combine the mentality of Xsmithy with Peanut's skills, you would truly have the god of Nut. There you go.
I like that. I like that. Maybe give Peanut some Bengi energy as well. Could be something. You know, my first thought that came to mind now is we talked about Humanoid before.
Okay.
If Humanoid had leadership, bro, he would fucking be able to rival Caps.
So we give like who we merge.
I'm just thinking Perks, bro. I'm just thinking Perks. Like,
what's hilarious about that, by the way, is technically he hasn't actually retired Yamato. But to be fair, after playing with you, he may as well be retired. You've just done your own boy like that. You're gonna just do Perks. He's already done it in the game. He's just retired already.
Bro, he's playing a different role. He retires from his playing talk.
That's you got the cheat. Okay, you got the gun out on that one. Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
Give humorous that fucking leadership, man. I think he would be absolutely insane. Because bro, it's crazy how much G2 changed after they lost perks. They didn't fucking make worlds. We smacked them down, you know. So let's fusion those two, you know, give them that leadership.
Right, we've only got a few more. Far Night 92. With the likelihood of Fearless Draft, oh, here's an interesting one. With the likelihood of Fearless Draft becoming the standard of the competitive scene, what essentially does it change your opinion on having like larger rosters as a result? Like, what do you think about having like 6 or 7 man rosters so you could like bring someone in? Like, by the way, essentially it's a way of like addressing what we said before. Like, if for like roles like, I don't know, ADC or something, maybe you need a guy who can actually play the other things, so it's not just someone's draft capped after game 3. What do you think about this? Would it become more viable in your opinion?
I do think so. Yeah, I think even what CFO is doing is quite interesting. They bring in a player after game 1 always, and you know, the main challenge always with the game is that there are things that you need to be conceptually on the same page on, and finding the right personality for a person that is willing to sit outside of scrims and be in tune with scrims from that position, like the perfectly placed ego that you need to be able to execute that is insane. It's like we think back to one of the most successful like 6-man rosters, like in Europe, for example, it was Fnatic, right, with Soaz and Bwipo. And Bwipo was very, very humble in his position, where he was so happy to just watch the scrims and to study the scrims and to be a 6th party. That part of it is very challenging, but if you can work past that, I see every reason to just keep another mid laner with you that can sub in different positions. Because if you go deep in the AD carry position, AD, like mid laners are usually the role that has like the most amount of spread in terms of what they know in terms of champions. They have good knowledge of top lane in a lot of cases, and having someone that plays a flexible role could be super, super interesting, because as Fearless progress, people are going to understand the dynamics, and it could be potentially, rather than a specific player for a specific role, maybe someone that just designs himself around playing fucking goofy shit deep into a game, and having that guy as an ace up your sleeve. Like, let's say in a wacky sense, let's say Baus as a player, you just had him as a sub, and then it's like you're in game 5 and none of the champions he plays are out of the pool, and then maybe you just throw him in there, and then all of a sudden, you know, he just dominates because he's in that environment. This is something that occurred many times in like that fucking stream team Fearless tournaments that occurred, where certain players just had a champion pool that just got enabled in very weird pockets. So seeing like a role as a 6-man be like a flex weird role, I could see development in that for sure. There's opportunities for sure.
There's actually an underrated historical example I'll give, which is, if everyone remembers, they did this weird thing in T1, where if you remember, when Bengi wasn't good enough, they brought that guy Blank in who had better hands. And then famously, what they would do is, when Blank choked, they would sub Bengi in at the end, like he did against Rockstags, and he'd win. But what people don't know is the next year they did the same thing with Peanut. They had Peanut, then if Peanut choked in the playoff game, they would bring Blank in as if he was Bengi, and he would play. And since everyone knew the Blank guy, here's the thing, I couldn't believe Bengi had like some sort of special intuitive instincts for jungle. He seemed like he had some quality of that, because I never thought he had crazy hands. The Blank guy clearly didn't, right? But the logic went, I remember doing shows with Kelsey Moores back then, this is what her theory was, but I actually agree with it. The logic went like this. The benefit specifically of doing it with a jungler, though, is it's not that you're bringing the guy in who's more clutch like you were when it was Bengi relative to Blank. In fact, in this case, Blank was the guy you used to substitute. What you were doing instead was this, Yamato. If you saw that your primary jungler, the guy you actually want in the game, is like fucking up fundamentally in the game, because you have the sub jungler sat next to you as the coach watching the main jungler fuck up, it's like being the sub in football who's going to come on in the second half. You can actually be stood next to the manager and he can be going like, look, when you come on, tell them I want like the defense to press more on like this part of the move, and you're going to like slot in over here, like don't worry that he's better than you, like you're going to do this over here, and I'm going to tell, like, you can essentially give them instructions and sort of prep them. And the reason why for jungler it was genius was you could actually just be watching it with him with no fog of war on the monitor going, going, look, he's fucking up that part. Like, he doesn't know they're like invading him and warding there. Like, that's like a really shrewd angle where it's not anymore about, is this player better? Like, how many games does he play? You're bringing him in with a very specific thing in mind. So I think it would only fit certain roles. Like, by the way, I could also see that working for support role potentially. I agree. I think there's certain scenarios where actually this draft element becoming enough of a like disadvantage could make it worth it. Because all the normal reasons you don't do this are things like, who the fuck wants someone who's not warmed up by game 4 of a series? You want someone who played all the other matches. In normal meta, by the way, you also want people to play both sides of the matchup. If I just played Azir versus Orianna, and then you go, you're not good enough, and you bring someone else in to play Orianna Azir, like, he doesn't have the same experience of just playing the other side of the matchup and what's going to happen. So I actually do think it's not a stupid question. I do think in this kind of environment, it might be more beneficial. And as you pointed out, not only will you get the odd team that might do this anyway, but I'm actually interested because, crucially, by the way, the most obvious team that should tomorrow think about this, Yamato, is T1. Bro, you not only had it with your ADCs, the most obvious move right now for your T1 is you better get out there for the rest of the year and you're trying to find the next Siwoo guy who can be your fucking blank Bengi to your Doran. And that way you can have Doran for the games that make sense, the ones that are the good ones. But that way, if you need to go to game 5 or some crazy draft, wouldn't it be cool to have some stud like super hands carry top lane who's just sat on your bench waiting to be told by his coach what to do in this game? That would be really interesting. I think that would be a great approach. I'm with you.
It's kind of crazy to think about as well, because then money will be broken. It's like people are just gonna have a fucking bigger roster, and if that's a big advantage, money is power, man. Money is power.
True. Right, Spookin says, what would you say are the most prestigious esports to be at the top of as a player, team, or organization? So it's just, obviously you're mainly from League here, but is there any others? Like is League the most prestigious esport to be at the top of, in your opinion?
Like if I think currently, for sure, I think it's just a question of like numbers, but I think like historically, like being the best fucking StarCraft player, the level of skill that requires, because what's so crazy to me about StarCraft is that it's you're so isolated, and the moment you ever remotely become the best, you are studied and hunted by everybody.
Absolutely.
And the amount of great players that are there in terms of how they are innovating, like the next step, it's like you cannot ever hold on to something that worked because the next step is already coming for you. So it's like you played one tournament back then in the StarCraft days, and I was watching this player called White Raw, and he beat a fucking boxer, right, with this fucking dropship proto strategy. He called it special tactics, and it's like, bro, it's like that's a moment in time that is so incredible because he found a way to like fucking warp the game. Well, that is the type of shit and won't work again because everyone watched that. So the level of skill, the level of micro, the level of macro, I think StarCraft is just such a fucking difficult game. So I will always have deep respect for anyone that was insane, even in Warcraft 3. But even Warcraft 3, the comparison to StarCraft is that StarCraft was just way more like micro in intensive due to the sizes of armies and the sizes of bases that you need to control, while Warcraft 3 was more like, or if you controlled your Blade Master really, really good, your hero in the game, you could dominate because the armies, the sizes were relatively small. But if you lost one soldier in fucking StarCraft 2 or StarCraft 1, it didn't matter too much, but in Warcraft it mattered so much. So RTS is all the way for me.
I actually think the problem is when he says prestigious, obviously that's the part you can interpret differently. Like, I agree with you. Like, here's the real problem. In theory, the main thing that's good about League is it's such a giant esport. There's so much money and so much attention. But I actually don't feel like it's as prestigious among players of all the esports as like a fan might think. Like, as you say, if you ever know back in the day when you had the IMs with all the events there, you could instantly see the hierarchy of esports games pros. Like, I'll give you an example. I used to know some of the best Counter-Strike pros who, if they were at IM, they would stop and go, oh, fuck, is the Quake final on? To them, Quake players were the gods on Mount Olympus, mate. They were like, fuck, I've played Rocket Arena. This guy's fucking insane. So that meant that among Quake and Counter-Strike, Quake had an upper hand. I think the same with StarCraft and League of Legends. if you go in Korea, by the way, Faker could win 50 worlds. He's never going to be more than Flash, because Flash was essentially the god of StarCraft 1, which is considered the hardest. And at the time, it was the most important game ever in Korea. And you could just see his skill level and ability at the game was unparalleled. He was like some Magnus Carlsen, Bobby Fischer-esque figure who like stands outside of history. So I do think certain games have higher status. But the funny thing is, it also depends what era, because the joke is, in the modern day, there is no Quake. So suddenly Counter-Strike, which itself used to be the little brother of Quake, is considered like the ultimate skill game compared to like League of Legends and all the... And the joke is, if I asked Caps probably is really impressed by Simple or Ziwu or someone in Counter-Strike, whereas the joke is, he's in a bigger game that has more money and more attention. But that's why, to me, the question is, are we talking about to players themselves, to fans, to just general? By the way, in general, I would just always... The reason I don't think anyone will ever top Flash, in my opinion, is the best esports player of all time, is he not only played an incredibly competitive game, I think it was one of the hardest games ever, and there were almost no like easy elements. The problem is, Faker plays a significantly easier game. Faker's accomplishment is the scale of his accomplishment. To be the world champion of a game with so many people playing is insane after so many years. But that's different from, in this scenario, being just like the absolute best ever at what I think might be the hardest esports game ever. Because I always think the most underrated thing about StarCraft is, in Brood War especially, you must simultaneously be amazing at micro and macro. Like, one of the most amazing things about the great players is they could simultaneously do all the production stuff at the highest level and do a sick micro fight against you. If you've only played StarCraft 2 made the micro more like AI-based, basically. Like, the computer could do most of it. You could just attack, move into there with the similar army size, and you would win. That wasn't like that in Brood War. So to me, Brood War is like at a skill level that's impossible. It would be like saying, even if someone won 1 million Magic the Gathering tournaments, is he better than like Magnus Carlsen, the chess player? Well, no, because chess is like the ultimate fucking cerebral sport, isn't it? With no like cheesy elements that you have in like card games, for example. Right, there's only going to be 2 more questions, so this one will be quick. Gojo says one of his favorite videos I made was one where I compared... It's called Take Bang Lee Sang. It's basically the 4 big StarCraft Brood War stars of like Flash, Jaedong, Bisu, and Stork. That was like their big 4 in Brood War. Those were the ones that won all the championships and always played each other. And basically, I once compared them to tennis's big 4, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, and Murray, right? So he wants to know what League of Legends players would be compared to the tennis big 4. Do you watch tennis much?
No. Just some Djokovic matches every now and then, but
okay.
that's
I'll
all.
give you the breakdown. I won't make it super long. Basically, what I need to do is just identify what qualities I'm going to compare. So if I take the 4 big in tennis, I'm thinking, I'm going to compare to League of Legends players. So Federer is someone where his defining quality is probably has the most incredible aesthetic style. He has like grace to everything. Almost every shot he has is for real, like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Like, he has very few weaknesses. His one weakness might be later in his career, sometimes in like big clutch games. But even that's not that much of a weakness, because actually early in his career, he used to just murk everyone in all the clutch games. He was the king of the tiebreakers. So if I have to pick a league player, I actually think for him, the obvious one I would just pick is Chovy. Because I do think, again, when I look at Chovy, the pure aesthetic genius of this guy is unbelievable. Like, you could just fall in love with watching him quite literally just laying in certain matchups. Like, the things he's doing it's art. This is why it reminds me of Federer. Even if they lose, they can do in a game that's like the best fucking laning phase I ever saw, or the serve was unbelievable, or the way you hit the slices, like fucking no one can. There's another thing. Federer had all the shots, mate. Chovy, as a mid laner, maybe not as a captain, maybe not as a shot guard, as a mid laner, Chovy has everything any mid laner ever had. He's unfucking brilliant. Maybe some people were slightly better in team fights. That's it. Like, aside from that, I think he maxed out almost every cut. So I'll say he's like Federer. I'll also think that's a good one because they both sometimes in the big moment later in their career haven't had the success they had. Nadal, for me, is like 2 main factors. One is like sheer like oppressive physical prowess. He's a fucking specimen, mate. You should see what his fucking left arm is like. He's unbelievable. Like, this guy you could imagine has like an unbelievable mortar. And then crucially, because that's like his base like physical strength, he had probably the craziest heart of maybe any player ever. Like, this guy never quit on a game ever. Always believes he can battle back and win somehow. Like, that's a tough one, I've got to say. That's a tough one. So you know what I might actually pick for this one? Doesn't fit totally, but I'm going to take this one, I think. I'm going to actually say that'll be like Deft. Because I think Deft always had very impressive, like, pure mechanical prowess at all points in his career. Like, clearly by the way, he had sick mechanics even at the end. And the thing for me with Deft is, this guy's been through a million like down moments and bad worlds and times where people said like, oh, he's not as good now. And he always bounced back. He'll always come back the next season and just like mentally resetting. I think that's one of the hardest things to do ever in sports. Djokovic is like the all-around talent. One thing that's brilliant about Djokovic is he used to be like a really good returner and stamina player, but then he actually added like a forehand and suddenly his serve got way better. And he essentially became a very mentally strong player too. So if I had to pick someone that I would take for that, that's a tougher one, I've got to say. Who am I going to pick for this one? Maybe I should pick a different role, because I don't want them all to be mid laners. So what could I do? Maybe I could do like a top laner for that. I'll tell you what, I'll take Zeus for that. I'll take Zeus for Djokovic. Here's why. I actually think, I said it earlier, I don't think any top laner has ever had, simultaneously could just be the best straight top laner, but also had the best total top laner. Like, if I wanted someone to just weak side, bro, or take up shit picks in a draft, or pick with the blind pick and have to deal with anything, or pick with the counter pick to match up with that, or to absorb pressure, or to carry... This guy's it also, in the same way as Djokovic started a bit more one-dimensional and just became amazing at everything. I think Zeus, by the end now, this is the reason why I say I don't hate it if people want to say he's the GOAT top laner. Like, he's just done it all. Like, the joke now is, think about 2022 Worlds. He's one of the reasons why they lost. That's why Kinga got MVP. Bro, he's one of the reasons they won the last few Worlds. He's now like the super clutch player. He's also reversed that dynamic. And then lastly, for Murray, right, well, this one's a bit easier. Murray's the player where he did win some Grand Slams, but his torture was he always used to lose in the Grand Slams to the other ones, the other guys who were the other all-time greats. He had to play them a million times. If people don't know, he's never lost a Grand Slam to anyone who wasn't Djokovic, Federer, or Nadal. So the real problem with someone like Murray is this. He has a really, really good skill set, very good like baseline level, really nice all-round game. He just wasn't as exceptional in each area as the other greats. And if they didn't exist, his career would be even better. I think I know who I'm going to pick for this one. Scout. Bro, the flaw of Scout's game, amazing. You take any other great player, by the way. Like, let's imagine, pick who you want. If we take Faker off, bro, Scout might have won 2023 Worlds for all we know. I'd love to see that team go on in the bracket and play like JDG or go. They would have an awesome LPL. I'd love to see them in the finals against someone. If you want to go to a different year, again, take out other people. Take out, like, for someone like Chovy out of the mix. People would rave way more about Scout when he was getting all those MVPs in the LPL. He looked like unbelievable. But he never got to be the number one player in the world because Chovy exists. Other people exist. So I think there's certain people where it's actually one of the most addictive things about sports is the guy where you know that in a different era, that guy would be the GOAT. But he couldn't because this guy was in his way or directly counted him. So yeah, I'll just do those four. Right, one last question, then we'll wrap it. Sweet Breeze says, it's actually a CS question, but we'll see if you have a thought on this. Basically, we're using a system now for invites that's based on where you're ranked in this like Valve system based on like tournaments and all this blah, blah, blah. Basically, he wants to know, like, when you invite people, should you use a more recent ranking to balance the bracket over the current power ranking? Actually, I'll answer this very quickly. Essentially, where you've gotten lost on this question, mate, is this. They actually invite people based on a certain time period because you have to do it months in advance. Like, you have to know, like, right, like G2 is invited to this tournament in 2 months. You can't do it a week before because what if G2 changes their mind? So the problem he's missing is this. The invite doesn't have to be the same as the seeding. So invite someone 3 months out, that's fine, but seed the event based on last week. That way, stuff that happens in the meantime can change the seeding. So actually, that one, I'll just solve that for you. That's easy enough. Right, that's them all. We answered every single one there. In the future, we're going to be back every week of First Stand and all the rest. Submit more here via subscribing via the LFN Discord. Thank you to everyone who supported all the sponsors and bought their gear. We only use advertised stuff we've used ourselves and is actually excellent, like the lovely Into the Aim shirts that have up to 70% off plus the 10% stack on there. Shout out to everyone. We'll see you next week for more First Stand.